Ah, voilà, voilà, voilà. Ah, le live, il commence avec... Ah, 13 minutes de retard, c'est pas aussi horrible. C'est quand même bad. Oh.
Oui. Ah merde, par contre, j'ai complètement oublié de préparer le live. De préparer le Monster Hunter.
Oh.
Je suis pas sur le jeu. Je sais, j'ai pas préparé le lobby.
Oh. Oh. Ok, t'en as encore un peu de temps. Oh,
Salut Gogeta, je suis
salut
désolé pour le
Gacheta.
retard. Alex
Pardon,
vient de se réveiller.
je me suis réveillée beaucoup trop tard. Pardon, pardon. Oh. Ah, comment va Gacheta?
Bon, désolé Gogeta, mais cette fois
Ah,
on va pas te laisser on va pas te mettre dans le lobby, dans le groupe,
ah,
parce que là c'est globalement de la redécouverte. On va faire de la redécouverte pour Alex, donc ça va juste être elle et moi.
ah,
Vérification du contenu additionnel. Putain que c'est long.
ah. Ah, t'as dit Akrama. Oh, pardon. Ah, ouais. Attends, pourquoi j'ai... Ah oui, c'est vrai, parce que je suis dans le lobby. Ah, j'ai créé le lobby ou tu le fais?
Je vais le faire.
Ok. Donc ça, on va être là pour le...
Ah, c'est vrai qu'il y a deux nouvelles quêtes secondaires. Ben,
Ouais.
deux nouvelles quêtes événementielles.
Hmm.
Donc, j'ai juste récupéré ces deux quêtes avant de...
Ah, ok. Ah, je vais voir si
Ouais. Oh my god.
mon hibou est rempli. Mes pets continuent à s'entraîner, c'est bien. Ah, ok, il reste deux quêtes pour les mercenaries. L'argosine n'est probablement pas plein.
Ok, j'enligne.
Tout va bien pour le
Créer.
début. Le nid est plein. Oh!
Ok, donc le ID du lobby. Voilà. Ah non, je me suis planté. J'ai réussi à me planter un misclick.
Le IP du lobby est à misclick.
Juste un chiffre que j'ai mis un coup trop haut.
Oh! Ah, Gogeta, tu vas perdre l'image pendant quelques secondes.
Instant.
Que je rejoigne le lobby. Un, deux, 7, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Voici une relief. Voilà.
I, and I fail.
Pardon?
Je voulais aller vérifier l'état d'un des nids.
Oh.
J'ai juste passé par-dessus la barrière, le mur complètement que...
Oh. Quelle est la prochaine quête dans le monde des quêtes?
Je sais pas, c'est à toi de voir. Oh,
Euh,
neat.
Pharos.
Pharos.
On va faire un check.
Interesting.
On va juste faire un clean-up dans mon inventaire. Non. Ah.
I have no reason to eat. This thing is weak. Bref. Ah, pendant que t'es en train de te préparer. Il m'en manque combien de ces trucs? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Le coffre de l'argosier est plein, quelqu'un veut me parler. Ouh, je viens de réaliser que... Ok, celui qui voulait me parler, c'était pour les 4 secondaires. Les 4 secondaires, c'est fait. Il me reste l'argosier qui est plein. Oh! J'ai battu mon deuxième Ludras.
Oh,
Neat.
ça s'est fait un peu de...
Laisse-moi juste vider l'argosier. Et c'est bon.
Ok. Ah, j'ai la loterie. Oh, et c'est une poupée. Oh, et c'est un jackpot.
Neat!
Oh, nice. Ouais, par contre, Dieu m'a... au fait que je suis faible et je dois manger.
No need. Thing weak.
Need food, I'm weak. Et allons-y, allons-y. Ça, je vais mettre ça là.
Communicate via written word with Eric. Instead of just writing in the sand, she immediately resorts to clumsy charades. In the 1990 version of Total Recall, the character
Vegeta,
played by Arnold Schwarzenegger gets a dream implant and either gets the goal and saves the planet by making Mars his sky blue, or he has a psychotic episode of an implant that went off course and is lobotomized. The movie was
merde,
apparently designed
quand
with specifically unclear which, so the
je,
viewers
je
could
me
probably
suis
see the
perdu
movie
dans mes
multiple
propres
times.
paroles.
The tech who sets up the implant prior to a possible psychotic episode
Ok.
caused by the procedure says that the
Il y a
implant
des
will help the new
rumeurs
one, blue
disant
sky
qu'il
on
va y
Mars.
avoir
District
qu'il
9 is
reste
not in fact that
plus
party, and Neil Blomkamp's short live movie
qu'un
caused 69
title
deaths. There were
update
similar interviews to
que
this at the beginning of District 9. The
à
difference is
Monster
that all of
Hunter
those interviews were real. The
Sunbreak.
filmmakers simply asked residents of
Est-ce
Johannesburg
que
to
tu es
think about
d'accord
immigrants
avec
from
ça ou
Zimbabwe,
tu
and they
crois que le
received remarkably
cinquième va
hostile
être le
responses.
dernier?
The film isn't just a parallel to Apartheid, but more about the current sentiment towards immigrants right now.
Il y a de fortes
In Ferris
chances
Bueller's
que
Day
le
Off,
cinquième
Ferris's
soit le
constant complaint and his
dernier, mais
justification
ça
for many of
serait
his
le fun
shenanigans
d'en
is that
avoir
his
un
parents won't buy him
plus.
a car. Toward the end of the movie, when Ferris's mom
Bah,
finds his
c'est
sister
sûr
home driving
qu'avec
her up at the police station, Ferris
le
is a
seul
throwaway where mom complains that all this
exemple
mess screwed
qu'on
the
a
dealership's
réellement,
account, and that the money from the deal
c'est
was supposed to be used
World
to buy
et
Ferris' car.
Iceborne.
Ferris ended up screwing himself out of the car
Mais
so he could
Iceborne
want
qui
it.
s'arrêtait à 5.
Independence Day, one often mocked scene in the movie is when Jeff Goldblum uses a regular old MacBook to hack into the alien ship and disable with a
Le
virus.
truc, c'est
The
qu'en
obvious question
début
is,
d'année,
how did they do this? It's simple. They
on
cut a
nous,
scene out. Here's why. Where it was
le,
all explained that all of our modern
le
technology,
mec
computers,
qui,
microchips, everything, was all reverse
le
engineered in the crash
directeur
pad. And so Goldblum was able to hack into the
de
alien ship and do
Sunbreak
the code already. Once you know this fact, those entire scenes make sense. This scene was shot and it was added to later versions of the
a
movie,
quand
including
même
the DVD
dit
release.
qu'il
But
allait
the original
avoir
theatrical release and the VHS release did not have them. The main plot of
several
the Matrix was supposed to use human brains as
title
processors for
updates.
machines, not power
Donc,
sources. That's why Neo could do all those things.
généralement, several, ça veut dire
In Lilo and Stitch, Lilo looks after a
plus
fishing pudge
que
and she
2.
claims controls the weather.
Ouais.
Lilo's
Mais,
parents died in a car accident
et
due to bad weather.
c'était
For me, it
avant le
explains a lot
quatrième
of Lilo's
title
behavior.
update
In Pan's Labyrinth,
qu'il avait
it's
dit
real.
ça.
It's not just a little girl's fantasy. She's actually a princess and everything that happens is real. Almost everything in the story can be explained by coincidence or imagination. Except for one thing. At the end, the guard guarding her room is told to kill her if she leaves. That is the only exit and the windows are too high
je
and
te laisse
barred. So the only way
essayer
she
de
can get out
gérer
is if
ce
the
monstre
chalk
par
actually worked.
toi-même.
This was confirmed by Guillermo del Toro. The chestbuster scene in the first Alien movie was
pour
almost completely
commencer.
short-lived. Scott wanted to get as natural a reaction as possible from the actors, so he didn't clue them in as to what was to happen.
Veux-tu
They
que
were
je
told
te
something
laisse
shocking was
essayer
gonna
de
happen in the
battre le
scene, but
monstre par
not exactly
toi-même
what.
pour
The reaction
commencer?
you see as the blood
Il a
sprays
pas
over
l'air
everything are as real as they can get.
dangereux,
The
mon
genie
essaie
completely
faut pas me
scammed
donner du
Aladdin.
blanc.
Aladdin asked the genie to make me a prince. He then goes on to suffer for lying about being a prince and learns a valuable lesson about being truthful in himself. He asked to be a prince, not
Donc,
to
à
look like
cause
one,
de
not to
ça,
have
il y a
everything a prince
deux,
has, to be an actual
à
prince.
cause
He should have
du
land and
fait
titles
que
and power
le
now.
mec
And
a quand
Jafar
même
wishes to
dit
become sultan.
several,
He
donc
becomes the sultan. The
sous-entendant
previous one is stripped of his
au moins
land, even his
3.
clothes. Why did this happen for Aladdin when he made the exact same wish? In Pulp
Et
Fiction, when Butch
il
had
y
to go
a
back to his house
deux
to get his watch,
équipes,
the reason Vincent didn't react
deux
to Butch
groupes
making
qui
pop
se
tarts
sont
and just
créés dans
because
la
of their own noise is because
communauté.
they thought
Un
Butch
qui
was
croit que ça va
Marcellus.
s'arrêter
Vincent
avec
thought
le
Marcellus was
prochain
bad for
title
good food, which
update.
is why you see Butch randomly running into
Donc,
Marcellus. He's holding a box
qui
of food in
pense
his
qu'il
pocket.
va y avoir un
Jack
dernier
Nicholson's character
title,
for Shining was
un autre
originally
title
played by
update
Robin Williams, but
après
Kubrick
celui-là.
thought he was too crazy for the role. Let me say that
Un
again. Robin
sixième
Williams was too
title
crazy,
update.
so the alternative was Jack freaking Nicholson. In The Big Lebowski, Johnny is the physical manifestation of the movie's theme. If you think about it, nobody knows
Je viens juste
anything
me
about
rendre
the
compte en fait
Black
qu'il n'y avait pas ça
Film.
du jeu.
There's actual money out there. Mr. Lebowski thinks Butch is sexy.
Ah,
En tant que j'étais.
No idea what's happening. You can see this in
Donc, vu c'est deux possibles. Et un autre truc qui fait croire à des gens qu'il va y avoir un sixième Bachelor Date, c'est ah, c'est quoi déjà le nom? Le chevalier qui donne la quête pour commencer à avoir le contenu du cinquième Bachelor Date, qui une fois que tu as battu le premier monstre du cinquième Bachelor Date, te parle d'un monstre qu'ils n'arrivent pas à capturer. Le truc, c'est ce qu'on sait qui va arriver dans le cinquième Bachelor Date, c'est juste des dragons anciens, des trucs qui ne peuvent pas être capturés. Donc pourquoi est-ce que vous essayerez de capturer quelque chose qui est incapturable? Si c'est pas pour amener, je sais pas moi, le boss final d'un jeu qui n'est pas un dragon ancien. Comme le boss final de Generation Ultimate. Qui est un insecte.
Yep.
Tu le dis quand tu veux que j'entre en combat. Hein?
Oh, je crois qu'il faut que je dors dans la bataille. Il fait très peu de dégâts.
Oui, normal. C'est normal que tu fasses peu de dégâts, t'es dans le début de jeu.
Is thought of as a mindless action movie, but there's a subplot throughout the movie. The reason for this is that the meteorites sit there with plugs on Thunderfoot. It's in the movie that the odds of that actually happening are almost impossible. I mean, the meteorites were just a natural phenomenon that they couldn't use as an excuse to attack any
J'aime beaucoup le skill set que je me suis créé pour la Switch Hack, mais au niveau des talents de piloteur là, parce que je me suis créé un set qui fait que quand j'ai au moins une zone de piloteur remplie, je peux pas prendre de dégâts. Si je fais bien mes coups, je peux pas prendre de dégâts. Donc je peux autant être en mode en mode counter ou all-in.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Link to the top of the description. And if you
prendre des oiseaux.
Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Oh, j'ai appuyé. J'ai pas appuyé à temps. Voilà. Ça, c'est un combo. Oui, bah, je pense que c'est juste sa couche de boue. Merci.
Non, ça a l'air c'est petit bras.
Non, ça fait longtemps qu'il était cassé. Quoi que c'est la queue? Et un peu. La queue est cassée, c'est là qu'en plus. Et il reste juste à la couper. Bon, est-ce que je vais pas le tuer avant? Voilà.
We saw that and he was a retired police officer. And I remember from the moment the patient's husband was a retired police officer. He was on his way to see his wife. Unfortunately, he stopped by the bar first. While it wasn't my job, I went to the nurse to talk to the wife and let her know what happened. She thanked me for being there so much for her family that day. I had a similar experience to this one. We had an old couple in different wards in our hospital. I was treating the wife on my geriatric station. On one of my weekly night shifts, I responded to a CPR alarm to reanimate the husband. It didn't go successfully. I personally took my patient to see her husband for one last time. It was one of the most emotionally draining days of my residency. I have a coworker who we'll call Joe. Great guy who has an equally great wife. Over the years, and even prior to meeting Joe, multiple doctors told Nina she would be unable to get pregnant on her own due to problems with her ovaries and fallopian tubes. She and Joe decided that a child-free life was okay with them, so she and Joe got married and lived happily for 12 years. When they started out, they didn't have much, but as time passed, they progressed in their careers and made a nice living for themselves. Finally, they got to the point where they were comfortable enough to buy a sports car for themselves, something Joe always wanted to do. It was his first new off-the-lot car that he ever owned. Now, Joe and Nina were in their early 40s at the time and figured that they would just coast on into retirement. Well, about 6 months after they bought their brand new car, winter came. Nina got a case of the flu and just couldn't seem to shake it. She just felt run down and nauseous, just not herself. After about 3 weeks of this, she went to the doctor. The doctor asked if there was any possibility she could be pregnant. She laughed at him and said, "I've been married for 12 years now and haven't had so much as a scare of being pregnant. Multiple doctors said it's not going to happen for me, so there's no way." But her doctor said, "Humor me. Let me rule it out. Just do a urine test." Well, wanting to figure out what was actually wrong with her ASAP, Nina peed on the stick and you guessed it, pregnant. So in their 40s with 12 years of living, just the two of them, they were expecting. After the initial shock wore off, they were actually pretty excited even though they had to sell the new sports car, since the two-seater wasn't really going to be working for them. A few months later, their son John came into the world the usual way, happy and a healthy baby, and still are today. John just finished his first year of high school, great kid and super smart too. You just never know what life can throw at you. My sister's boyfriend decided he wanted to do more with his architecture skills, so he gave her 2 weeks notice and moved to Haiti to help rebuild after the earthquake. They stayed together. He would send her long emails with photos and stories of what they were doing. This went on for a couple of months. One offhanded
Oh,
tip from a
c'était
coworker, and
ma
in digging later, it turns out that he never went to
54e, je
Haiti.
crois
He
que
moved to Seattle
c'était.
to be with his fiancée and partner of 9 years.
Bref,
Same
j'ai eu
thing
le
happened to one of her
trophée
friends growing up.
pour
She was dating a guy for a
pour
few
le
years, and things
désert.
were getting pretty serious.
Pour un
Then one
certain
day,
nombre
he
de
goes on
kills dans le
holiday to visit
désert.
his parents in Argentina. She goes to meet him at the airport when he's due to come home and there's no sign of him for hours. So she calls him and he says he's contracted a serious illness in Argentina and he isn't well enough to fly back, and basically says that he doesn't have long to live. She panics and phones him every day to see how he is. He starts avoiding her calls, and after about a week of not responding, she thinks it's the worst and contacts the police, who trace his credit card use to London, where he lives. They find an address that it's linked to, and then she starts doing some digging. So she goes to the address only to find his wife and infant daughter while he's away on a supposed business trip. They both bonded over what a complete a-hole he is, and both decided that they were better off without
Je
him
vais
and
juste
left
aller
him when he got back.
m'assurer de
Pretty sure
que
these
je
two
suis
women
pas
are still
prêt.
friends. It's crazy that there are so many
54,
men
c'est ça.
partners in this world, but there are others that have like 5 secret families. The Matrix is really throwing around the stats in the create a player mode. It's 1991, I'm 19, and just signed the lease on my first solo apartment. I just got the first paycheck from my new job. I deposit that paycheck at the ATM. Another first. I'd always gone into the bank to do this. 2 weeks later, I get my bank statement in the mail and see with horror, I have only $1.87 in my
C'est
account.
vrai que.
Way wrong.
Oui,
I've been very careful with my
c'est
spending. I freaked that I came within $2 of
c'est
bouncing my
vrai,
first
il me
check.
reste
I
3
literally went
quêtes
to the
calamité à
phone
faire.
rings. It's the police asking if my ATM card was stolen. I checked my wallet and the card is missing. My job at the theater pub came with cash chips, so I didn't use it
Voyons,
often.
bon,
I tell them that I
par
was going to call
contre,
an idiot because I was missing $200 from my account. Well, we got your card.
avant de
and
faire
$200.
ça,
But the
j'ai
town
juste
police station,
amélioré
I can't
mon,
figure out how they
mon
have my card
armure.
and the cash. It doesn't make sense. So I just drive down there. The detective says someone, let's call him Bob, pulled in to use the ATM and saw a man acting suspicious while he was using it, moving back and forth as if he was trying to dodge the cameras. Bob says that the man then left the ATM, got into a car, and drove away at high speeds as if he was fleeing. Bob then went to the ATM and put his
Voilà,
card in,
il me
which
reste
popped
mes
out.
bottes à améliorer au
And another
max.
ATM card popped out. My card. Bob's card had popped out because the crook had left my card in the ATM before speeding away. Bob then realized that he had withdrawn money from my account and not his, so he brought my card and the cash to the police station and reported the attempted theft. The detectives give me the description of the crook. According to Bob, it was a man 5'7", brown hair,
Gives him.
gold rimmed glasses. I say out loud, sorry about my height, my color hair, and glasses like mine, before realizing Bob was describing me. I've never deposited a check in an ATM before.
C'est
so
quoi
I
mes
didn't do that
faiblesses
before.
élémentaires, en
Following
fait?
instructions on the screen, filling out the envelope with my account number, punching the amount in, etc. I then forgot to take my card out and just left because I'm a freaking idiot. I drove away at high speeds because I was
left
18 and
foot.
that's just how I drive. Worried the detective
Avec
might be
un moins
annoyed, I didn't
12.
tell him that I was the crook. I just thanked him and left
Nah,
him for myself.
I'm gonna be
Somehow I
fine.
I still have the police report where I was both the victim and the perp. I'm curious about how the guy who returned everything to the police was able to withdraw the money. Wouldn't you need the same PIN number? Or did the OP just leave without closing out his account? Crazy stuff. I told this in another thread, but it's still hilarious to me. A guy I knew in high school English class was talking about one winter day how he was late to school because someone hit his mailbox. His parents made him fix it up before he went to school. He missed his ride and had to walk instead, but the school staff was cool about it and they didn't punish him. A few minutes later, another girl came into the class and she was talking about how her morning sucked. She lost control going down a hill and hit someone's mailbox. She freaked out and drove off before anyone noticed and described a few details of the house. Mailbox guy puts 2 and 2 together and burst out, "You hit my mailbox!" He wasn't super mad about it and she turned beet red. It was hilarious how they both reacted at the time. We lived in Florida at the time and my dad goes to the eye doctor because he's seeing double. In all other aspects, he's healthy. He explains his symptoms to the doctor. This This was in the early 2000s. The doctor picks up a medical book on eye problems. He finds the kind of symptoms my dad is describing. The doctor shows him the book. In the book, there is a whole medical page explaining what he is experiencing and a picture of a kid from the 1960s. My dad looks at the picture and says,
Oups,
Doc, that's
j'ai
me.
pris une
The doc
petite
says, yes,
patience.
those are the symptoms you are showing. My dad says,
J'ai
no,
pris une
that's
petite
really me
patience.
in the picture. It turns out my dad had this eye problem when he was a kid. It's so rare that they took his picture in Ohio in the 1960s
Oh,
and slapped him in a book of
il est
rare eye
là-bas.
problems. He doesn't remember much about taking the picture, but he did manage to get a copy and take it home for himself.
Il est là-bas.
The city I had recently moved away from. On my birthday, I drove out there so we could be together and go out to dinner. The entire time we were at dinner, she was distant and constantly checking her phone / sending texts, etc. There was virtually
Et
no
ça a pas
conversation, and
glissé.
her constant texting was uncharacteristic.
J'ai glissé, mais je suis pris le mur.
Or was just not into the relationship. So we finished eating.
Oui, non, il
It was
faut
okay for me to stop by a mutual friend's house
utiliser
to pick up
le
some
pilote de temps en
substances. I
temps.
reluctantly agreed, thinking it was a pretty selfish request
Tu
for
te
my
souviens,
birthday.
ces
And I don't
fleurs
do that stuff.
contiennent
As we were walking
des
up the steps to my
oiseaux?
friend's apartment, I'm running through the different ways for me to break off this relationship until the door
Si
opens,
tu les
and I
coupes,
realized she had planned a big surprise party
non,
with
non,
my
tu
friends.
pars pas
Maybe she didn't
du
even
tout au bon
know.
endroit.
And lack of attention that I had been attributed
C'est
to a
avec
lack of interest in me
complètement
turned out to be
bleu.
the exact opposite. She's
Si tu
actually
les
a pretty
coupes,
good
tu
person.
peux avoir des oiseaux.
Kind of. I totally
Crapaud
understand
aussi.
people's actions, but I've never had a surprise party before. Was on a flight from Paris to Boston. I had the aisle seat across from a little hall of bathrooms in the middle of the plane. At one point, a man from a few rows up goes into a bathroom, and after a couple of minutes, comes out and is just standing in the aisle. So it gets my attention. He keeps going in and coming back out, looking up towards where he was sitting. I see a woman sitting next to his empty seat shake her head at him, but he doesn't give up. Finally, after 5 times of coming in and out, he finally gets the woman to come back there. The lights are out and most of the plane is sleeping. They start making out in the bathroom hallway before he goes into one. They are in there for quite a while, and then he comes out and goes back to his seat, and a few minutes later, she comes out and does the same. They are really flirty in their seats, and I later repeat this.
Where's that toad?
They end up doing this 3 times throughout the flight. My husband was sitting next to me as talking to what they were doing together, and we make a joke about how they must be newlyweds on the plane. We get off the plane, and the woman is standing there at her gate waiting, and the man is nowhere in sight. As the people from the back of the plane get off, a completely different man goes up to her and gives her a kiss on the lips, and asks her if she was able to get any sleep on the flight. And they then walk off to
Mais
the
c'est ça que j'adore, que je déteste le fait que ce truc n'a pas de thème. Ben, il a un thème, le silence absolu. C'est
Suddenly their numbers would drop and quit. In one of those instances, the guy quitting made a big freaking scene, called him out, insulted him, and pushed him around and ended up being restrained by other coworkers. At the time, the supervisor was going off on the guy, bringing up every single thing the guy did wrong. He told him too about how he fixed all of his mistakes. The entire time this guy sat silent and said nothing, just stared at him and asked himself. When the HR rep asked him to add, he pulled out a tape recorder and just played recording after recording. Apparently, this guy was targeting overperforming agents and make their working environment hell. I'm told the supervisor simply stared at his feet and nodded when he was told he was fired. The agent, as I understand it, was also let go, but he was very well.
Complètement.
échoué.
J'ai fait un brain fart.
De toute façon, tu peux pas vraiment aller plus loin que... Hey! Bon, traitant littéralement de dick, en fait, parce que tout le monde le fait.
The teacher brings up my friend and says, okay, tell us what happened. And my friend just starts explaining on how he had to be really sneaky on this. So there was a good 20 seconds where I just didn't understand what he was talking about. There wasn't any great reveal or drum roll. He just brought him in front of the class and started explaining how he killed everybody. I lost my mind pretty good. The other twist that I forgot to mention was that at week 2 or 3, he had went to a student that we didn't really talk too much and told him that he was the killer and that he needed him to kill John Deere 89. So he hands him a few of the notes, and from there on out, he had one guy on the inside helping him kill people. That's why he could kill so many people without being caught, because if someone got killed, I was with my friend, so I could vouch for him. The teacher said there was nothing in the rule book that said you couldn't get another person to help you kill people. It was a huge gamble because the other team could have just said I caught the killer and the game would have been over. I forgot to mention, if you guess who the killer is, nothing happens. You have to catch them in the act. So when there was only a few people left, everyone is yelling, "You're the killer! You're the killer!" and just pointing fingers back and forth. This teacher sounds awesome. I wish there was more teachers like this because I had a teacher in high school that had a great fight club, and I thought that was so wild. I was always excited to go to this. I graduated law and we also graduated from university. We both applied to the same high school program and ended up working in the same office in Hamburg. 3 months before our wedding, I thought that was really on me to do law, and I broke off with her. Long story short, it got really, really ugly, and the two of us ended up in a very
C'est ça que ça fait quand t'as réussi. Ça charge mon âme entièrement. Ah oui? Mon compteur, c'est plein de fois de son dégâts.
Ah ouais.
En plus, tu rajoutes le fait que mon arme fait des dégâts de feu et ça fait la faiblesse élémentaire de Kaizu, c'est le feu.
En effet.
Plus de poison, et le machin il est mort sans même avoir pu sortir de la zone. Moins de 5 minutes de chasse.
Just subtly angling the stroller away from the statues and making big deals about the art things on the opposite side of the aisle. Then the inevitable happens. I remember it happening in slow motion. My kid's head turns towards the uncloaked statues. Eyes widen, arm raises and finger points, and mouth slowly opens. Dad, look at those statues! They're not wearing socks! That's it for this video. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. It's linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching.
Hawaii.
Oui.
Ça. T'as jamais pas photo?
Non. Oh, il est beau.
What's the most legendary thing that happened at your school? My school
Oui,
was
mais
on
non,
the
mais-
tallest building in the area. During Fleet Week, the Blue Angels flew what must have been 100 to 200 feet above it, shattered like 30 windows on the top floor of the school. I attended a high school called Rampart that, despite being a blue ribbon school, had serious budget issues. The budget problems got so bad that
Il est beau, non, il est moche.
Oui, mais
Some guy went to the gym out for a
tu vois ce
second
que je veux
time,
dire, la
saying he was
photo est
going to
belle.
Instead, he held a rave that got so out of hand
Il
he
est
destroyed the
horrible.
gym. The incident quickly grew into legend amongst the students. Many claimed to have been there or to have known the guy who threw the rave. We weren't able to use the gym for the rest of the year. They kept the doors locked, but there were constant attempts to force them open so we could see the damage. It didn't take long for the students to start referring to the school as Rave Part. And whenever we had to sing the national anthem, we would finish it in the home of the rave. The next year, we had a new principal too, but we never knew the old principal was fired because of the rave incident. Two teachers screwing in an empty class. They thought they locked the door. A student caught them. They're both fired. We have a school news channel that sometimes did live segments about new stuff going on. This was every morning in homeroom. One morning, they were doing a walkthrough of the new part of the school just built. They walked to a staircase, and some girl was sitting on some kid's face on the floor. This was at 8 a.m., and the entire school saw it. Some dude in English class sat next to the electrical outlet, so we decided to grab the kid next to him and stick a piece of metal into the outlet. Shot the heck out of both of them. They were both fairly okay, but almost scared the teacher to death. Also, there was a time a girl screwed two dudes in the auditorium during a basketball game, and it was caught on the school camera. Her family ended up sending her somewhere else after that. This happened in my school in the UK around 2002. We had an indoor swimming pool at my school that was always really cold, and one particularly freezing December day, a bunch of us decided that we really didn't fancy having to do swimming for PE, so we dared this kid called Todd, who was pretty crazy, to crap in the pool. He said he would do it for 10 pounds. We had a quick whip round and managed to get the money pretty quick between us. To avoid getting caught, he decided to crap into the pool from the roof through a skylight. A lot of the buildings in our school had staircases on the outside, so it didn't take much effort for a couple of us to give him a leg up onto the roof. Once he was up there, we ran back down to the pool and looked through the windows. Sure enough, after a couple of minutes, we saw 2 or 3 of Todd's crap apples drop into the perfectly still pool, causing a gentle, disgusting, but oddly beautiful ripple. There was no PE for us that day. There was a huge sexting scandal where a handful of girls' images were being sent around. Well, when the school caught wind of it, they did the only thing the school could do. They held an assembly. Girls in the auditorium and boys in the gym. After an hour or so of, you shouldn't do that, they had the district attorney come in to talk about the reality of underage sexting. One of the seniors stood up and asked him if it was legal if they were over 18. He said yes, and the entire place went nuts. Everyone was cheering, clapping, and laughing. The principal walked over to the mic and said, "Who asked that?" The guy stood up and said, "Master Steve." The audience once again erupted into cheers as he got called into the principal's office. I watched the friends sneeze and
bidon
so
et-
hard that they gave themselves a concussion. There's a tradition
Pas
in
grand-chose à
the year 12,
s'inquiéter.
final year of high school.
Le
We usually have a
compteur.
muck-up day where they play pranks or whatever in the school. Well, one year, the year 12 decided to
J'ai
screw up the school
j'ai mon
and put
compteur.
signs and cones on one of the main roads next to the school. They diverted all that traffic through the school, essentially screwing up a lot of people's days. It's the best thing anyone has done on muck-up day at our school. At the school where I used to teach, the students told me that years ago, someone swapped the science teacher's Bill Nye video with a hardcore adult tape. According to legend, the teacher didn't notice for quite a while, and the students watched several minutes of smut that day. I told my class that it was a stupid rumor, and I'm sure that never happened. When class was over, one of my students walked up and said, "Mister, it's true. My brother was the one who switched that tape." Went to a boarding school, so several screw tapes and photos got leaked. This was 2004 to 2006, so before iPhones and whatnot. This mainly happened due to a program called MyTunes, where you can share your iTunes and movie libraries on the network. So people would accidentally drop their videos and photos into the folder that was shared without realizing it, and people bored looking for new music or whatever would stumble upon it. Once the administration found out about a video and the student was 18, allegedly, he had to watch the video with the president of the school in his office in order to determine that it didn't happen on campus and that both participants were of age. Didn't get in trouble at all. I mean, glad that he didn't get in trouble, but could you imagine the awkwardness of having to sit in an office with a supervisor watching your own screw tape? I took an A+ course in high school. We had an all-right size lab room for stripping computers and another room full of computers for other worker lessons. There were a few stuffed animals in the lesson room as I half-hearted attempt by my teacher to decorate. Those come into play later. My teacher kept finding certain history on one of the computers. It was always horribly spelled or incoherent searches, and she assumed it was a freshman being smart to impress his friends during a different class. One day she gets fed up with it and makes a special project for us nerds in her A+ course. She gave us one of the lab computers and the smallest camera she could find. And asked us to make a hidden camera.
Est-ce
We
qu'il
applied
faut
it,
un
we did someone, brought it into the
Netflix
other
ou un
room,
boost
set it to
de
record
quoi
with more than
ça?
enough hard drive space and aimed it at the perp's computer. The next day we fired a vid,
Qu'est-ce
see
que
one of the
tu...
seniors coming in before
Bah
school
tu
starts.
décides,
He gave himself
c'est
the
pas à moi
right
de
job.
décider
He
ce que
cleaned
tu
up one of the stuffed
fais.
animals and went about his business. She threw out the stuffed animals and the cops got involved. He had gotten in trouble but went into the army after high school, so maybe it all worked out in the end. So sorry, the stuffed animal? It didn't do anything. Why that? Why Teddy? My junior year, the seniors put hay everywhere inside a freaking English building, where it basically looked like a farm. One of the admins wasn't even letting people look at the mess inside. Also, when I was in 2nd grade, my school was supposed to have a fire drill, so for some reason the alarm was going off. The lunch ladies decided it would be a good idea to set something in the kitchen on fire to make the alarm go off. They burned a good majority of the lunch that was supposed to be served that day. My high school was a bit on the sketchy side. During my sophomore year, there was a fire, and despite all the fire drills we've been doing since kindergarten, no one really knew what to do. Some students made their way 10 blocks away to a Wendy's and a Wall Bombs, where they proceeded to rob both. At the end of my junior year, this sophomore threw his freshman girlfriend through a display case. She ended up with 13 stitches, and he got a lovely pair of handcuffs. In my senior year, we got a new principal because the old one quit at the end of the year prior. Anyway, this was the year the 5th Harry Potter book came out, and even before the school year started, people were calling her Umbridge because of her reputation at her last school. Most of us thought she couldn't be that bad, then we met her. She really was awful. To make matters worse, she was racist to boot. One of the black teachers didn't agree with her teaching style, so she fired his lazy and butt, in her words. Within a week, the NAACP was at the school. Before she finally resigned, there was a student walkout, and people started throwing cafeteria fruit at her whenever they saw her. We were all glad to be rid of her. When I was in grade 9, I was sitting in the computer lab working during the communications class. All of a sudden, we hear this loud revving getting louder and louder, something passing by very quickly then fading away. Our teacher ran out of the room after it, and cried. I had no idea the man could move that quickly.
Voilà.
Due to a sports injury, so I had to
Ready?
follow behind the rest of the class as we tried to find out what was going on. Apparently, one of the seniors brought an ATV to school and drove through the halls. What was legendary was that he somehow was never caught. This was in Canada in the early 2000s. There's a video floating somewhere on Facebook, which probably means it's lost forever. Pretty crappy, since it was literally one of the early digital cameras taped onto the guy's helmet. If I remember correctly, they let him in through an unused auto class for recycling, and he rode out the back. The area was very rural, so he
Alright,
rode in instead of in the back of the pickup. Most likely rode it straight home too, so yeah.
J'ai
no proof
pas
of it.
tellement
Everyone in my high school
d'œufs
thought it
de
would be a great idea
métal
to streak through the
avant.
halls on the last day of school. After running around buck naked, people who witnessed it began whispering about some guy streaking. Pretty soon, the entire school was talking about this unknown mystery guy who ran around with his billy out. Biology teacher witnessed it and said, maybe it's just chilly today, but he isn't very well endowed. Soon after, he went to the front office and turned himself in. He apparently walked into a room full of administrators, all women, and just said, it was me. They all busted out laughing and said, just don't do it again, okay? Low blow from the bio teacher. Viewers, it is time for me to regale you with the story of Jeff. Jeff jumped off the roof of the chapel into a dumpster filled with empty cardboard boxes. 50-foot drop, 8x8 dumpster. Twice a week at school, the junior and senior
Sorry.
do garbage recycling duty after lunch. We gather all the garbage bags and recycling.
Pas jusqu'à temps quand t'es plus à des patients.
It wasn't a huge building, but it was pretty big. We take out all the garbage and trash.
Moi j'en
We sat next to some shed behind the building. That's
ai
us.
pas besoin.
Jumping off a 10 to 12 foot shed into a dumpster full of cardboard boxes. We'd laugh, roll the dumpster out to where the garbage guy could get to it. Someone else loaded back when the garbage was collected. One day, Jeff climbed the backstop of the baseball field right near the dumpsters. That was a 25 to 30 foot drop, I think. He made that one look easy. Then he dropped in from out of a tree. That was probably about 40 feet. Finally, about a month from our graduation, he told us his plan. He had to break into the crawl space above the chapel, accessible by a padlocked trapdoor on the third floor of classrooms, then climb up through the attic space of the chapel and onto the roof. The chapel parking lot slopes sharply by about 7 to 8 feet, which is where the 50-foot drop comes in. We saved boxes for weeks, set them up at the dumpster, put it in the parking lot about 15 feet from the chapel wall, and watched them jump. Our school has a huge statue of a Mustang at the front because our mascot is a Mustang, naturally. It's about 40 feet up above the entryway, so everyone sees it. One morning, there was a bright pink adult toy on it because Mustangs are male, and our huge statue was neutered. It took them a while to get it off of there because they didn't want to ruin the statue or leave any piece of the evidence behind, and it was too heavy to move from place. So there it stayed, with a banner hung across the entryway blocking the statue. Nobody knows who did it except for the masterminds of the crime. For information, the school was in southwest Pennsylvania.
Took him a while to get it off.
My first day of high school. I was starting in a whole new neighborhood from moving and knew no one, so I kept to myself. I didn't handle crowds all too well, but I mustered the courage to get out of bed and get ready for school. I ran downstairs and talked to my dad about what I expected to get on the day and breakfast. I walked out to the corner of the bus and each had their home days. Story short, I made it to school. As soon as we made it to the school, I started walking to my locker. There were so many people, I was about to lose my mind, and I asked myself if it was they did. A girl walking from behind, again, I had to catch up. She ripped off the backpack and unzipped it, pulled out a kitchen, stabbed the girl directly in front of me.
Un truc qu'il va falloir que tu apprennes ça pour le high rank, mais pour le, pas le high rank mais le master rank. Fais le plein de piastres. Non seulement tu vas en faisant ton blocage comme je le fais à chaque fois, ça va faire que le combat contre monstre va durer moins longtemps, comme tu vas être plus puissant. Mais tu vas trouver des animaux qui vont t'aider à la chasse. Les grenouilles explosives, les scarabées à fléau.
Outside and say to somebody, wow, they make these fire drills so realistic, smoke and everything. They're why I got that place, the school really is on fire. So, yeah, my school's on fire. That was great. I'm not the brightest tool in the shed. Somebody! Forget to runs out of the school into the woods. Helicopter comes for hours for the kid. School goes on lockdown.
Whoa!
I saw the whole thing out the window. Very
J'ai
quick.
pas kata. J'ai pas kata le
I'm third. Ben, je me suis pris dans la même chambre que on pouvait me toucher. I was stuck.
Le pet.
Some teachers got these as well and were monitoring. People started to post stuff like fight in the art hallway
Alright.
and laugh as a group of 3 teachers would speed walk by them towards the art hallway, only to find out there was no fight.
Je me suis pris en pleine tête en même temps que j'allais me soigner.
I'm pulling the fire alarm next period. Our craphead principal misread this as firearm and called a lockdown on the school, which lasted for 80 minutes, and there were cop cases all around the school. Later that night, my school was on the news, and Yik Yak is now blocked within 100 meters of any school in my school board. TLDR, my school got Yik Yak banned in my entire school board. Maybe it wasn't just my school board, maybe it's all of Canada or something. I'm really not too sure. I went to a professional training high school. We had to choose a major for our senior year, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we would spend the entire day in classes involving our chosen major. Strange, yeah, only lasted for a few years. Now it's just regular magnet school. Whatever, here's my story. My tech teacher was cool as heck. He'd give us a project on Tuesday morning, and we'd have until Thursday afternoon to turn it in. If we were done early, have fun on the internet.
Oh,
Late,
God
that's
damn
right on
it.
your grade. Most of the students busted their butt on projects on Tuesdays, so we could watch Jerry Springer on the TV card in the back of the room on Thursdays.
Cette attaque est tellement chiante avec Hunter.
Seriously, this teacher didn't give a crap as long as our work was done. One Thursday, one of the students in my class was flipping around the in-service channels the school had. Sometimes they would play a movie on it for some class. Guess what? Adult films. Hardcore black-on-black adult films. Student quickly turned it down and turned the TV from the line of view of the teacher. Teacher still heard it. He came over, coffee cup in hand,
No,
looked at
he
the
saw
glass,
that.
looked at the TV that wasn't turned off in time, looked back at the class, took a sip. First off, anyone offended? No. Keep it low. If someone comes in, turn it off. I hope that teacher is living their best life. A guy drove through the school on a dirt bike. He was doing wheelies and dodging the supervisors who couldn't catch up to the dirt bike on their golf carts. Then, later that day, he posted the video he recorded of the whole thing from a GoPro on Twitter. He was a legend. I was in an all-boys high school, and this is just one of the many pranks and stuff we did. This happened a few years before I was in the school, but one guy decided to get back at one of the
God
teachers
damn it.
whose class was on the second floor.
This,
He was homework, in trouble,
it's
had
too
sex
late.
She was also constantly picking on him, and that day he started crying, thick obviously, and saying he can't take it anymore, etc. He then proceeded to jump out of the window.
Oh,
onto a
come
hot
on.
was placed underneath the window by his friends.
Ça me
The teacher jumped out of the window,
stresse.
they removed it, and he went to lie down on the ground in a manner which resembled a mangled body. The teacher freaked out, went to fetch the principal and nurse, etc. And before they got up there, he got up and went back to class and sat down at a seat as if nothing happened. Teacher was speechless. Like I said, this happened a few years before I was in the school, so I didn't really hear about the aftermath of their shenanigans. It's also possible that it never happened, and that it's an urban legend going around. In high school, we weren't allowed to wear costumes for Halloween. My senior year, a giant group of us, about a good half or 3/4 of the class, decided that we were going to dress up anyway and meet in the parking lot before school to march in together. I spent the night before making my costume, which was a suit of armor made out of cardboard with metallic tape, a sword made the same way, and one of those broomstick horses. The next day, we all gathered like we had said and marched in together. It was hilarious, but I guess they found out, so the meetings assistant teams were waiting for us in the cafeteria to take our ID so we could report to detention. One of my friends had dressed up as an ATM that they made out of cardboard. When they asked him for his ID, he was ready and slipped it out of a slot like a debit card. The best part was at the end of the day when we all gathered for detention. They didn't have enough room for us and all the other people that were there for other reasons. Out of frustration, they decided to make our detention Saturday ones and spread them out. It was totally worth it though. Strap in, this was a long one. At our school in the UK, on the year 11's final day of the year, they would do Egg and Flour Day. Essentially, helping the lower years with eggs and flour. This was a long time
le pet.
J'arrive pas à l'attaquer ce truc.
The school received a lot of complaints. Because of this, the school clamped down on it in the past 2 to 3 years with huge punishments for this costume party. Together, in this year 11 typically moved locations for summer
Enfin, la guerre.
J'arrive pas à attaquer cette cochonnerie.
dire, il est pas tout dans le jeu, mais on va quand même tuer.
Oui. Ben, c'est ça le but de l'aspirateur, en fait.
Ah, la carapace est cassée.
Voilà. Ok. What? L'arbre avait pas de collision?
What?
Je voulais le faire foncer dans l'arbre, mais apparemment l'arbre n'a pas de collision.
Ok.
Ah, god damn it. Je suis surpris.
As soon as we were far from teachers, this bully shows up. A few hours later, I was having lunch up on a small hill that was overlooking a small amateur soccer field. There was the bully, back to me, 20 meters away, playing his goalkeeper. He raged very hard. I had his apple with me, so I picked it up and threw it all my might towards him. It hit him straight on the shoulder blade. Now I added that I must have added the force of impact. He got knocked out hard. He lay there for a good 5 minutes, got up, turned around, looked at me, and started walking slowly toward me. I was thinking, oh crap, I can't get away. But I had the deep rage still flaring, so I stood defiantly and waited, ready to fight back this time. He reached me and goes, what was that? An apple? Listen, man. I was dumbfounded. He never bothered me again after that. He became a good friend. TLDR, I neutralized the bully with geek rage and an apple. I was sitting on a patio with friends, and a friend who was absolutely terrified of roaches started screaming and running around because a roach appeared on the top of the patio. As a joke, I casually stood up, whipped out my potting knife, and while talking, I
Tape sur les dents.
sat back down and finished what I was saying, while everyone was in
Oui, moi-même, j'ai de la misère.
as an emergency response service for people who find a snake in their yard.
Arrête de faire la chopée!
Rattlesnakes end up being a large constrictor called a gopher snake. Gopher snakes can be aggressive, but they're otherwise harmless. On one call, there was a kid of about 15 who was absolutely terrified of the rattlesnake he saw along the back wall of his yard, behind the swimming pool. The only way to really get there was to tightrope it across the narrow ledge of the pool. I got there and saw that it wasn't a rattlesnake at all, but a harmless gopher snake. So I reached down and grabbed a 5-foot snake.
Je savais pas le fait qu'il était son attention était tout le temps à 2 km. Oh! Vite! Stop attacking!
J'étais dans une attaque.
God damn it, j'aurais pu faire un counter sur ta gueule.
Some sitting, some standing and chatting in the kitchen. She had my
Un counter avec des bombes, ça fait un gros, ça fait mal.
The lid pops open in midair. Somehow, I hit the roller with my thumb as I catch it, and the thing lights up as it hits my hand. My arm is fully outstretched when I touch it, so I smoothly pull my arm, put the cigarette in my mouth, snap the zipper shut with a flick of my wrist, and toss it over one completely accidental. My friend still talking about it with awe. Not nearly as awesome as yours. I was with my girlfriend at a party, and she had this crazy look in her eyes, and I thought it did. I could tell she was going to spit the skittle at me. I didn't know how. She watched it across the long table, and I caught it in my mouth. Nobody noticed. For this next one, as I describe this, I just want you to imagine Ave Maria playing in your I was at a college football game for NSU in Missouri. I was up in the nosebleeds after our marching band had played in the homecoming parade earlier that day. I left to go get concessions and started walking down the stairs. I took some time against the
Party is there!
stairs, across landings, flailing hopelessly for purchase on one of the handrails or onto the appendage, but no avail. It seemed to never
Finish
I
it!
eventually reached the bottom with a landing
Fatality.
which meant there was a bit of concrete and a handrail directly in front of me. I hit the handrail with my lower leg, almost fully upside down, and still walking with kinetic 2 force on the fall. I walked over the handrail with one bar as my fulcrum. Up in the air, but I just started walking as if nothing had happened. The whole section was erupted in cheers, to the point it made people on the field look up at us. CLDR, I took an epic fall down that cracked on the stairs in front of thousands, landed on my feet, and everyone thought it was on purpose. When I was about 11 years old, I got chased by 2 vicious,
je
hungry-looking
hais ce
dobermans in my
monstre.
yard. Realized I wasn't going to get away, so I turned around, put my war face on, and bolted straight at them, shoving them possessed and intending to tear the freaking snouts off.
Et dire qu'il a fallu que je le fasse solo
Now let me see your war face! Ah!
2 fois dans cette
Camp years
partie.
and years ago. One of the activities I was in charge of was building a log cabin. Part of building the log cabin is to strip all the bark off the wood to help keep the logs from rotting. The scouts generally had a love-hate relationship with this step of the project. On the plus side, they got to use sharp objects. On the minus side, it was hard manual labor. While they were using bark strippers, I was using a chisel to get the bark off around nuts. Normally, using a chisel on wood is not a hazardous operation, as long as the blade is facing away from me. One day, I was not doing well on my safety observance. I was trying to jam a stubborn piece of bark off the wood with the blade facing toward my arm. The wood broke against the face. The blade kept on trucking through the bark and into my wrist. At this point, I knew something was wrong as they saw me curse, drop the chisel, and grab my arm.
Je pense que ce monstre est un bon exemple de pourquoi il faut que tu fasses le tournement pour
I told a couple of scouts to get the
pour
first
des
aid
birdies.
others to help me over the picnic bench. I
Hein?
told them they were going to have an impromptu first aid lesson on
Pour des-
stimulating and shock the victim as they're in
Pour aller
shock.
chercher
The scouts
des...
and get the health officer out to our location to treat me the rest of the way. They said it was the
Ben
best
ouais,
Friday
des oiseaux, tu...
Oh, maybe junior year of high school. I used to stay
No.
after school to avoid going home. Some girl 1 year below me came up to me with her friends, acting flirty. Her girlfriend and 3 guys walked away. I did not think much of it at the time. Fast forward about 30 minutes, and the girl that I was talking to said that she was worried about her friend and why she was still gone. She said that her friend went in the auditorium and asked if I would see if she was still there. I walked into the auditorium, and all the lights are off except for the bandwagon. I made my way down there, and heard a girl say, "No, no, let go." I flipped a bit and mustered up a yell while charging the bandwagon. 3 guys take off, followed by the girls. About a month later, my dean walks into my classroom and says that she needs to escort me to the principal's office. Mind you, my school was huge, so while walking to the other building where the principal's office was located, I asked if this was about my skipping gym class a bunch of times. She said no, but whatever it was about must be really big to warrant her escorting me to the principal. We get to the office and I see 2 cops and the 2 girls that I met a month before. Freaking the heck out, I sit down and the cops say, "Thank you." What? I was asked some questions and was informed that the 3 guys were attempting to force themselves upon the girl. I guess I stumbled in at the right time. I had not spoken to my father for months at this time in my life, but received a call from him that night. The school called to tell him what I had done. My pops told me I was a hero. That was a good day. Once in middle school, my locker was next to some hot chicks. I noticed one of her books started slipping from the top shelf, so I put my hand out to stop it. It started actually falling, so I was like, crap, and awkwardly tried to stop it. It landed perfectly in my hand. The binding went straight into my palm, without me even looking, and I ninja'd it right back into the shelf. I was Peter Parker for 30 seconds. I was going to college in Chicago and left the bar near Wrigley Field with a beer bottle in my hand. While walking to the L, 2 guys confronted me on the street, wanting to rob me. I was stunned and accidentally hit the bottle on a brick building, shattering the bottom. The 2 guys thought I was going to defend myself with a broken bottle and ran. Stopped to get gas at an old country store gas station outside Camden, South Carolina. Apparently, one of the door hinges was broken,
No,
so
en
when I opened
fait.
the door, the entire door came off in my hands. There were 5 or 6 farmers, truckers in line with the cashier. One of them
Non,
was
parce que j'ai déjà solo une fois.
I had this real jerk
Alors que j'étais en quête avec toi pendant que t'étais en train... Je crois que t'étais en train de chasser à l'Udresse Royale.
Output certain properties of a sphere/circle after inputting a radius value. I remember asking him what's the surface area of a sphere or something to that effect. I mean, I don't think that was an unreasonable question. I'm in freaking 10th grade for frick's sake. He decided to take this opportunity to humiliate me. So anyway, this is how the convo went. The surface area of a sphere is 4 pi r squared, right, sir? Did you just ask me the surface area of a sphere? Yeah? Well, maybe we should call your math teacher and find out. Walks over the phone, dials math teacher. Hey, your student X would like to ask you a question. I walk over the phone with everyone in class watching me. Yeah, Mr. Computer Science teacher doesn't know the surface area of a sphere, and he's too embarrassed to ask you himself. His face turned super red and the whole class cracked up. I felt so epic that week.
Ok.
Me and my then 3-year-old son went to the playground.
Là,
This big
je
kid
vais
started going around scaring the crap out of a small
faire
kid by
quelques
popping out
trucs
and
avant
roaring
de
and
dire
hissing
que je suis
right in
prêt.
the face. I saw what car came in and that his mom was sitting in it too, maybe just waiting for him to finish quote-unquote playing. Anyway, he proceeds to do his scare thing to my son, who of course freaks out and runs to me crying. I started fuming, thinking it's his own parent's responsibility to tell him to cut that crap out. I decided to go tell his mom. I asked, "Is that your son over there?" She says yes, and I tell her what he's doing. And either you get him to stop or I'll do it for you. To my surprise, she says, "Oh, please do. I can't control him today." So I go back over and try my best to hide right where he is roaming. And as soon as he's within striking distance, I pop out, and with all the air in my lungs, I scream at the top of my lungs 1 inch from his face. He ran back to his car, absolutely terrified and crying. I could see his mom. She didn't come out or do a thing. To this day, if anyone messes with my son who's bigger than him, he screams nonsensically in their face. Crazy beat size any day. Was in a restaurant with my girlfriend at the time, and when a guy built like a refrigerator just comes barging through and knocks my girlfriend's drink all
Je
over.
vais avoir tellement d'argent quand j'aurai fini de vendre tout ce que j'ai à vendre.
That's such a specific thing to say, and it just murdered me every time I tried to read it. It was clearly an accident based on his refrigerator-like physique and being unable to hold his arms at his side. At this point, I'm standing up to help clean her up and figure he's going to apologize or something. Instead, he pushes my shoulder and tells me
Whoa!
and quote,
300,000?
I stare at him and say, "That dog is my girlfriend. You dang well better apologize to her." So the woman and man at the table next to us are notably getting nervous. She drops her menu off the table. By some fluke, I catch the menu flat along the top of my foot before it hits the ground and proceed to just raise my foot, keeping the menu on top of it. I grab the menu,
Voilà.
all the while glaring into this guy's eyes. I just tell her, "Sorry, ma'am, you seem to have dropped this." I just look at him and say, "So, I think we left it off where you were going to apologize to my girlfriend."
Invitation Gogeta. Non, désolé Gogeta, non.
I'm terribly sorry.
On avait dit plutôt que ça va... que... On va juste être nous deux vu que c'est... On va avoir... Il y aura pas de farming aujourd'hui.
On avance juste dans l'histoire.
Anyway, there were a group of
On va essayer
snarky
de
jocks sitting on the steps
rattraper...
around the railing of the porch. We were returning from a beer run, and as I approached
En
the
gros,
door,
on va...
someone says to me, "Nice start to the beer run." And all his buddies laugh. I stood at the
Alex
door
va
in my hand for a
essayer
second and looked at my
d'arriver
girlfriend.
en...
It made me furious that
dans
I got her amazing creation and gift, so I
Sunbreak
slammed the door and started towards
le
them,
plus
telling
vite
how actually
possible.
freaking awesome my scarf was. He must have thought I was
Assez
a fool
drap.
because he flinched, lost balance, tried to correct himself, and comically fell backwards off the porch.
En gros, vu que je lui ai dit que le dernier connu arrive ce mois-ci,
TLDR, accidental front flip on a snowboard. I'm a little late to the game, but
faudrait peut-être
I've been all kinds of crazy conditions. One particular day, the snow was
faudrait-
so wet that you could get stuck in. I was
ça.
riding down a steep slope going quite fast and hit a pile of granulated snow that almost brought me to a complete stop. My reflexes told me to lean forward and tuck, so instead of a devastating fall, I was picked up off the ground by my momentum and did a front flip on my board, landing perfectly and riding away. I think 1 or 2 other instructors saw it. I was about 17 when I was walking with my younger brother and 2 of his friends. They were all about 12. A car full of people passes and yells at us and flips us off. I knew who it was, so I flipped them off and yelled, "Screw you!" back at them. We continued along and cut through an empty parking lot enclosed by trees to take a shortcut to our destination. The car I flipped off comes flying into the parking lot. People screaming, tires squealing. My little brother and his friends are scared crapless. I walk over to the car laughing because of the way the other kids with me were acting. I was going to give my friends in the car a good laugh. When I get to the car, I stick my head dang near in the driver's window, still laughing, and realized I had no idea who any of these people were. My laughing face turned to a morbid, I'm about to get my butt kicked face, which the people in the car must have interpreted as maniacal laughter turning into a death stare. It scared the crap out of them, and I recall hearing passengers screaming at the driver to get the heck out of there. He's going to kill us! The car peeled away, and I walked back to rejoin my brother and his friends, and they all thought I was the coolest, most awesome older teen they'd ever met. About 5 years ago, there was a crazy huge bee in my house, and my brother, terrified of bees, came running to me, wanting me to kill it for him. I picked up my crappy toy airsoft pistol, which was loaded with one pellet, pointed the pistol at the bee from about 40 feet away, didn't aim at all, pulled the trigger, and saw a splat on the other side of the room. TLDR, unassisted triple play. I hate baseball. No offense. My mom made me play in the park league a few seasons anyways. So I was at second base in a coach pitch game, about 8 years old, and the batter hit a ball that would have passed right by me at shoulder level. I just casually stuck on my glove, and to my surprise, caught the ball. I was already stepping on the base, so the runner heading towards third was instantly out. By this time, the runner from first was approaching. Tag him! My coach was screaming frantically, so I reached out and tapped the runner from first. I remember everyone, especially the coach, going wild. They even dated the ball and gave it to me. I didn't realize until years later how rare an unassisted triple play is. This happened in my skydiving years. It was a Saturday morning. There was a group of girls from the nearby college running the so the day, including myself, wanted to do a hop and pop to show the girls what skydiving is like. We get to altitude, jump, and wear shoes, and start to show off our crazy canopy skills. I decided to do a hip jump. They look cool from the ground, and my canopy colors were blue and pink. Well, I was tugged in my progress, the hospital or more. Usually the canopy flipped over, I'm doing double shots.
Nice,
So I think to myself that this is it. On the right side, my lines didn't wrap around the canopy, so there was a possibility that I could pull it out before the from the people on the ground, all they saw was some skydivers coming in for a landing, swinging like a balloon,
Ah, goddammit.
they thought that something wasn't right with one of the divers, because his shoe wasn't open and he was swimming very well to the ground. The most important thing to do in skydiving is to make everything you do look cool. With 100 feet to go before impact, I put my toggles, release, and my canopy unfurls and inflates as if the hands of God raked his fingers through my lines and hold my canopy tight. This put my body position perpendicular with no inches to spare for a walk-in landing. The crowd applauded with oohs and ahs, including the experienced divers who knew what was happening. I bow, cover myself, and go in the clubhouse to call my mates. My buddies told the students, he does that all the time, and they knew I was shaking. And then my old dive buddies came over to me. They didn't listen to me. I knew I had experience as I was when you subscribe, come on notifications. The playlist on the back. You're listening to all the stories. Read the published description. And if you like what I'm doing, you can find the show. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, and see you guys next time.
J'ai quand même réussi à empoisonner une racine.
What is your WTF America story? First night in Los Angeles, watched as a stolen cop car and a million cop cars flew past me on Hollywood Boulevard at 60 miles per hour at 10 p.m. Then I turned and walked back into the Thai restaurant where I watched people get PIT movie and shot dead live on the news via helicopter chase. The dude sitting next to us was excited to tell us he had officially quote experience in LA. Over top car chases, action chase cam news, neon lights in Hollywood, a gaming restaurant and movie theater art film. Please watch it. I told the story on Reddit before, but my biggest WTF was in fall 2005. Google Earth existed, and my colleague at the university lab and I were looking at it. She was a blonde bombshell from San Diego, and I'm a totally unusual. And I told her about mine, and she was blown away.
You have buildings? Look, there's an airport. Oh my god, you have cars?
I'm a hanging out around and asked, so why still leaning on I'm walking, on cows, elephants, bicycles, horse drawn carts. She said, camels. If I ever saw a camel in Mumbai, I thought everything was really say, oh crap, it's a freaking camel. And then all you need buffet was soft serve ice cream. As kids, we thought we were being weird. As soon as the science of us were good, it certainly would have stopped us.
Il a aucune idée qu'est-ce qui se passe.
Je viens de se libérer des filateurs qui l'avaient tenu en salle.
Oh non. J'ai volé et j'étais en train de la frapper en même temps. Je suis complètement camouflé par les feuilles de l'arbre.
Hein?
Je voyais que dalle.
Bah. God damn it.
She says, me too, get in. Unless you have curiosity, I jumped in. I think it was around a 3 to 4 hour drive to LA. As we set off, she starts listing all the things we have to do before we get there. Is it a friend new trailer? Is it another friend who's working on ankle?
C'est bon.
Is it a place where she can do her taxes? Or professional education travels?
Ah non.
I was saying, I was saying, okay, she was super happy. After about half an hour, we arrived at her friend's house. She had 2 huge dogs, and I found myself carrying an industrial size.
See, you're not dead.
While my new lady friend went to use the bathroom, the slightly larger woman that owned the house showed me photos of her daughter and asked me what I thought of her. I said she was pretty, which wasn't a complete lie. She told me she didn't have a boyfriend, and I nodded and smiled awkwardly. Then she said, so you're going all the way down to LA with old lady friend, are you? I saw my chance. Actually, I think it might be better if I get the train. Do you know what the next one is? Slightly large woman checked the train times. Then she hollered out, old lady friend, he needs to get the train. The next one's in 20 minutes. Old lady friend rushes, as fast as a 60-year-old can, back into the room, shows no signs of being perturbed, says
Come on.
then, and we quickly get in the truck. It looks as though we may miss the train.
Ah.
Old lady friend is literally speeding down the road. She turns to me and
voulu
says,
canter
"Have I
le
ever
coup
told you
de
about
queue.
Jesus?" I tell her yes, and my parents have told me all about him. That doesn't put her off giving me a little speech, and I don't say anything to stop her. I just smile and thank her. As we get closer to where the station is supposed to be, she winds down her window at some lights and shouts to a surprised dude on the street, "Where's the station?" Before accelerating hard and speeding on the bend in the direction that I pointed to.
Tu vas
The
arrêter.
station and there's Times Square. There's a bit of a queue at the ticket booth, and I say thanks.
Tu vas te calmer avec tes charges?
I turn towards the platform for a tap on the shoulder. Old lady friend is standing there, apple in hand, big smile on her face. She presses the apple in my hands and places her nose around mine. She bends her head and prays. Well, she said, I can't remember. I was too busy looking at all the people staring at me. And old lady whose head barely reached my chest in my hands. Amen. Without another word, she walks away. The train arrives, and I leave. I need a movie news about this. Man, this is such a good story. When I went to film, I was stopped by the police for jaywalking.
Ah.
He said,
Arrête de mettre de tatane.
Ouais, je suis en train d'essayer de récupérer mes réflexes avec le canter. Avec le Kézil par là, j'avais l'impression des avoir, mais le
Avec
reste
elle,
des vols
absolument pas.
bidons. Avec la racine des nouvelles vidéos, c'est loin d'être le cas.
Realized that most of those people were not disabled, but fat people on scooters who did not feel like walking. Where do I sign up? According to the orders, my mother and I can't possibly be Portuguese. Apparently we're Russian, other than incredibly nice and friendly. I love it. Korean friend who just got off the plane in Japan. So many big fat black women. Yes, he said it loudly and in color. But my favorite was a Japanese fellow who lives with a couple of friends in Vegas. He sits down and his coat looks like a normal woman. We all have crap all over house. And his eyes bug out of my so much. I said, he's really good. A couple. I went to university at Cal State I was actually working campus. When I was there, the entire downtown place I was loaded up and you could not go there after all. Actually, anytime. And a full-blown gun/game fight outside of my playground. And a full slot separate me from university.
Yeah. Non seulement j'ai réussi le compteur, mais j'ai coupé la queue en même temps.
Oh. C'est bien. Cóż, Sebastian, cóż. Et qui brûle.
Roule.
So it's the early 1980s, and her mom's plane touches down in LAX from Tokyo. As she was collecting her luggage and waiting for her friend to pick her up, a haircut shop, she had never seen before, came up to her and asked her in English if she could donate a few dollars. And my mom, who only had a few yen and a poor grasp of English, tried to explain to the haircut shop that she couldn't understand him and that she had just arrived in the United States. The moment she started talking to him in Japanese, he just gave her some of the money he had and went on his merry way, leaving her to wonder to herself and refused to stop. I asked the poor lady if it was true all Americans carry guns. She smiled and pulled a revolver out of her purse. She was a nice lady. I was 12 years old when I spent a month in Minnesota. I remember going WTF, or at least a French equivalent, when we went to Mall of America and I saw the fleeing roller coaster inside. I'm not Canadian.
Voilà.
Back home, we
Tu vois? Bye.
yes, it means unfaithful woman.
T'as récupéré la queue?
So I always shout, oh la vache, holy cow. Minnesota is awesome when you're 12. Now that I'm all grown up, I'd like to go to LA or New York City, but nothing beats fishing and horseback riding in your preteen.
Simple,
Canadian
efficace.
tour in America witnessed an enormous man at a big boy in Wisconsin
better.
who brought 5 jumbo freezer bags and filled it to
Okay,
the brim
Ma.
with sausages from the all-you-can-eat buffet. He hid every bag between the overhang of his belly and sweatpants, then filled a full plate of sausages and proceeded to sit calmly at his table and finish them. Canadian was in the gas station waiting to pay before prepaid took over, and a couple of guys with handguns and holsters were in line in front of me, resting their hands on the guns. Not so much WTF, I knew to expect it, but it's a memory I think of often. Edit. I know nothing about guns or the proper terminology, but I have lots of questions about the exact posture in my inbox, so I'll try to clarify without angering more people. It wasn't a threatening, I'm about to draw my gun pose, it was more of a, this is just a comfy resting place in my hands pose. Like when you put your thumb on your belt and let it hang there, except near your gun.
Par contre, couper la queue avec un compteur alors qu'elle fait le backflip,
Me paying at a gas station. Attending here's a
je pense que c'est un des coups les plus impressionnants que j'ai jamais fait.
That's what's epic.
She trailed off. Speak English there? Her colleague stared at her in open-mouthed disbelief and then broke out laughing with the other customers. She looked mortified. To be fair, I felt terrible for her. She was only trying to be friendly to a foreigner. I'm from America, and I have a friend from Australia. It amazes him that there are so many flags everywhere. Apparently, that is a distinct USA thing. He'll make jokes about how we all forget where we are. Was in northern New York, near Buffalo, and a waitress overheard that I was headed back to the Pacific Ocean. She asked where I was going, and I said Vancouver. No, honey. Vancouver is in Canada, and that is on the Atlantic Ocean. I said, Canada is from sea to sea, just like America. She replied, no, that's not right. Only America is from sea to sea. The combination of her
Huge
absolute
good
zero
flag.
and her total ignorance was surprising enough.
Oh.
She basically interrupted our conversation by telling me I am wrong about what ocean I live beside was weird. French ex-exchange teenager in Cali year, summer 97. I was young and missed the field trip bus to Disneyland to San Diego, so I did something pretty stupid. I hitchhiked to go there by myself. Dude who took me looked like a plaincloth cop, but a good buddy. When he heard I was French, he told me to never ever hitchhike in USA because it's pretty dangerous. Plus, people could assume I'm a serial killer. So I boasted, look at you, you don't think I'm a serial killer. I'm not that dangerous looking, or you're careless. He told me to open the glove box in front of me. There was a supposedly loaded, freaking Desert Eagle inside. He dropped me at the bus station and insisted to give me $10 for a ticket. I had cash, and waited for me to go in the bus. TLDR, still don't know if plaincloth angel or Zodiac killer. Do you have cell phones in Norway? This was in 2012. Kids nowadays get an iPhone and or iPad before they're born. I'm Canadian, and I went down to the US to do a little shopping. I accidentally pulled out some Canadian bills, and the cashier asked why I kept Monopoly money on my wallet. A lot of people were saying it was just sarcasm. I don't think it was. The cashier looked around 16 years old. She had probably never seen Canadian money before. When I started awkwardly chuckling, she had a puzzled look on her face. But who knows? Maybe she was just really invested in a joke. After moving from Africa as a teen, I'm repeatedly asked why I'm from Africa in the first place, to which I replied that I've always lived there. I also asked, so why are you white? To which I replied, oh my god, Karen, you can't just ask people why they're white. However, when they reply with blank stares, I realize they aren't referencing Mean Girls. Some other questions. So, Africa is one country and all the borderlines are, like, states? Are there, you know, buildings? You guys have memes over there, right? Are you Australian?
Ouais, je peux utiliser des animaux pour essayer d'avoir des trinkets.
We got chatting about uni/college. It was around July, and she asked me if I was on my summer vacation.
Ah, ok. Quel animaux est-ce que
She was genuinely
j'utilise?
confused and did not understand how it was summer in the US but winter in Australia.
Utiliser
I tried to explain,
toi,
but eventually gave up. This next
toi,
one has layers. I was complimented on my excellent English that I wrote from
et
Ohio.
ceux-là.
I'm Canadian. She thought we all spoke German. You know, Canada, the country best known
Je suis
for
en train
speaking
de faire les
German.
quêtes
Not
de
that there's
village,
already a
mais
country whose language is named after
que
the country it
ouais.
originates from.
Il y a une quête de village que tu ne peux faire que si tu fait vraiment toutes les quêtes de village qui est possible.
I replied sporadically. She laughed and informed me that wasn't a word. When I went to the US the first time and ordered a meal from
C'est...
a large fry, Coke, and a Whopper, I was
La quête, c'est de chasser un Rajang, un Magnum Allo et une Baselgeuse dans une arène.
a second Whopper for $1. Again, I was like, what the heck? Sign me up. Another time, while I was in Daytona, I went to a restaurant and the woman kept refilling my drink again and again. Being a bit shy, I didn't tell her to stop and expected the bill with $15 for sodas, but then I found out the refills were free.
C'est la quête ultime de village.
Subway, but so many restaurants in the US had free refills. I love the US for restaurants and food in general. The portions are massive and very reasonably priced. Went to Walmart. The fabled creatures there are just as the internet portrays them as. Nonetheless, still mind-blowing. With all the Australian replies in this thread, I can only imagine someone dressed like Steve Irwin running around a Walmart, squatting down in front of the average shopper and exclaiming, "Whoa, now there's a beauty! Overweight Americanus, known for their impulsive spending habits. These babies can grow up to 158 kilos." How spread out everything is. Like, it's pretty much impossible for me to survive without a car, while everywhere I needed to go on a regular basis back in London was in a 10-minute biking distance. Also, the number of pickup trucks people own without meeting. It has come to my attention that the city I live in, Jacksonville, Florida, is the widest city in the 48 contiguous states of the US, with a population of just under 1 million. And that explains a lot. I'm not gonna lie, I personally hate needing a vehicle to
Voilà. J'ai fait tous mes coups de mi-bois, j'ai rien eu d'intéressant.
Any contractors or civil engineers willing to answer this question in the comments? Let me know. Not mine, but someone posted a while back about his British boss getting pulled over for speeding.
Oh well.
As is the tradition in England, he got out of the car to meet the police officer, and it went about as well as you'd expect. Went to a club the other day and got frisked by a door guy wearing a bulletproof vest. That was interesting. Every single one of you jerks asked me where in England I was from. I'm from Australia, pretty much as far away from England as you can get without leaving the planet. A universal WTF for both foreign and US citizens, the Golden Corral. Everything was submerged in liquid butter. The patrons were larger than some cars.
Améliorer armure.
In Australia, only farmers and cops have guns, and some criminals, I guess. So I had never seen a gun that wasn't in a cop's holster in my entire 30-year existence.
Ok, qu'est-ce qu'il me reste à fabriquer comme armure d'apparat?
Just on the shelf. You can touch them.
Oh, she
A fellow Aussie
has
friend who
it.
was with us at the time asked the cashier if she could hold them. He looked at her as if she had asked if it was okay to breathe the store's air. Can I hold one? This big one? She asked, incredulous. Sure, if you want to, the guy said, confused and bored at the same time. She picked up this huge gun. Sorry, not a gun guy. Don't know what it was. It was about the size of a
Il va me falloir du coulis à coups de haut-rang, mais ça, ça peut attendre. Après tout, t'as tout le haut-rang à faire. Il va me falloir du lagombi de haut-rang, mais encore une fois, ça peut attendre. Validon de haut-rang, mais ça peut attendre.
I was then served by a nice young lady called Brittany who asked me with a serious face if we have trees in Scotland. I'm from the UK, lived in the US for about 5 years now. Few things that annoy me. You want to get a loan for a new car? There's a fee for that, on top of the interest. You want to take money out of the ATM? There's a fee for that. You want to exchange some currency? There's a fee for that, on top of the exchange spread. The product has money off, you'll have to send something to receive it. They hope you can't be bothered. Pretty much any service, someone will try to make a few extra dollars off you. Was in Spokane at Silverwood amusement park and asked where the washroom was. I was promptly told there were no washrooms in the park. This happened a good handful of times, and it never even occurred to me that I had to say restroom to receive any real help. I'm Canadian and have visited the United States multiple times, and have had an overall enjoyable experience on each one. I wouldn't blame this on America, but I saw a fat, bald, middle-aged man standing on the side of a Pennsylvania highway with bunny ears. I'm sure this happens in Canada too, but this is the first time I've seen something like this. These bunnies have a few years. People just don't care about Jesus coming back anymore. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background and finish listening to all the stories. Link at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Link in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Ça va être la dernière armure que je vais pouvoir faire.
80% of our population lives under the poverty line. I keep a cabinet full of hygiene products for kids to take. Deodorant, lotion, chapstick, hair gel, feminine hygiene products, shampoo, conditioner, those kinds of things, in travel sizes. Being a teen is hard enough without having to cope with hygiene problems due to a lack of funds at home. So one day the entire thing is empty. Odd. I refill the cabinet, and 2 days later all of it's gone again. I refill it with the last of my supplies and catch the kid in the act of sweeping everything in his bag. I stop him and take him into the other room to talk to him.
Ah bah maintenant j'ai plus de coupe en télé.
She was returning the items to Walmart for store credit to buy cigarettes and beer. I told him to tell her the cabinet's locked now. I bought bike lock, so it was not a lie. It was
Mais faire des cartes
to
d'or.
a school sports day swinging from a bottle of wine. We always felt desperately sorry for her daughter because whenever she returned to school following a holiday at home, this was boarding school, we had to wash all her clothes because they reeked of cigarettes. And this poor little girl was easily the most unhappy child I've ever seen. Woman I used to babysit for worked in a school as an assistant or something in Toronto. She always told the story about how the class rabbit would go home with a new kid each week. They kept trying to avoid giving one kid the bunny for the weekend because it was clear his home life wasn't the best. But they finally caved and let him take the rabbit home. The parents killed the rabbit and ate it. They killed the class bunny and fried it up for dinner. They weren't even ashamed when they told the teacher what happened on Monday. Said they were out of groceries or something. My mom's a teacher, and in order to talk to a parent about a child that was struggling due to the school environment, she arranged to meet at the parent's house. Keep in mind, this was scheduled in advance with a set time. The dad answered the door 100% naked and proceeded to have the meeting naked right there on the front porch. My mom doesn't do anything outside the school anymore. Well, in my profession, it's more often what the parents don't do that wins them the Parent of the Year award. But I do have a couple of Hall of Famers. I'm a special education teacher, so I deal with kids with all kinds of physical, emotional, and
de viande pour ton endurance.
who had a number of complications due to spina bifida. Her mother couldn't be bothered to take care of her. The girl wore diapers and was capped. She requires 3 to 5 diaper changes a day. Mom would only send 5 diapers a week. The thing is, she was getting full services from her community, so she was being provided with plenty of supplies. We suspect Mom was probably selling the extras.
Imagine il y a Rajen qui décide de sur la map.
We would change it out at school, but other than that, she'd go another 24 hours before changing. Longer if it was a weekend. The smell from the infection she'd get after a weekend was horrendous. She had lice constantly and oozing bedbug sores. Mom would always just tell us to F off, and we'd call her and tell her to take her to a doctor. Found out later in the year that she also had scabies. We offered to administer the medication to at school. Mom told us to go to hell. Girl would come to school in men's underwear, double XL shirts, and size 16 pants. She was 8. Finally discovered that her 8-year-old sister was changing her diapers and dressing her every day. And sister couldn't find any other cleanish clothes to put on her. Mom's response: I'm busy, I have to get to work in the mornings. Final straw was when the nurse discovered what appeared to be STD warts while changing her diaper once. The nurse made for the 10th time another CPS report, but people insisted that we call one to report our findings. Grandma found out, tipped off Mom, and Mom appeared at the school 15 minutes later, snatched up the kids, and disappeared. Investigators showed up 15 minutes later, but Mom was already long gone. Never saw the kids again. Staff raised money to get an 8-year-old girl a winter coat. We live in rural Canada. Girl came to school the next day in a t-shirt in the dead of winter. Her mom wearing the brand new child-sized jacket. The principal confronted her about it, and Mom told her to F off, and anything her kids owned belonged to her, and she could do with what she wanted. Child aid was called, and that student lives with a very nice foster family now. Mom was rail thin, too. Looked like the stereotypical junkie archetype. The sleeves were 3 inches too short, didn't cover most of her stomach, and she couldn't do it up properly. Our vice principal is a former army sergeant who's built like a tank. He's well liked and an amazing role model in a community where many of our kids don't have a good
255
role model. On
alors
several
que quand
occasions,
le
I've seen
questionnaire
mothers
est en
step
train de
well over the line
dormir.
and make very sexual comments to him directly in front of their kids. I mean, in plain sight of their own children, and in ways the kids notice. He's always very respectful and often asks another staff member to join him if he sees one of these parents coming to talk. But it's pretty trashy when it comes to some of the innuendo I've overheard. These aren't jokes either. They try to get handsy with him too. My cousin is a teacher, and she once had a parent come to a parent-teacher conference extremely drunk, and right before the meeting, tried to pull out a bag of drugs and start doing them. Police were called, and so was CPS. The school also had to call 911 once because a parent overdosed in the parking lot while waiting to pick up their kid, and the poor kid was too young to understand why their mom was slumped over in their car. I'm a high school teacher, and one time a parent of a child who had been going back and forth with another child on social media came to school to confront the other girl. The mom ended up bursting into my classroom to try to fight one of my ninth graders.
Ok, donc question environ 200 PV.
In place have failed this woman, her family, and her friends at basically every level, and I can understand why she felt like she didn't trust any systems to handle the situation. By the end of the school year, this particular mother was helping chaperone events and was a good role model for our young people. Her daughter was one of the best performing
Il y a
students
un
in grade.
bon paquet dans la zone
I had a student earlier this year.
8, je crois.
He's really struggling in 7th
Il
grade.
y en a tellement que ça cache le numéro de la zone.
Il y a un bon paquet dans la zone questionnaire.
She says that she can't afford a computer. I tell her that for $200 I could piece all the parts together myself for a fully functional setup that would be sufficient for at least the next 2 years. I even build it with him so he can learn some extremely valuable information. I'd even front her half, but she would have to pay me back. She says no way, it's still out of her budget. I mean, while we're having a conversation, she's barely looking up to speak to me. Too busy scrolling through the radio on her iPhone. I say forget it, I'll do it myself. I managed to scrap all the parts that I need for free. I only have to buy the hard drive.
Voilà.
It's really out of date, but still works, and gave it to the kid, and he was thrilled. About a month later, I noticed he's trying to finish all his homework at the program again. I ask his mom if everything's okay with the computer. She says it broke down. I say, okay, what happened? I'll pick it up and I'll try to fix it. She says she had to throw it away. I pull the kid aside and ask him. He tells me she sold it to her cousin for $50. I really don't like calling people
Il va falloir choisir la recherche sur la meilleure façon de fermer les coupons tenus.
So it really just broke my heart. It was like she's doing everything in her power to ensure that her kid has no chance at a decent life. I work at a school in one of the most socially deprived areas of the UK. At Parents' Evening, we give every parent a printout of their child's grades in each subject, alongside their target grades. Last year, we had the parent of an 11-year-old respond to this printout by shouting, "What the F am I going to do with this? I can't F and read, can I?" This was in front of other children, parents, and her child's teachers.
Oh.
I worked in behavior units / juvies for a few years, so you can imagine the families we get. My personal favorites, number 1, took the kids
Est-ce
out
qu'il y
on
a
the last day of
quelque
term,
chose dont
pulled
tu aimerais
the car, and the kid's mother's
parler à propos de Monster Hunter?
Miniskirt and knee-high boots in the middle of winter. Number 2, one grandparent used to come in wearing a dirty singlet with his belly.
Pas grand-chose.
Kiss me and call me love, darling, and babe. And number 3, a kid left grounds without permission, so didn't have his phone or anything, which we confiscate. Mom came to pick it up, and when the principal tried to engage her in
Oh,
conversation about her son's
d'accord,
behavior, she
j'ai hâte
attacked him
d'avoir
with
des
her handbag.
skills.
I have 2. There's a parent who would walk through our closed campus every
Ah,
single day.
plus-
Those teachers were supposed
plus
to
de
stop her because it's a
skills.
closed campus. Every single day, she would pretend she didn't know the rules. We always knew it was the same parent because she would let her younger children who weren't in school yet ride around on their scooters ahead of her. One day, she was walking through with a stroller. She was not paying attention, and her freaking baby started falling out of the front of the stroller. I saw 4 teachers jump up to help the kid, and the mom didn't even acknowledge. The other one happened directly to me during parent-teacher conferences. I was meeting with a mom and her living boyfriend about her son. At the end of the conference, I asked if they had any questions I could answer for them, and he started asking me personal questions and flirting with me. I deflected and told him I had more conferences. But other teachers have told me that parents have hit on them before, so it's probably pretty common. Not a teacher, but a college administrator. Parents will call in very frequently when there's an issue with their student's living situation. If they're a jerk, which is frequent, I quote for myself. Best example, I had to bill a student for around $600 in damages to their room at the end of the year. Mom called me peeved off about this because they'd tried to repair the damages, but very poorly. She ended up yelling about this over the phone, and I reminded her that her son was 22 years old and that I could only talk with him about this. Kid calls me back the next day and apologizes for his mom being a jerk to me and asks if I'm able to just feed his mom a bunch of bull when she calls back. It's a weird line of work. Not a teacher, but my dad once worked as a groundskeeper at primary school. Worst thing he ever saw was a guy dropping his daughter off to school, and before she went through the gate, her dad went through her school bag and took out all of her packed food and left eating it, essentially leaving her with nothing to eat that day. Dad said he was so angry that he wanted to knock the guy out right then and there for leaving his child with no food for the day, but he ended up going straight to the principal to tell them what he witnessed so it could be investigated properly and get the kid help. My kid went to the preschool run by the public school system. Every student there was either 3 or 4. One day, I saw one of his classmates' moms open the front passenger door. Kid climbed in, and they drove off with the radio cranked and the little girl dancing on the seat leaning against the dashboard. The back seat was totally empty, not even a car seat. The next day, I offered the lady my other kid's seat. I'd buy another one on the way home. She told me to F off and drove away with her daughter again standing on the front seat. I let the principal know, and we watched the car drive into traffic towards the highway. Day 3, I've called the police, but they'll only during it'll only take 30 minutes for them to get here. After mom drives off with daughter dancing on the seat again, I tell the principal I'm reporting the mom to family services if she won't intervene. On day 4, a guy shows up in her car and comes nose to nose with me without even so much as an introduction. He says if I keep harassing his woman, I'll regret it. I tell the principal, nothing she can do. They stop bringing the kid to school after that. My mom is a middle school teacher. Just about every day, some crap parent doesn't come pick up their kids because they literally forgot about them or were passed out drunk or on drugs. Then the poor child gets sent to daycare, which is not free. Then the horrible parents complain about the charge. My mom has had to bring random kids home before who barely know the way home. It's really sad. Parent witness to an event, but not a teacher. My kid's very first day of school. She's 4 and a half. In the gym hall, all the kids and parents are in lines according to class, and one by one, the teachers come and take them away. Our group was last to go. As we're waiting, a guy storms in, clearly drunk, and starts shouting at a woman in the line. Why the F did you tell me this was now? I've been looking everywhere, etc., etc. And he slapped the mom. Another dad in the line pulls drunk dad away and pushes him. He falls down on top of another kid. That mom screams. Drunk starts to run out. Squish kid's dad chasing him. He made it out of the gym, but then he got caught and had the crap kicked out of him in the school reception. Everyone is freaked out. Kids are crying. Then the very happy teacher who's completely unaware comes in. I start doing crisis for private schools. I work in middle school with an elementary school next door. Two girls from the school were arguing all day and told their parents about it when they got out of school. The parents proceeded to call their families up to the elementary school and fought in front of a bunch of kindergartners. Mom was in everything. The cops were called, and I think some of the parents are still in jail for gun possession and parole violations. One of the kids was pulled from our school and was in foster care. My wife is a special education teacher at a school that's about a 50-50 mix between lower middle class and extreme poverty-stricken elementary student. One of her coworkers had 2-year-old student that kept lashing out and having the cops called on them. His mom was never home, and she was well known to being both addicted to meth and willing to sell herself to pay for said drugs. The last week of school this year, he started to watch a fight, and the principal decided to just suspend him for the last 3 days of school. The principal called to tell the mom, who was out of state and left their 8-year-old home alone, that the kid was suspended for the rest of the year. The mom responds over speaker that the school is run by dumb racist white women, and she's gonna come over there and kick y'all white women's butts. And she just kept screaming that over and over. Mom is white. The kid is white. The principal hung up, and CPS was called. Used to work with teenagers who had behavioral problems in a special school. One day, a student of mine had an outburst. He started punching staff and students alike while screaming. It took 5 male teachers to hold him down. The headmaster called his mom so she could pick him up. She had 10 minutes. If longer, we would call the cops. Mother arrived 8 minutes later. A woman in her late 40s with bleached blonde hair wearing a miniskirt and a crop top. She came in yelling and swearing at her son. She picked him up and smacked him on the back of the head while telling him he was a good-for-nothing idiot. I'm not a teacher, but my mother is. It was her birthday, and I lived 3 hours away from her. I drove to my parents' house unannounced to surprise her for her birthday. She was obviously working, as it was school hours, so I drove to the school she works at just as they were finishing. I was heading to the staff room, which is behind the reception area. I was about to announce myself to the receptionist and ask to wait for my mom in the staff room when this angry as heck dad storms in. He was abusing the heck out of the poor receptionist because his daughter got in trouble for being a delinquent in class. The principal comes out and tries to defuse the situation, and a minute later, my mother comes in on her way to the staff room. It's hectic in there, and then all of a sudden, the angry dad headbutts the principal right in the face. My mother screams, and angry dad turns and takes 1 step towards her. Before he got any further, I, without thinking, punched that dude in the face, and his nose disappeared. Police came shortly after, and I wasn't charged. It was classified as restraining with reasonable force. Happy birthday, Mom. I worked with infants in daycare where 85% of children were nail vouchers. The government was paying for their care because their parents paid. Had a mom who was 27 with 5 kids, newborns and 9-year-olds, all from different fathers. Every one of her children were mixed, but she was constantly talking about how much she hated black people. I was one of 5 other white women in a staff of 20, and she was not afraid to tell me she didn't trust the other black women with her newborn, who I practically raised from 4 weeks to nearly a year. She would only give the baby girl to me at drop-off and would often complain if she saw anyone else holding her. She would bring her kids in at opening 6 a.m. and wouldn't come back until half an hour after closing at 6 p.m. Once, so late, we had to call the police because we thought she'd abandoned her. She talked about how she wasn't making enough money to pay her rent, but always had fresh nails and went to a hair salon. Her 2-year-old had very coily mixed hair and would come in with mats, tangles, and week-old braids. Some of the other black women who knew how to take care of that kind of hair would use her every day, and the mom was always pissed about it and accused them of trying to tell her how to raise her daughter. My last day at that job, I told my director about her racist comments and behavior towards the other women, so she pulls the mom into her office to talk about it when she picked up her kids that day, late as per usual. A week after that, I had a coworker text me and tell me she pulled all 5 of her kids from the daycare. I never saw the little one again and think about her often. She's gonna be too soon. I hope she's doing okay. I'm not a teacher, but a parent. There's this one child that my daughter's been going to school with since kindergarten. She's, for lack of a nicer term, a bit of a jerk. I hear stories from my daughter and her friends, and whenever I come to her school to eat lunch with my kid and help out, this other girl is always like, "Why are you eating here? Anyway, one day I rolled
Oh,
I'm like, dude, where's your coat? Apparently mom lost it. Dropped her off at school, not only without it, but in a tank top. I ran into her and mom at TJ Maxx once, and everything made sense. She looked cracked out of her mind. I'm not a teacher, but my mom is. She teaches the visually impaired. There are these 2 students of hers whose parents, mainly the mom, tell them that they can't do anything and won't be able to do anything, and all they do while at home is sit around because their mom makes them. However, my mom's been teaching them for about 4 years, trying to get them to believe in themselves. It's mostly hard, but recently a new teacher told them that they can't do anything as well. So that's been a huge setback for them. I think it's really trashy for parents to tell their kids that they can't do anything, even though they can do many things that other people can't. Last year I taught 5th grade. I had a student for 1 block a day that was a little mentally unstable. She developed a crush on another girl and began writing a ton of creepy notes. The school was handling it, but apparently the second girl's mother didn't think that was enough. So they drove to the first girl's bus stop in the morning and started yelling and threatening her. They basically had her cornered when the bus driver showed up and had to pry this raging mom away from the student. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Link to the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Link in the description as well. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. What's the saddest thing to hear? It's okay, I'm used to it as a response to. Had a friend who was really lonely and his boyfriends were awful to him. Like, there was this one girl who would just hit him and stuff and emotionally abuse him really bad, but he didn't have any other friends, so he just stuck with it. Accidentally hit him late or something, he said,
j'ai quitté une zone
so bad for the poor guy. He's fine now, though.
en pensant que j'allais te tuer, et je vois un point rouge se palmer.
Take everything out on me, whether it was my fault or not. Too busy at work, shout at me. Family visit, shout at me. Now we're apart, and she does the same thing to him. He moves between both houses by his own choice. Last week she told him, "You might as well leave." As you imagine, he was very upset. When he got to my place, he was making excuses for her, and she said, "It's okay, I'm used to it. I've never spoken badly about his mother to any of my children until now. I've been talking to him since then that she used to do this to me, and that was naturally not okay. He spent a lot of time considering what he said. He's trying to say that he didn't have a discussion with her about it. I hope she acts as much of an adult as he is, but I don't like the chances of that. One time a girl ever asked me out of my life, back in high school. I told her, sorry, I just met a girl I really like, and we're starting to get serious, so I can't right now. And her answer to that was, it's okay, I'm used to it, whoever picks me first, or something like that. I felt absolutely terrible, because usually back then, that would have been my line. Preface, my boyfriend has lost his mom, both of his uncles, and his step-grandfather, all for instances. Literally last Sunday night at midnight, my boyfriend woke me up to tell me that one of his really good friends from high school died. He was so upset and I was so sad for him. I told him how sorry I was for him because I honestly didn't even know what to say. His response? It's okay, I'm used to it. In the saddest tone I've ever heard. I started crying. How freaking heartbreaking. When you're volunteering at a homeless shelter and they have to turn someone out on a cold winter night because the facility's maxed out. The person with tears says, it's okay, I'm used to it. Oh, guys, this is gonna be a rough one to get through. I had a roommate in college that unfortunately slipped back into a pill problem. I came back to the apartment one evening with my mom to find my roommate passed out on the floor and incoherent. I was freaking out the entire time, but my mom was incredibly calm and knew exactly what to do. Afterwards, she told me, I used to have to do that all the time. My mom grew up with an alcoholic father who ended up dying of his disease, so she'd been through a lot, but I really had no idea how bad it had been for her until then. I still get a little choked up thinking about her face in that moment. This won't be a very popular opinion unless you've really been through it, but when people constantly interrupt you, especially when it's by people that you love, it's one thing when it's a lively and interesting conversation. Then I get it. But even in just normal everyday communication, after asking so many people to stop with no avail, it gets to the point where you know nobody's really listening or cares what you have to say. I'm almost just tired of talking, but it's okay. I'm used to it. When I was in 10th grade, there was this freshman girl who had a pretty nice body in my photography class. Sometimes when she walked by the back table, like 3 or 4 of the guys there would slap her butt, and she would just keep walking slowly. I went aside so no one was in earshot and asked her why she just lets them do that to her. And she said, "It's fine, I've had to deal with it since I was in middle school for months."
Merde, j'ai pas
This one makes me legitimately angry, guys. Anyone out
Oh,
there
well.
doing this kind of thing? This is absolutely not appropriate under any means. Do not feel that you need to accept this kind of behavior. There's always
Il y avait
someone willing to help you in this
plus de
situation. And if
trucs
you're
dans
not doing this and
mes...
think it's funny, shame on you. When my boss told me a few weeks ago that I haven't been getting enough quotes to him, and maybe this sales job isn't for me, but you're really a nice guy.
Non, mais
I
ça,
cannot
j'ai
tell you how
fait
many times I've had
gaffe,
someone
j'ai
say
pas
something negative,
checké,
followed up
j'ai pas
with,
fait
"But
gaffe.
you're a really nice guy." Not quite
Des
it's okay, I'm
salles.
used to it, but pretty close. I'll listen to a friend of mine who has ADHD and Asperger's talk about his D&D stories, and he'll go on for a bit, and then
Jackpot
suddenly stop and say,
figurine.
"Sorry, I'm rambling." And you just know that he's been told to shut up or stop talking so many times now that he's used to having to stop
Le
talking
mec devait
because someone got
créer
frustrated with him.
méticuleusement
He's
par
been
les
someone told
artisans
to
de
shut up, and he's
Camorra.
clearly enjoying explaining his wild universes. Passion like that shouldn't be stifled. Constantly having different utilities cut off and multiple eviction threats from the landlord, and a large possibility of becoming homeless in the near future because whoever you live with would rather stock up
Oh
on
my
liquor than save
god,
for
la
rent.
page nocturne.
That
C'est
seems
ça la
almost
gorbille,
too
elle était
specific.
très dedans.
I was walking into Walmart the other day when I saw a woman in her early 60s in a wheelchair trying to push herself up a hill against the wind with a basket on her lap. I said to her, "Pardon me, I don't mean to be rude, but would you like a hand?" And she said, "Oh no, it's all right, I'm used to it." I felt so guilty for how much I take my legs for granted. What a trooper she was.
Non, non.
The kid I had in an after-school program was supposed to be
Why?
the weekend. Basically parked all Friday for the Sunday half. Well, Monday came and I found out the dad never showed. The kid seemed fine though, and when I tried to get if he was really okay, he said, "It's okay, I should be used to this by now." Also, another kid I babysit, her mom is supposed to call on Sunday nights, but skips many of them and just calls whenever she pleases really, and gets mad at the kid for not answering while in school. I asked her about it, and she said it doesn't bother her because she's just so used to her mom being flaky and not calling at the agreed upon time. Why do deadbeat parents like that constantly gas up their kids and then let them down? If you're gonna be a disappointment as a father, at least don't get the kids' hopes up when you know you're not going to follow through.
Ouais,
My mom has some strong letting go issues since she had a rough childhood that resulted in her not letting me go to birthday parties, sleepovers, playdates, etc. when I was younger because she was afraid something was going to happen or that I would somehow embarrass myself for life. Around the 3rd grade, we had a new kid in class, and when it came around to birthday parties, everyone but me got an invite. The new kid noticed this after a while and was offended for me. When asked why I wasn't upset, I just stated that I was used to it. Even if I had gotten an invite, I would not be allowed to go. 8th grade teacher here. I had a student who recently told me that her mom cries every night as she goes through the week's budget trying to work out how much they can afford to eat that week. I asked her if she ever went hungry because as her teacher, it's my duty to escalate when a child isn't having basic needs met, and whether she wanted to see the school counselor about crying. Her response to both questions was, "It's okay, I'm used to it." It was honestly the most heartbreaking thing I've ever heard. Later on, I found out that this girl only had half a buttered sandwich each day at school, which was to last her through recess and lunch. And always went to the library to read during breaks because she wanted to conserve her energy. All the teachers just thought she was a bookworm. In actual fact, she longed for friends, but hadn't made any because they were all running around in the playground.
Ah
I
oui.
don't get the conclusion of the story, but I really hope the teacher followed through on making sure all the child's needs were met. I used to nanny this really sweet girl. In kindergarten or the 1st grade, the girl that sat next to her in class died in a freak accident. She'd recently, within the year or so, just lost grandparents, animals,
Ah,
and
c'était mon
everything.
deuxième
I asked her how
nouvelle
she's
vidéo.
handling the loss of her friend, and she responded, "I'm okay, I'm used to losing people close to me." It broke my heart. I work at Toys R Us. The saddest thing is a child who knows they're not the favorite, saying that they get one $10 toy and their sibling gets many toys, all of which are over that price. I was like, "Oh, is
I'm
it
ready.
your birthday?" To this little girl who was getting one little doll when her brother was getting Nerf guns and video games.
Veux-tu
She
que...
looked at me and went,
Ok,
"Mom and Grandma buy
veux-tu que
everything
je vais faire le
once."
lapin pendant que toi
A
tu
story
t'es
for a
très
similar
dedans?
phrase. It's just easier this way.
Okay.
Cousin was getting married at her stepdad's ranch house and invited
Attends,
everybody,
je-
including her father and us. They had one of those through the years photo albums on the
Est-ce
TV
que
playing
tu peux
throughout the night,
répéter?
despite the fact that her father raised her in a loving
J'allais
home
faire
until
la
16. There
gorbite,
were
tu vas faire
absolutely
tes
no
très
photos
dedans.
anywhere in the video. Multiple people on both sides
Je
of her.
sais que
She was
t'aimes pas la
eventually confronted about it and
gorbille.
said that it was different by her
Donc,
mother and it wasn't worth arguing over. She then had her stepdad walk her down the aisle in front of her father.
Il tourne,
Nurses,
il
doctors,
tourne
and
une
healthcare
clope
workers
un peu
getting the
trop.
living snot kicked out of them by violent abusive people in the hospital, and the police doing absolutely nothing about all of it. I did security in an emergency ward, and I
C'était
really
là.
was not prepared for how violent it was. Also, I was not prepared for how little the police did. It was practically impossible to get them to show up, and on the extremely rare occasions they did, they never arrested anyone. I remember the first day I was filling out an incident report where a nurse got knocked down flat. I'm apologizing to her, saying that I'd been on the phone and can't even get
Ça
the
va,
police
il est
to show
là.
up. And she said, "That's okay, I'm used to it, and you better get used to it too."
Il est...
And either they already
il est
have
moins...
friends, or you later find out they did
Il
something fun
était...
with your group of friends and they
Peut-être
didn't
qu'il
invite
bouge
you. Now we'll
un
usually
peu
say,
trop
"It's
pour
fine,
toi,
come on,
mais...
glad you had fun," but it's not really fine. I
Au
just
moins
got
il est
used to it.
prévisible.
My mom has
Il est
a
beaucoup plus
daughter when I was
prévisible
younger.
que
She
le...
tried to upbringing with
que
triple boys. One
Valvidon.
of them had developmental issues and apparently caused issues for the other two, and they were also stillborn. My sister and I felt horrible at the thought of losing so many siblings, and even worse for what our mom was going through all over again. Our stepdad was broken inside. He really wanted children of his own, and we all knew that. It's not that he loved us any less. He's a great man. Just that he always wanted to raise a child. A few years later, my mom got pregnant totally by accident. We were all talking one day, and it slipped by my sister. What if it happens again? My mom's face got this really distant look, and she just said, "It's okay. I'm used to it." I had to get up and go to the other room because I didn't want to be seen crying. However, there's a happy ending. Our little sister was born healthy. Minor birth complications needing an immediate C-section, which terrified us, but she's 6 now in a bundle of energy that can rival any tornado. She's the accidental miracle and the best thing that's happened to the family. I'm really glad we got to get a happy ending squeeze somewhere in here. I knew this girl for like 10 years because of Girl Scouts, but didn't become real good friends until high school. I never had a sleepover with her outside of Girl Scouts. And when I first went to sleep over, I could hear her dad screaming at the others about trying to get named as another teacher, and screaming at his wife. I was Girl Scout leader, 4 years later, and I was so scared, and I was I was like, wow, he sounds really upset. Are your brothers okay? And she basically told me he was really
Je t'ai avalé.
Pourquoi t'avais un filet de temps avec toi?
Mauvais système, mauvais système. Sors mes herbes.
Anyway, she told him to pull up his sleeves, and there were bloody whip marks, bruises, and burns all over his arms. The guy just looks at her with a smile and says that he's used to it, and he's really happy. The teacher straight up starts to cry and pull her out of class. It didn't seem to go a long time after that, because he got pissed off and as it turns out, he actually was used to it, because he'd been beaten at home for as long as he could. I realized just how heartbreaking it would be to see a little boy after
Lâche tes cailloux, Perry. Merci, je sais pas ce que je voulais dire.
Il est lancé le s'endormir sur toi, c'est ça.
Je suis en pleine tête.
Just wanted to get a final thing, which sent my parents over the edge. I guess they expected something to happen or some magic surgery to exist. Not to be told by an expert, sorry, nothing we can do. And for me to be so nonchalant about it, it sucks, but I'm really sure. When I asked her more questions, she finally told me he hit her really hard in the back of the head, had a big goose-egg-sized lump in the scalp. I was horrified and asked why is she even still with him after that. She just said, it's okay, I'm used to it. I wish I could do something to help with her self-esteem, but no matter what I tell her or how much I care about her, she needs to figure out how to love herself. When I was 15 or 16, my friends told this really, really big girl that I liked her as a joke. It was crappy, but she believed them. I flagged her down after gym class to tell her the truth, and when I did, she goes, yeah, it's okay. People don't ever have feelings for me. I'm used to pranks like this. I distinctly remember punching my friend that did that in the chest like 6 or 7 times during study hall the next period. It was heartbreaking. When I was 19 and dating my current partner, I was squatting in an abandoned, flea-infested, decaying house while I scraped by on food stamps and working 8 hours a week because my job was cutting everyone. A friend offered to let me move in with them for a while, but didn't want me to bring my best friend and last member of my family, my cat. I tried to take him to an animal rescue place, but the attendant decided that my cat was too aggressive after he manhandled him pretty hard. As I sat in my partner's car, holding the cat straight close to my heart, he admitted to me how unfair this all was and how he knew everything to me and how I'm not considered to be a I was so surprised by his reaction because why did anyone cry over me and my problems? The only reason eventually just reminded about future. And when I eventually moved in with my partner, he let me take him even though he's definitely rich and I miss my life, my constant companion every day. I'm so thankful about the time with him that I don't know how much I can that's a sacred home. My cat is everything to me. Experience from him. I'm a guy who seems to be able to defend him, so more than I used to. When I was not really talking about it.
Allez, Perry. Le lac Champi. Oh, et tu sais, mais la grandi. Oh, le lapin qui fait des petits catch.
She asked me, do you know who your real mother is? What major lucky you had to know? My grandma passed away just over 2 weeks ago. Family all went to see her for the last time. She was sitting there dancing around her and telling stories and joking. I went and sat by her and told her, do you know who your mother is? Now, I've only ever known one woman mother and I hadn't considered otherwise. I was shocked and asked her.
There you go, j'ai affaibli ce machin. Ouais, comme il va partir, et moi avec. Come on.
I'm not sure I can pursue this any further with my family, as any reason to keep it secret is probably a decent one, and I'm not so sure I want to know the answer. But it also has me wondering, has anyone else had a major plot twist moment in their lives, whether it turned out to be true or not? My grandfather was dying of cancer. He was a big, tough man and gradually
Ah, ok, c'est là, il y a Kazu qui a décidé d'être rejoindre, non, le Kazu est parti. Ouh, un méga calamar.
When I was 15, my siblings and I were put into foster care. We had no idea why until the social worker told us that our parents were using drugs, our after-school jobs were helping them pay for drugs when they said our money was being saved. My dad wasn't my real dad, and 3 out of my 5 siblings were my half-siblings, and my real dad kidnapped my brother and I when we were babies. We were returned to my mom and he confessed to murdering a woman and then went to jail. He insisted that we discovered that he started another family. It was quite the mind freak. My grandpa was having trouble hearing and it took us a while to convince him to get her name. In the meantime, he got a phone call saying his uncle John had died. He asked about a funeral and was told there wasn't. I really only saw John when he came to business, but he was quite the character and my whole family missed him. A couple weeks ago, my grandpa called me and I was talking about his process. His cousin said, who are you talking about? This was 2 weeks ago. Someone else died, but we still don't know. John probably didn't wonder if he was going to or visit the calls. Virtual fertilization. We wanted nothing more than to have kids. And her circumstances led her to use a sperm bank. When we were 3 years old, our mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. When we were 6, she passed away. My sister and I were taken.
Ah là, yes, merci.
She already had 2 children. It was a crazy and emotional time for all of us. It was an amazing family unit. And my mom, dad, and
J'ai juste allé de live. Je me fier de live. Il a pris tellement de temps à faire son attaque que j'ai raté mon counter. Ça l'a quand même mis au sol, ça l'a quand même mis au sol, mais juste par le sheer puissance de mes attaques. Mais quand même. Bien, je commence à avoir besoin de déguiser. Voilà. Ça peut couper l'herbe sous le pied.
En effet, je suis confirme, il est mort.
Il va mourir. Ah ouais.
I'm pursued more. Half sister? What are you talking about? I then proceeded to find out that he'd been married before when he was 18 to some stripper from Vegas. He lived in Arizona until he was about 30. Lorelai, or her stripper name, Karma, had been married to him for about a year until he realized she was a shopaholic, shoplifting, dealing drugs, taking drugs, and was abusive to her daughter. He got the heck out and gave the child to his parents to raise since he was 19 years old. Now I have a half sister I plan to meet. I found out my stepfather was my biological father, whilst who I thought was my dad was still actively in my life. Okay, it's complex, so I'll break it down. I was born to my mother and her husband. We'll call him Roger. So mom and dad were my parents. I grew up thinking Roger was my dad. I knew of nothing else other than these two as my birth parents. When I was 4, my mom and Roger got divorced. My older siblings were always allowed to go visiting Roger, and I rarely got to. I grew up desperately wanting to see my dad Roger. When I was 7, my mother married a new man who became my stepfather. We'll call him Bob. So I grew up with Bob being a great stepdad to me. But it always hurt that I never saw my dad Roger.
Pas la
As I
même
got older, I got
pastel.
angrier and angrier that I never got to see my dad Roger. Because hey, what kid who loves their dad wouldn't be? So one day after I hit puberty around 12, Bob and I got into a fight, and he was telling me off, and I pulled out the "You're not my real dad" line, which cued my mother and Bob to sit me down and tell me that Bob is my biological father, and that Roger's not my father. Only a man I was led to believe was my biological father in order to keep up appearances to the outside world. My dad is a real-life superhero. He has graphics synesthesia. He sees numbers as colors and shapes because those sections of his brain are connected in ways normal people's aren't, and he used that to catch a man who was skimming accounts when he worked at a bank. So my dad worked at a bank, and for fun, he'd scroll down through the account balances and watch the patterns of color. He did this just about every day, and over time, he noticed more and more zeros. They stood out because they're empty space to him, and it looks ugly. He was noticing this in a couple thousand accounts, too. Just a few black spaces at the ends of strings of color. He took it to the police because his boss wasn't listening to it. Turns out, his boss was the guy skimming the accounts, but the police never took the investigation seriously until my dad compiled the evidence on his own and took it to them. My dad's a cool guy. This one is actually a really cool and interesting story. People are just awesome. While at a party about 5 years ago, I met a girl who I really clicked with. Friends-wise, I'm a girl. I started talking about my boyfriend, but not by that title, by name. She proceeded to tell me she knew him and had actually recently been on a date with him, and how it was the most romantic date she'd ever been on. My boyfriend of a year. Yeah, it just got real. Yes, we broke up shortly afterwards. That girl ended up being one of my best friends, and we're still friends to this day. I met a girl at a bar while my boyfriend and a friends and me and this girl hit it off. We drank and laughed all night long, became Facebook friends, and
Niveau
hanging out
19-23, j'ai encore
one day she blocked me on
une
Facebook.
bonne distance à faire.
Me and my boyfriend lived together, and I told him about it, and all he really said was, "Oh, well, screw her." Plot twist: my boyfriend of 4 years had gotten her pregnant. Eesh. Me and the boyfriend split up, obviously, and now her, my ex, and their kid live with his uncle in a trailer park. Second plot twist: after we split, I was depressed, went on a huge drinking binge, met the lead singer of my all-time favorite band at a show. We hit it off. I quit drinking, and now I'm happily married to a guy I had a crush on for 10 years. Well, that one was a little bit of a roller coaster. At least the original poster ended up happy. Sounds like maybe the ex not so much. The day we found out that the doctors were going to stop being aggressive with my father's treatment was very difficult. My grandparents flew down from Florida to get his affairs in order. Apparently, my dad, a near-broke alcoholic, had not paid any of his life insurance premiums. My grandparents found out and paid all the late bills, which allowed my siblings to collect on the multi-million-dollar policy. To this day, I'm grateful because I didn't find out until years after about the whole situation. Now I have enough money to pay for college and buy my first home. One of my cousins does not have the same father as her sisters. Their father found a handwritten note in which their mother wrote about her affair, the pregnancy, and then confronted her about it. They ended up staying married and are currently married to this day. My mother and father found out and told me a few years ago. It was a slip-up that I continually pursued until I got the answers. There are only 5 of us in the entire family that know. Me, my mother, my father, and the cousin's parents. The girl and her sisters have no idea. Mine was finding out the woman I called mom for the first 16 years of my life was actually my grand, and that my older sister was my birth mom. Apparently, she got pregnant when she was 13, so her mom decided to raise me. Now, I've got no idea what to call either of them. Calling my big sister mom just feels weird. I found out while my uncle was on his deathbed that he had a secret family with adult children. Mind you, this is the classic drunk uncle who lived alone or just had a live-in girlfriend or wife from time to time, but came to every family function. Nobody knew, not his sisters, not even his mother. We still dispute this family because when we did ask my uncle, he just said, it's not a big deal. What the heck? This isn't really about me, but rather a friend.
Hello.
I think to this day, he still doesn't know this. My mother's good friends with his mother,
Oh,
which is how we met. And
kitty.
tells my mother that the man we've all believed to be his father isn't really his father, and even he, the supposed father, doesn't even know it because she was officially dating him back then, but was cheating on
You're
him with
gonna
the father of the
suffer.
child. She
I'm
said the
gonna
father
have
ended up dying
fun.
before the child was ever born. I believe in a car accident, and so she raised the child as the son of the man who she would go on to marry, and later divorce. Earlier this last year, I was hit up by a guy on Facebook claiming to be my half-brother. Fast forward a bit, and it turns out to be true. I don't know the details of the hows and whys, as every story has multiple sides, but my twin brother and I have been raised our whole lives, 23 years, by a wonderful man whom is the biological father of our older brother. There was never any hint or doubt that our dad wasn't our biological father, and we were raised with the utmost love and care by him, even though he and my mother were divorced or separated throughout the entirety of our lives. My father even had a fiancée leave him at one point because she was apparently unhappy that he was paying family support for kids that weren't technically of his biology. He really sacrificed a lot for us, and I couldn't have asked for a better dad. Hasn't changed much in my life, honestly, and I never had any real crisis of conscience or identity about it because, hey, that sounds about right given my family history. Nonetheless, I'd say that counts as a nice little twist. When my grandfather was on his deathbed, he was very much aware of what he was saying and doing. He talked to each of the family members that were there privately. When I went in to see him, we talked for what seemed to be hours, joking as if it was another one of our every other weekend camping trips. It was very strange to know he would just be a lifeless shell of what he used to be. He put his hand on the back of my neck and told me I was about to go through the toughest 4 years of my life and to not act on my depressive actions. I left the room confused and broken. He passed within half an hour. The next 4 years and counting have been hell. My immediate family found out my father had been cheating on my mother and just messed with our emotions and thoughts over the course of a year and a bit. I failed to get my high school diploma, so I started to work full time to pay for it.
Je vais prendre pour la première fois des potions parce que le mec Malo, il était petit et on était en lorrain. Le machin, je crois, il est quand même assez violent.
I never had anyone in my family to really relate these passions to until on his deathbed my grandfather started telling me stories I never heard before about being both a boxer and a dancer. It may not sound like a big plot twist, but believe me when I say it felt like one at the time. We became really good friends all of a sudden, and in his very last days on earth, I was so glad to make that connection with him before he left. I found out just last week that all my life my mother's been addicted to drugs and has been hiding her addiction from my sister and I as best she could. On top of that, every single night she takes sleeping pills. I also learned that her family's convincing her to lie to my father and continue her addiction instead of getting help, purely to spite my father. I'd always suspected my mother had a drug problem, but never brought it up. My sister is still in the dark, and I intend to keep it that way. For now, I'm just watching my mother slowly wither away. Not me, but a friend of mine in high school. So my friend was adopted when she was pretty young. Doesn't know any of her biological family. My friend is a typical high school girl. Likes to go to the mall and whatnot. Every time she's there, she gets guys hitting on her saying how they know her from somewhere or something like that. She doesn't think much of it. She's a cute girl, so it happens often enough everywhere. As time passes, she notices a bunch more people saying they know her at the mall and call her by a different name. She eventually gets talking to one person, and they swear they know someone who looks exactly like her. Turns out she's a twin that was also adopted and they were separated at birth. I had always been told both my grandfathers had died before I was born, and I never felt like there was any reason to question it. Fast forward 20 years, and suddenly a man who looks identical to my dad shows up. It's my granddad. Turned out he had an affair with my nan when they were both married to other people, and she became pregnant with my dad. My parents separated a while ago, and I never had actually seen their wedding photos. I finally found one and saw my mom in her wedding dress, but she was holding my older sister, who looked about 3, making me about 1, or at least 4 for that matter. I thought there was a family secret until my mom told me she'd married my dad before a judge, and this picture was from the actual ceremony, which took place years later. My wife has a large family, lots of aunts, uncles, great uncles, etc. Family reunion attendance numbers in the hundreds. So there was one of my wife's great aunts, Aunt Vida. She wasn't well known to the family, but a few decades after she died, my wife's cousin is doing some family history, and a story comes out. Turns out, Vida was in her early life a mortician's assistant. Then she was hired by the state in the late 1800s, early 1900s as a hangman's assistant, and then she got promoted. Apparently, she didn't do a lot of work. Hanging as a form of capital punishment was being phased out by the early 1900s. She still had her title and salary though. After she died in Minneapolis, she was buried there. Eventually, the family wanted her grave moved down to the family gravesite in Iowa. When they unearthed the coffin, the lid fell open and they discovered possibly the most disturbing thing about Aunt Vida's life: scratch marks on the inside of the lid. After reading this in my cousin's notes, my wife turned 3 shades of pale, calmed down a bit, and then said, "Well, that's karma." My grandfather's sister had a heart attack, and I was telling my mother that we should all do a check. This kind of thing tends to run in the family. At that point, my mother told me that my real grandfather wasn't the one we thought. Her biological father was a Jew who was deported to a lager during the fascist period in Italy, and my grandmother, pregnant at the time, never saw him again. This is also the reason why my grandmother during the war hid many Jew families in Venice, under the roof of her house where they lived in Campo Sant'Angelo, despite the danger of being arrested and deported as well. This is not really a plot twist, but a funny last word story. My grandpa never really watched the news, but he liked to stay informed on the things that kids are watching these days. So I would always tell him about the modern headlines and whatever everyone was talking about. I also started watching South Park with him, since it always dealt with what was happening at the time the episode was created. He liked the show a lot, and we started watching it on Netflix. When he watched The Succubus, he couldn't stop laughing at Tree Fitty, and that was sort of our main joke. No one else in the family knew what the heck we were talking about. We would always randomly say he would need about Tree Fitty, and I would read him Reddit and 4chan stories that lead up to Tree Fitty jokes. In August of this year, I was told his lifelong habit of smoking caught up with him, and his lung cancer was serious. He could have been treated, but he didn't want to. He wanted to pass away in his home with his family and loved ones. When we talked the last time, we did the usual crying and everything, but after I sort of stopped crying,
Je suis en train de penser, est-ce que ça aurait pas été neat d'avoir le Magnum Malo comme mentionné dans Star Wars 2?
Oh oui.
Before he said, "Nah, I'm kidding. Go bring your sister in. I love my grandpa." When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description as well. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Oh, ça va. J'ai peur.
Ah, merci pour le boost.
What's the funniest reason you went into school to collect your child? I was called to collect my son when he was in first grade because, quote, he was being disrespectful to his classmates. They wouldn't explain. My son told me that Jeffrey pantsed him, but that makes no sense. About an hour later, the light bulb went on. You didn't wear underwear today, did you? Nope.
Okay.
When I was in middle school, some poor guy got pants right in front of me. A girl who shared me in his classes. Normally, it'd be no big deal. Someone got pants on the floor on a reasonable basis. No, the really awkward part was I was trying to crack down and he was standing up at the top locker next to me. Not above, but I guess I'm back. His pants were shouted right to me. So of course, I looked at him.
Double counter.
His individual's boxers had been pulled down along with his pants. So So right in front of my eyes was a dingling. It was the first dingling I'd ever seen in person. Well, outside of seeing like baby cousins get changed and stuff. Considering we were 11, I was presumably the first girl outside of still fairly new people to see it. It was just what it said. It's honestly that girl's back up with lightning reflexes. I've never seen someone go so red in the face. We both stood there in shock for a couple seconds as Holly cleared it and came off the house. We shared it in class. Oh, that's even more awkward. The whole time he was staring out apologies, and I kept telling him it wasn't his fault. It's not like he poured his own thing. After class, other students asked me if I'd seen it, and I laughed profusely. What are you talking about? He was wearing
Ah oui, si je te dis quelque chose à propos de Maître de Malo, si tu as un feu d'enfer et que tu... voilà. Et que tu décides de faire une projection philoptère, tu vas laisser le feu d'enfer sur place et la première fois que Maître de Malo va passer de sorte, ça va le faire tomber.
Attends, c'est pas... Non, c'est Ryan.
C'est quoi?
C'est Magnemalo ou Ryan qui faut couper la queue?
C'est Rajang, mais tu peux pas couper la queue de Rajang. C'est juste un truc canonique. Canoniquement, c'est ça qui arrive, c'est pour ça qu'il faut jamais le faire. Mais concrètement, in-game, tu peux pas. Tu peux briser la queue, mais tu peux pas couper la queue. Oh, ça va, il est pas si pire que ça, en vrai. Ratian. Je pensais qu'il était en train de changer de zone, non, il était allé attaquer une Ratian.
Turns out he was singing Bruno Mars' Uptown Funk You Up. My child's first grade teacher was upset that he accidentally smooshed a butterfly in playground recess. When I got there, my child was also missing his glasses. She hadn't noticed this. My youngest had a slight speech impediment due to nursing. He would replace his S's with F's to approximate the sound. I didn't have to chat with the head any further. I unconfidently used the phrase, so long suckers, so much he used it himself.
Oh! C'est tellement épique de couper la queue d'un monstre en même temps qu'il fasse une grosse attaque avec. Zénith. Allô?
Ouais?
C'est pas épique de quand tu coupes la queue alors que le machin est en train de faire une grosse attaque.
Oh, j'aurais jamais cru que ça allait marcher.
Oui, oui, ça marche. Le centre aussi, je crois qu'il marche. C'est pour ça que j'étais surpris que l'arbre ne marchait pas.
Ah ouais, j'ai cassé un truc, mais en mode... Ça a tout effet, je ferais. Ah, mais souffre en fait!
Ben, je suis un peu lourd en train de faire 50 counters dans sa face de filet.
Ah, mais quand même, le marshmallow est parti, hein!
Ben, j'ai fait vraiment... Je lui ai coupé la queue alors qu'il est en train de faire sa plus grosse attaque. Je crois que c'est...
Il a vraiment passé, mais sur 3 générations.
C'est ça, j'ai fait un counter pendant qu'il faisait sa grosse attaque, donc j'ai coupé la queue et j'ai attaqué tout le reste du corps en même temps. Vu que mon counter c'est 5-6 coups en une attaque.
Instead, I cocked my leg, walked out to him, told him to shut his mouth, and completely cracked my pants in the most glorious fashion. This wasn't a little nugget. This was a full pants load of chocolate pudding that ran down my leg and made a little puddle on the floor. Everything in the office goes dead silent, and there's no mistaking what's just happened. The kid just stared at me with absolute horror in his eyes. Without looking away from him, I raised my hand and said, Miss, office lady's name, I don't remember. I think I need to call my mom. I went home, took a bath, threw the pants away, and came back the next day. The kid was seated on the opposite side of the room from me, and I never had a problem with him again. He feared and respected me from then on. Anybody want dessert? My dad got sent to the principal's office for telling his 6th grade teacher she was pronouncing the state capital of South Dakota, Pierre, wrong. She kept saying Pierre, 2 syllables, like a French name. And he said it was Pierre,
T'as
1
récupéré la
syllable,
queue?
like a fish off.
Ouais.
He was sent off for not respecting a teacher's authority. My grandma had to drive to school to talk to the teacher.
Joli goody.
Did you ask why he says it's Pierre? Because if you did, you'd find out that both his father and I are from South Dakota. He visits his grandparents and aunts and uncles in South Dakota every summer. He knows plenty of people from South Dakota who all say Pierre. Do you know anyone from South Dakota? No? Well, take it from a South Dakotan. It's Pierre. We're not fancy French people, and stop wasting my time. Okay, well, like, to be honest, I didn't know it was Pierre either. I kept saying Pierre all my life, so I'm sorry if there's anybody out there who was offended by my ignorance as a young child. So, yeah, let's just go and stop that. My son, 14, 8th grade, during class change, walked into the boys' bathroom, put his hands over his head, and while thrusting his hips in a hopping motion, told all the other boys in the room to protect your buttholes, gentlemen, here I come. The funniest part about it all, that exact same description was jotted down on the write-up slip. Even the principal couldn't stop laughing. My daughter hid inside of a toy box for hours in preschool, and the teachers couldn't find her. She's gonna be my wild child. When I was in 2nd grade, I had a shirt that we got as a hand down from a friend of my mom's with Braille on the front. Apparently, no one took the time to figure out what it said.
Une plaque.
So I sat down and translated the word on the front, one letter at a time while in class. F-U-C-K-O-F-F. Oh my, I said. I knew this was a bad word, so I told my teacher and apologized. I wasn't in trouble, but my parents were called and asked to come bring in a new shirt
Pourquoi
while I
tu
was
me
in the
donnes
office.
des
My
trucs
principal thought
qui
it
me
was hilarious,
servent à
right?
rien,
The classroom was
je...
partially blind. I'm unsure she had vision enough to see my
Des
shirt.
plaques?
I believe that is one of the reasons
Je
I
suis
went in the
trop
office.
niveau pour avoir...
When I got Pokemon Yellow,
pour
I
que
was
ça me
so
serve à
frustrated to do
quelque
it. I went
chose.
out one day at school. I got inside this huge bush that was practically hollow inside. It was a
Quoique
mile
ça peut peut-être servir à faire des armes.
was entered by students because we weren't really allowed. So I sat there for hours playing Pokemon. And when I came out, it was 3 p.m. School closed at 3:30. I had been there since 12:30, and my mother was at the school. I was freaking out because she thought they let me leave the school alone. I got called out of work several times right out of college to come to a local high school because my 14-year-old son was in trouble. I don't have a son, and if I had a son, it would be very impressive if he was 14 years old then, because I would have had to conceive him when I was 9. I told them that. They kept calling. Finally, I showed up at the high school to prove that I, a 23-year-old white guy, was not the father of a 14-year-old Indian boy. The assistant principal was like, oh, right. My mom told me that when my brother was in grade school, she got the call to pick him up for a day's suspension. Turned out during lunch, he opened his lunchbox and pulled out a can of Foster's. It was empty and it was meant to be a joke, but the school didn't see it that way. He was 9 and right at the start of a decade-long mission to raise heck. I got a call to pick up my daughter in kindergarten because she had no underwear. She had them on when I put her on the bus, so I have no idea what happened. Totally embarrassing. Oh my. I have 4 kids, all adults now, who were pretty high-spirited back in the day. My oldest son, however, wins the prize from an incident in 6th grade. I got a call one afternoon that he had been sent to the principal's office. Nothing new there, and I needed to come get him at once. Uh-oh. He had mooned the 2nd graders, all of them, and their teachers. Not me, but a classmate of a coworker sent everyone home many years ago. He nicked a decent bit of elemental potassium from the chemistry lab and dropped down the sewer access pipe outside the school. This was not good for the school's plumbing.
Ça me
Sidewalk
dégueule.
through everything. For those not aware, here's a quick
Oui.
chemistry lesson. Potassium plus water
Trust
equals
me.
violent boom. Nobody should
Faites,
be throwing any sort of
parce
potassium
que
or sodium
une
down
fois
a
qu'ils
sewer
sont
pipe, because that will cause severe
rendus à la
problems.
fin du Master
Not
Race,
me, but my sister.
les
She
méga
started off with some very
potions
talented
seront
student
la
who needed to be
vie.
picked up. She gets to the school and the principal said that he had to go home for the day because he peed on the tree outside at recess. He really laid into her about how they had to bleach the tree. Seriously.
Ça
They
prend
poured
pas
bleach on
de
the tree
temps
because
pour
little kids peed on it,
soigner,
and it was
et
terrible. And
cette
how she teaches her
soigne
something. My sister
entièrement,
looked him straight
ben
in the
cette
eye
soigne
and
tout,
asked, "Do you really think I had
tout
the
est
right person
pévé.
who taught him that? You're my husband when he comes in next time." Me, when I was a kid, we moved from Middle America to the West Coast. I had extra R sounds in my words. They called my mom about my speech impediment. After talking to my mom, they understood that it was not a speech impediment, but my birth sound language. It is Washington, not Washington. It's funny now, but wasn't at the time. One day, I was called to pick up my daughter from school. I asked why and was vaguely told she had been caught cheating, was being disrespectful to the teacher, and had destroyed government property. Holy crap, I thought. What had she done? My mind instantly went through scenarios in which she had cheated on a test, got caught, that my sweet little 7-year-old had cursed the teacher while throwing something out the window. I go to the school, find my scared daughter in the principal's office looking totally dejected, and ask for an explanation. I discovered the cheating was that she had giggled while playing a game where someone was it, and the other half of the classroom had to guess who it was. The disrespecting teacher was from her crossing her arms when she was being told how she wrecked the game. The best was the explanation for destroying government property. During story time, she was picking out loose carpet threads. I was extremely angry with my daughter the whole drive from work, and after this load of WTF, it instantly transferred to anger with the school. You call me here because she giggled, crossed her arms, and picked that old nasty carpet? I was hot and took my daughter home, letting her know I was a bit upset with her, but let her know that there would be no more punishment. She'd been through enough. We went home and watched cartoons, and I made her favorite grilled cheese and tomato soup for lunch. I received a call from the vice president of my daughter's school one day while I was at work. I could tell the VP was holding back her laughter, but she tried to remain professional. Hello, your daughter acted out in class today. The children were switching from coloring to reading at the carpet. She threw her crayons down and pointedly said to the teacher, "Are you freaking kidding me?" My knee-jerk reaction was, "Dang it, are you freaking kidding me?" It's clear where she learned this from. My second thought was, dang, I have a kid in junior kindergarten that knows how to use that phrase in the correct form. The following year, the VP is no longer at the school. We attend similar social groups and talk often. She loves to tell me that making that phone call was one of the funniest calls she has had to make as an educator. My dad was called into the school when I was in grade
Le
school.
problème,
Apparently, I've been caught
en
red-handed
vrai, le
for crossing
Magnum Anneau,
in
il
class.
est ultra
It was like,
agressif,
I feel
ce qui est
like
bien pour la
I
difficulté
have
quand
two
t'es
options. One, you were caught, but didn't know that you'd done
quand
anything wrong. Or two, you were somehow
t'es
told to do something
nouveau,
you
t'es
shouldn't do.
fait,
Which,
mais
given
quand
some
t'as des
circumstances, I could easily
counters,
believe. Where's the
et
evidence,
tu
OP?
peux quasiment
Matthew stayed
spammer,
for 2 months. I showed him Dexter's laboratory for the first time.
ça
Next day, they called me to
devient
pick him up. They
un...
say, "Omelette de
Ça,
fromage."
ça devient une fête.
I too was the child. I peed on my friend in 5th
C'est
grade.
counter, sans
What's going on here?
counter, sans
We were cleaning and
counter,
he
le
was
machin il peut rien
when the buddy
faire.
decided to run underneath the collapse. Hand slipped, peed down his back. Sent to the principal's. My 4-year-old teacher told me he had repeatedly called her a butthole. She had taken something away from him and said, "That's all." Every time she came near him, he said, "That's all" to her. Knowing him, he probably used the same tone of voice she had used, and she was a nasty piece of work. In case you don't get it, say "that's all" to yourself in increasingly varying tones, and
Reviens dans
you'll see why he
quelques
got in trouble.
minutes.
Unicorn Club. So my daughter was in 5th grade. She was proving to be pretty
En
responsible.
attendant,
She
man,
was home about an hour before
si je
I
suis
was
pas
leaving.
revenu
And
d'ici
Instagram
que
account
tu
that I
sois
had
prête à
never
faire
had
la
one.
quête,
Now she's in high school.
vas-y, je te
Well,
rejoindrai
I got
après.
the school's principal one day. He tells me 2 boys were fist fighting in the lunchroom. I asked what that had to do with my daughter. Well, apparently, my child had used an Instagram account to start what was essentially a cult called Unicorn Club. Unicorns were obviously the worship deity, with goats being the devil figure to the unicorn gods. These 2 boys got into a fist fight over whether unicorns or goats were better. I had to pick her up to prevent further disputes and disband Unicorn Club. TLDR, my 10-year-old daughter created a small cult around unicorn worship. Guys, leave a comment right now. Unicorns or goats? My child with mild tree nut allergy went to the nurse since she ate a mystery food and her throat felt weird. She has been evaluated and her allergy does not warrant an EpiPen. I rushed over because she usually gets hysterical and we need Benadryl, which the school can't administer. I arrived. She's all smiles. She feels better now after some water. The mystery food? Fuego Takis. She was 6 when this happened. The one that made me laugh and shake my head was when my son was in the 2nd grade. He decided that instead of helping one of his fellow classmates with his work, that he'll just do his work for him. When I asked him why, his answer really tickled me. Mom, so our table will be the first table to get snacks. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background and finish listening to all the stories. Link at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Link in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bon ben, je suis de retour. Juste été me chercher un fardeau.
Ah, ok. Ah, ça
Well,
fait
we got our
4
first
gens
dog.
qui
It
veulent
was
me
my dog to
parler.
take him for a walk every evening after dinner. This dog
Ah
is
bah
the
oui,
goofiest,
c'est vrai, t'es
sweetest
monté de
little
rang.
mix. Not a mean bone in his body. He never met a stranger, and when we occasionally escaped, we usually found him in a neighbor's yard playing with some kids. He was the farthest thing from a guard dog you can imagine. So I'm walking him one night after dinner by myself, and suddenly he stops dead in his tracks in the very middle of the sidewalk. Out of the
Bon,
trees,
pendant
like,
que t'es en
maybe
train de
10
faire
feet
ça,
away
moi
from
je
me,
vais
this
regarder
guy
au
just
niveau
comes
des
strolling
arbres.
on out. I was pretty skittish at that age, and I didn't like being alone with strange men, like at all. So I was immediately unnerved. The guy walked up to me and asked if my dog was friendly. I responded out of sheer anxious panic and said that yeah, he was. The guy reached out to pet him, though my dog snarled and snapped at his hand, which I had never seen him do before. I apologized, made some excuse I don't remember, and hurried away into the pretense of getting my vicious dog away from him. Turns out this dude was a predator who assaulted 3 other neighborhood kids in those trees, and my dog was probably the only reason I wasn't the 4th. When I was in university, I was walking home from the bars in the Byward Market in Ottawa with my roommate at the time. It was about 2:30 a.m., and we were looking forward to getting home and ordering some pizza when we came across 2 guys and a very drunk girl. Initially, we didn't think anything about it because it was a pretty common sight on a Friday night. But as we walked behind them for a few minutes, we noticed how out of it she was. One of the guys was essentially carrying her, and her clutch was loosely dangling from her wrists. Our street came up, but instead of turning down, we decided to see what was going on. The guys explained that she was going to their girlfriend's and had too much to drink, so they took her home. We asked them a few more questions: what bar they were at, where she lived, if she was an Auto U student, etc. They gave pretty convincing answers, but all the same seemed really uncomfortable and wanted us to go away. During the conversation, the guy holding his girlfriend shifted her position to get a better grip, which caused her arm to dangle down and drop her clutch. Before they could move, my roommate grabbed the clutch and took out her ID. My roommate then asked if they knew her first and last name. This is where things changed. The other guy got really aggressive and confrontational while the other was silent. They didn't know her name or birthday. I then pulled out my phone and called the police. The guy dropped her and they took off running. We waited with her for about 10 minutes until the police and EMS got there. We gave a statement, but they not had much to go on other than their descriptions. Police told us they suspected she'd been ghost and that she was lucky we happened to be walking behind her. Pretty scary stuff. All the praise in the world to these 2 guys.
Ça c'est
You guys are pros. Too
intéressant.
many people would have just taken it at face value and walked away, but you sensed something was wrong and followed through, and as a result protected this girl from a horrible experience. Got off the subway at night. There was one other person about a half a block behind me on my route home. This is a totally normal thing. That's happened thousands of times. Totally normal looking dude, not even following me closely. I had a bad feeling. Such a bad feeling that when I turned the corner on my way home, I broke into a dead sprint and
Ah bah tiens, il fallait un pack Magnum Ado pour continuer l'arbre de Magnum Ado justement.
I knew I'd been right to hide. He started looking for me, muttering to himself. He went up and down the street, looking around corners. I hid and held my breath until he was gone. It was terrifying. I'm so glad I had that sudden, inexplicable impulse to hide and listen to him. This is another one of those times, guys. If your spider sense starts
Hey,
listen to
bon,
me.
mais par contre, il te faut une orbe de Magnum Ado pour la montée niveau 3. Oh, ça va, j'en ai 4.
As we're sitting in the parking lot, we noticed a dude standing by the trunk of his car a few rows from us ahead of us. I had a bad feeling about it, so I was watching him the entire time while my friends were all chatting it up and laughing. I noticed my other friend who was driving watching too. Sure enough, after watching us for a second, he pops the trunk, pulls out a pistol, and starts walking towards us. We noped out of there and floored it around the parking lot right as our friend came outside, yelled for him to get in, and sped off. Turns out there had been a ton of carjackings in that area over the last few months. Not me, but my mom. When I was about 10 years old, I got invited to spend the night at my really good friend's home. My mom said no. I begged her to let me go, but she was adamant that I couldn't. She said that she just didn't feel right about it and that no amount of thinking was going to change it. A few weeks later, my friend's dad was arrested for possession of illegal explicit material. After he went to trial, it was found that he had abused several young girls. He would have his daughter invite them over for a slumber party and then prey on them when they went to sleep. If my mom hadn't trusted her gut feeling, I could have been one of his victims. Several years ago on Thanksgiving, my mom was becoming extremely overwhelmed. The holidays have never been a great success in my family, and my parents had issues communicating, which led to a lot of stressful, intense dinners. And if it wasn't them, it was someone else starting a fire. Well, this year was bad. My mom had been cooking for hours to get ready to head over to my cousin's house. My dad was yelling about how we spend too much money on the holidays. It got to a point where my mom told me and my brothers to leave for the party ahead of us. We didn't get far from the house until a really bad feeling started sinking in my stomach. I knew my brothers felt something too. I said, "Can we go back?" And my older brother turned around and when we got there, my father was gone. He left out of anger, and my mom yelled at him to leave. My mother was in her bed, laying still with an empty bottle of sleeping pills beside her. She was still conscious when we came in, but started shaking and was falling asleep. We called 911. I later learned that the pill she had taken would only have put her to sleep for a long time, not actually kill her. But clearly it was her intent. She's had severe depression, and after this, she got some real help. A little different perhaps, but I used to work for a company making barns. We were installing a rail made from old oil lines. I was using a large chop saw to cut the threaded ends off the pipe. A chop saw is basically a large gas-powered chainsaw with a 14-inch diameter fiber blade in this case. I'd gotten to the last cut, and as I stood up, I had the weirdest feeling that something was wrong. Didn't know what, but I knew something was off. I looked around and checked my cut, which was good. Didn't mark the concrete below. Stood there for a solid 5 minutes with saw in my hands, trying to figure out what was wrong. All looked good until I moved the saw enough to notice a large hole burning in the shin of my jeans. Turns out I had stood in the sparks. Luckily, there was enough left for shorts. Oh, that's a close one. This one definitely could have ended a lot worse. I don't know if I had a something is very wrong feeling for this. However, I felt something was off. I was at my mechanic getting routine work done on my car during summertime. I noticed that he had a coat hanger, and every single hanger had a well-worn coat on it. I thought it was odd and out of place, but figured it's a mechanic shop. They probably just leave it there from the wintertime. No biggie. Not too long afterwards, maybe a few months, there was a drug bust at the shop. They were using those jackets to hold heroin. Our mechanic is in jail now, and honestly, he was a good mechanic, so I was disappointed. Ironically, my pediatric doctor got busted for bribery to prescribe certain medications and is likely going to jail too. Never had a vibe about him though. This sucks too, since he was a great doctor. When I was younger, we would go visit my aunt a lot. Her brother-in-law was often there and sometimes watched her kids for her. Well, me and my sister just really didn't like him. We told our mom he made us uncomfortable and that we didn't want to be around him, even though he never did or said anything bad to us. Sometime later, it was discovered that not only was he abusing his teenage daughter, but he and his girlfriend were also abusing my infant cousin and taking photos of it. He's in jail now for a very, very long time. When I was in high school, I had gone to a party with some friends. From the moment we got there, something felt off. I bugged my friends to leave and tried to explain that something just felt off. Well, I was able to bug them for all of us to leave by bribing them with some steak and shake. We found out the next day that a bunch of police came about 15 minutes after we left and arrested most of the kids as well as a group of guys who were caught abusing a girl while she was passed out drunk. So glad we got the F out of there. I was walking with my daughter last week and we heard a siren as we approached a crowded intersection. Instead of stepping close to the edge of the street and waiting for the walk like usual, my daughter stopped and the grass and touched my arm so I would do the same. A full 30 seconds later, a police car came screeching through the traffic and drove onto the sidewalk to get around cars stopped at the light. If we had been in the customary pedestrian waiting spot, I don't know if he would have seen us, and I'm sure he wouldn't have been able to stop. I asked my daughter why she'd stopped so far back, and she said, "I don't know, I just knew we should." Smart kid. not me, but my mom. And I'm doing my best to recall the story she mentioned to me a few months ago. My mom's been a psych nurse for over 30 years at a private hospital. One of the patients she was looking after was a very boisterous person in her 40s, and she'd been in the hospital for over a week. One night, Mom noticed this lady was very lethargic, saying that she was just feeling tired and was going to have an early night. And this isn't going where you expect. Mom thinks this is very odd for this lady, but everyone has off days, and so she gives this lady her medication and she goes off to bed. About 5 minutes pass, and Mom still has a knot in her gut about this lady and thinks she just checked on her stats. So she goes to her room where the lady is just about to lay down and checks her blood pressure, pulse, and oxygen saturation. This is pretty rarely done in a psych hospital unless people have other health concerns needing monitoring. This lady's oxygen saturation was down to around 80%, I believe. To put it in perspective, if it falls below 92%, your cells can't absorb oxygen, and this can cause permanent damage. Mom, in her over 40 years of nursing, has never seen someone with such a low level. She checks again, and the same result. Mom calls an ambulance and gets this lady on oxygen. Later that night, Mom gets a call from the hospital the patient was sent to from the doctor, who lets Mom know the lady's fine. She had a blood clot. If she had been left for another 15 minutes, the doctor is certain she would have died. The lady made a full recovery and gave Mom a beautiful scarf the next time she saw her. I have two. First, when I was 5, my late grandma was staying with us. One night, I woke up to some noise and found my parents and grandma up. She told me to be quiet, and I realized that there was someone trying to pick the lock on our flat's door. While this is happening, my father was loading his shotgun and telling my mother and us to keep away from the door. He opened the door suddenly and tried to hit the guy with the stock of the shotgun. He started to run, and my father after him, but he got away. Later that night, I learned that my grandma couldn't fall asleep, feeling there was something wrong, and then heard what was going on at the door and woke my parents. And when I was in high school, she had a stroke and lost the ability to speak. Because she was illiterate, it was hard for us to understand what she was trying to say. One day, I went to school after preparing her breakfast as usual. When I arrived, there was this urge telling me to go back home. I tried to pass it as boredom, but it got to a point where I felt very agitated and told my friends I'm going back home and left. When I was walking back home, I found my grandma wandering around without anyone. I asked her what she was doing. She couldn't
des
walk
moments.
but I knew back then she couldn't find her way back without anyone because of her stroke. So I walked with her for a while and we returned back to the house.
Oui, je deviens le pire des bombes parce que le sommeil est chiant.
Ouais.
My oldest daughter stopped by my work one day and introduced me to her new boyfriend. He seemed a little off to me, but I decided it was just guy dating my daughter and let it go. Later, he met my wife and I, and she told me later that he seemed off to her too. She has pretty good instincts about people, so we decided to investigate him a bit. Typing his whole name into Google, the first result was a mugshot from a couple of years ago. The third was an active warrant. More searching resulted in finding 3 warrants from different counties, an extensive record, check deception, theft, driving while suspended, driving after a lifetime suspension, and driving while a habitual traffic offender, and a brand new marriage license for him and my daughter. They were going to get married later that week. We of course told her about it, but she insisted that he'd already told her about all that and had taken care of it. We emailed links to her roommate who showed her, but she didn't have any luck talking her out of the relationship. They were in love and everything worked out okay in the end. We sent in an anonymous tip and he was arrested the next day at her apartment. My daughter then found out he'd been lying to her about pretty much everything. He had entangled her in a business he was trying to start that mostly involved her finances and work, since his credit was trash due to records for bounce checks and theft. She's still working to untangle herself from that. He's still in jail and according to her lawyer will be for at least 2 years depending on what happens in 2 other counties. Thank God the parents followed through on their instinct on this one. Apparently there was already some damage done, but it would have been so much worse if they didn't do anything. I had a math teacher in middle school who came off as creepy. He would try and get close to us guys and try and act like old friends. He seemed afraid of girls for some reason. I didn't like him. He gave me a very bad feeling. After about a year at our school, he wasn't there suddenly. We had a police officer come in and sit us down and interview everyone individually. It turns out he was caught having an inappropriate themed party with some of his former male students from his previous school. He was sent to prison. I got to the airport early and got something to eat at the restaurant. Boarded the plane, and everyone is on, and I suddenly get a feeling of panic. Nothing else, just panic. I was used to traveling 3/4 of the month back and forth every week, so no problems flying. But in this case, I had to get off that plane. I grabbed my stuff, ran past the flight attendant, and said, "Don't wait for me, I'll get another flight," and sat down trying to calm down. An announcement comes over the speaker that they're looking for me, and my flight is leaving. It leaves. I watched the flight start to take off. This was in Detroit, by the way. Then it happened. The worst cramps I ever had. Ran to the bathroom. Food poisoning from the restaurant. I would have been on a 2-hour flight, stinking up the plane while ejecting the contents of my stomach from both ends. I'm sure the entire passenger compartment thanks me, though they don't know. When I was a little kid, I stepped outside to walk home from my neighbors 2 doors over.
Oh my god, j'ai de...
If you've ever smelled a black bear, it's not that different from a skunk, which is what my parents told me the problem was. I asked her to drive me home, even though my house was literally right around the corner. The thing is, a skunk smell is strong, but it doesn't.
C'est ça parce que c'est un exploit. C'était la seule façon dont tu pouvais avoir un monstre qui faisait des dégâts explosions dans Best Rise avant l'arrivée de la Best Gaz.
I even got offered a full scholarship to do the course, and free accommodation, etc. A really amazing deal. 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave, I said to my boyfriend at the time that something's telling me I shouldn't go. And I was like, WTF brain, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. But the don't go feeling just kept getting stronger. So I withdrew from the course, feeling stupid for doing it. The day after I was scheduled to leave, my perfectly healthy mom got sick. A week later, she was in a coma. A week later, we had to turn off life support. Her funeral was a week after that. I would have been away in her last waking moments. I knew some people who were really into off-roading and modified Jeeps. Once, they were invited by a group of people I did not know to go up a mountain in Colorado. They chose not to go, and everyone in the 4 Jeeps that went got caught in an avalanche and died. At a research institute, I walked into a mouse procedure surgery room for a quick moment to grab something and leave. After walking out, I felt, well, to be honest, like I was a little high. There were 3 other people in that room, including 2 undergraduates. So I got worried and went back inside to check things out. When I got back inside, I asked if they were feeling okay. One of the undergrads turned to me and said she was fine, but was flushed and looked a little out of it. So I went around to all the isoflurane chambers, an odorless volatile liquid that KOs mammals at low doses and kills them at higher, looking for leaks. Sure enough, the gasket at the bottom of one of the chambers had failed, and it was leaking out, and immediately boiling into gas and filling the room. I told them that their isoflurane was leaking, and the postdoc told me they were fine and that he uses that machine all the time.
They some massive damage.
Biosafety cabinet, and so even with the leak, they were protected. I called him an idiot because a biosafety cabinet recirculates air and doesn't evacuate it with a fume hood, which is what he shouldn't be using. So I ignored him, popped open the door, and ordered the undergrads to get out of the room. I then went to their lab manager and told her what I found. Their lab manager came down with the wrath of God. When you subscribe, be sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Hit the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories into the top of the description. If you like Am I the Genius, you Am I the Jerk Shot. Link in the description as well. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Ah, come on! Yeah.
J'ai réussi à te réveiller, mais il t'a quand même mis ta canne.
Non, c'est mon chat qui m'a réveillé. Et je me suis pas pris de tatane.
Ok, bon, c'est avec la caméra.
Ouais, là je m'en suis parce que c'était trop tard. Oh, des heals! Par contre, si quelqu'un d'explosion, si ça arrive, il fait lui-même des dégâts. C'est très drôle.
Le mob, il est peut-être chiant à cause du
Sommeil.
Il est peut-être chiant à cause du sommeil, mais il est magnifique.
Oui. Et ce sous-espèce aurait été bizarrement mieux s'il pouvait aussi mettre à dormir. Oh, come on.
Qu'est-ce qui m'a frappé?
Un almédron.
C'est la bataille des poissons.
Je te laisse prendre l'almédron? Ok.
Ah, j'étais coincé entre les deux portes et le mur.
Tous les disques apparaissent.
This is Almudra.
C'est toi que je peux utiliser tes attaques sur la terre, des attaques montées pour faire des counters?
Peut-être.
J'essaierai la prochaine fois. Finally, j'arrive à faire counter comme ce truc. Il y a tellement de feu et de poissons qui se passent autour de ce truc.
What is happening?
Ok, stop.
Anyway, I was maybe 14 or 15 and went to the drugstore to grab something or other and happened to wander past a makeup aisle. This drugstore is pretty large, so their makeup selection is huge, with every brand you can think of taking up one whole wall of the building. I had just rounded the corner where I saw this woman sitting on the ground just as I saw the manager coming around the opposite corner making a beeline for her like a bulldog. He stops, arms crossed, and devouring her.
En vrai, s'il y avait des bombes, c'est sûr qu'on l'aurait tué. Avec le counter. Ça va. Et si tu voulais bien arrêter de m'attaquer, t'as bien attaqué l'autre.
Et quand tu vois le philoptère tourner autour de moi, je peux pas m'arrêter en fait.
Ah. Non, je dis ça parce que j'essaie d'avancer vers le machin. Je faisais un peu, je reculais deux.
C'est une attaque qui a une grosse cinématique.
J'ai fait quelque chose. Ah, ok. 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 J'ai une idée. Est-ce que t'as des mini-bombes?
J'ai des mini, des mégas, des...
Ok. Ok, je vais mettre en mode counter mes mini-bombes à mes pieds.
Je vais mettre une méga bombe ici.
Non, mais juste une mini-bombe à mes pieds. Là. Une mini-bombe. Une mini, pas une méga.
Mais c'est quoi une mini?
Celle qui explose toute seule.
Ok. Tiens, une mini.
Non. Je l'ai utilisé pour activer mon counter.
Ok.
J'ai essayé quelque chose. La dernière fois que je pouvais essayer. Voilà. J'ai tué en faisant un counter sur son rugissement.
stomped away all teenage and angsty. Got called to the office the next day. Todd is sitting there with his father and the principal. I knew I was screwed. The principal shows us all the security camera footage of what went down. I'm assuming an expulsion is coming my way when Todd's father puts his hand on my shoulder and smiles. He tells Todd to say thank you, and we both look at him dumbfounded. Why would I say thank you? He broke my nose, says Todd. And his father responds with, because if I'd been there and seen you act like that, I'd have killed you. He stood up and left, and I was excused to return to class. Todd never bothered me again. My former roommate's sister got slapped pretty hard. She knew absolutely nothing of the real world. Couldn't do laundry, cook food, clean, nothing. Her mom paid her share of the rent, and she didn't even have to work while she was going to college and staying under our roof. She had the perfect setup. She was so dense, she kept her social security card in her wallet and it was stolen the first day she moved to the big city. Even though she was warned. But oh, she knew better. Later on, she decided she didn't like living with us and our rules. Such as, you can't let your friends live in our apartment. It's against the lease. If your friends are gonna come over and make a big mess and eat all the food in the house that we pay for, we need compensation. We're fresh from college, low-income wage earners at the time. We can't afford it. And she needed to be respectful of quiet hours and clean up after herself. So she decided to make her daddy move around so she could move in with a diagnosed schizophrenic who refused to take her meds and was a hoarder. Her mother and father said, if you move out, we won't support you. She did it anyway. Oh, how she complained. I had to get a job at
Les,
Burgerville.
dans les mini, sauf que
We can't afford internet. It's so expensive. Food is so
tu
expensive.
vois vraiment la différence entre les trois tailles.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to
Je comprends
turn
pas
on
pourquoi tu n'as pas
notifications.
compris c'était quoi une mini.
J'en suis jamais servi des petites en fait.
Links in the description as well. Either way, thanks a lot for watching and we'll see you guys next time.
Donc moi je vais chercher un truc dans mon inventaire qui s'appelle vraiment mini.
Hello teachers of Reddit. What experience have you had with dumb parents? I substituted in high school for 5 months to finish off the year for a teacher who was on maternity leave. So I had a student, high school senior, who never did any homework, accounted for 35% of the total grade. I would constantly send emails to the parents who always responded that they deal with it. Spoke with the parents at conferences and kept the admin in the loop. 1 week before finals, I sent the notice home that she needed to get a 97 on the final to pass the class and get the credits she needed for graduation. And I even gave her one more chance to turn in past homework for 50% credit. Fast forward to the final, she barely gets a passing grade and therefore can't get the credits, can't graduate, can't enlist in the Air Force like she had intended. The parents come into the office of the school screaming at everyone that they had no clue it would come to this. When we all sat down in the office with the guidance counselor, principal, department head, and myself, I reviewed the several notices with them, explained that she had multiple opportunities to gain credit, etc., but refused to do anything. Turns out the wife was hiding the emails and information from her husband and wanted her daughter to fail so she wouldn't join the Air Force and move away from home. Last I heard from the situation, they're not together, the daughter is working at Lowe's, never finished high school, and has 2 kids and multiple arrests for selling drugs. There's a reason I didn't want to pursue teaching as a career after that. We had a parent instigate an investigation into bullying, formal complaint, restorative meetings, etc. because her son was on the playground after school, and one of the older children wanted to get past him and said, "Excuse me, little one." She said that by not using his name, the older child didn't know it, he was bullying her son. I taught English in Columbia for a summer and had some pretty interesting interactions. One particular set of parents insisted that their son was a brilliant genius who didn't need to study. He rarely came to class and therefore could barely speak any English, while the rest of his classmates could speak full basic sentences. I emailed his parents my concerns for his apparent lack of motivation, and they told me that he could speak perfect English and didn't need to come to class, so they let him skip. Finally, parent-instructor conferences time came, and I asked them to bring their son. I asked him in English, "How's English class coming along?" He stared blankly and just started crying. Told you so. Just before Christmas break, I had the students hand in a paper. One of the students was missing a page, so I pulled out the contact sheet that I had the students fill out at the beginning of the year and gave a call. The student's father picked up the line and said, "Thanks for calling. We'll definitely get that extra page into you." The next day, the student's mother comes storming into the classroom. She happens to be an education assistant at the school. She demands to know where I got that number. I said her son had put it on the contact sheet. Apparently, the parents are separated. She proceeded to tell me that I had no right to call that number, and that when there's a problem with her son, only she has the right to know. I told her, "Thanks, that's good to know." That's when she dropped this bombshell. "If he hands in something that's incomplete, you fail him. You got that? Fail." Then she walked out of the classroom. This coming from a person who's supposed to help children succeed. I wouldn't actually call them dumb parents, but parents who are in denial about who their child actually is break my heart. For instance, we had a student who had an abundance of markers for autism and was in 6th grade. All the teachers on the student's team agreed they ought to tell the parents their concerns and suggest the student be tested so we could offer more resources for the student. The teacher who spoke with them was very polite and very kind in suggesting they try and figure out how best to help the student. And the mom literally screamed at her that nothing is wrong with her child and that she would never get the student tested. Her husband even tried to tell her that it was a bad thing and they should try and see if it was wrong. Since the teachers who knew him thought it might, the mom started cussing out the teacher and stormed out. I teach in a college, so the students are almost always 18 or over. A couple years ago, one student's mother called the chair of my department to complain on behalf of her daughter about the difficulty of some of the work listed on my syllabus. My chair was baffled and asked the mother if her daughter was over 18. The mother replied that her daughter was 20 years old. My chair explained that it was then her daughter's responsibility to either speak with me directly or withdraw from the course. That's it. That's all. It's college. People only go if they want to. No one's mother can do anything about the workload. I had a student who I caught plagiarizing in an essay. The 0 was going to cause the student to not graduate on time. The parent called a meeting, but I had proof of action thanks to turnitin.com. I explained the assignment and I showed the parent my proof. And that's when she said, "But I wrote the essay, not my daughter, so she didn't cheat, I did." 4-day weekend. Come back on Monday to 50 emails. Generally, we have 10 to 15 in my group. My voicemail had 10 messages. I had not gotten a voicemail once in my entire time at my school. A parent flipping out that their student is failing. How stupid I was for not allowing their students to do the work. How ridiculous I was that I could not give her students another chance. Last email and voicemail is husband apologizing because I'm not the teacher of this student. Got confused with the last name, I guess. Had 2 girls in my English class who obviously hated each other. They would exchange glares, talk a little too loudly about each other while in the same vicinity, etc. I talked to them about it separately, and they both responded with, "I hate that stupid witch." Notified admin of the situation and called the parents. Next day, they decided to fight it out in class. After breaking it up, I find out that girl number 1 was accusing the other girl of wearing, quote, butt pads to make her butt look better. After discussing it with her parents, girl number 1's mom told her that only hoes wear butt pads and that she should do something about it. The butt pad girl number 2, swore
Ah oui, si tu dois capturer un monstre, tu fais signe, hein. Je suis juste tellement puissant que je peux les tuer sans le remarquer.
Had a student failing horribly, less than 10%, but would not drop. Whatever, not my dime, not my problem. Anyway, grades come in, and I guess his mother has the password to his account. Or perhaps he just told her his grade, F obviously. And I get an angry email insisting that there's no way he could have failed pre-calculus. Because, my god, his father's an engineer, and the student wants to be an engineer, and he just has to be good at math. The best part is when you turn 18 and go to college, you're treated as an adult, even if you don't act like one. And there's a little box you check that says, allow my parents to see my records. Most kids don't check it, and by law, I'm not allowed to release any records to anyone, even parents. So I politely informed her that her son is considered an adult and I was not allowed to release any records and that she had to contact him. Of course, this prompted a long, I'm going to get you fired, that I forwarded to my dean who came out for a long while. I actually feel pretty bad for the kid. Having a helicopter
Ok, c'est quoi la quête?
Un baroche.
When I was a student teacher, we were preparing for parent teacher interviews. My cooperating teacher and the VPs had to have a discussion.
Dépendamment des gens qui sont disponibles, ça peut plus ou moins bien aller. T'as pas besoin de manger pour une quête d'arène.
Oui, c'est vrai.
Ça sert à rien.
J'ai l'habitude.
C'est que tu rêves et puis bouclier, le lance. L'élève avec l'épée bouclier, je crois.
Last quarter was my worst ever. One parent showed up. What bothers me even more is that I teach middle school, an age group that really doesn't want to be in school.
Toi, t'as ton arme, moi j'ai...
J'ai mon arme, il y a le gun qui est bien.
Not me, but from a coworker of mine. She informed a parent that her third grader was struggling with multiplication and division. She suggested that the parent work with the child on these skills. The parent refused because she never learned how to multiply or divide. Therefore, it had no practical use and she didn't see the big deal. I had a fifth grader blow up on me, shouting and screaming in the hallway. This was sort of the final straw for him. He had a long history of verbal abuse of staff in the school, and he was suspended for 6 days. State law allows the parents to have an informal meeting with the teacher and the principal of the school. Mom and dad come into this meeting with myself, the principal, and the guidance counselor. Principal introduces everyone. Mom interrupts saying she has a major concern that needs to be addressed immediately. She accused the principal of being an imposter and demanded that everyone in the room take out their driver's license to prove that we are who we say we are.
J'ai récupéré les objets dans le coffre, mais rien.
Ranted about how the principal was an imposter and that this imposter principal, myself, and the superintendent were involved in a conspiracy to remove her son from the school. My first year of teaching, I had a student who was constantly sleeping in class. I called home about it, and the mother said that he was always on his computer or watching TV at night, and she couldn't get him to stop. I was understanding at the time and didn't feel confident enough to tell a parent how to be a parent. But if that happened now, I'd probably tell the parent to go into the room and remove the offending technology. And I patiently tell him, okay. It got progressively worse and had such a hard year. After I came back from summer, he came up to me and gave me a hug and told me thank you for helping me. The next year, he did amazing. I'm really happy for him. But his mom really stuck to his love for 12 years of being open and vulnerable. She never liked me in my picky ways. I worked as an assistant for a student and we had a study role with seizure syndrome. She only had one seizure once and her mom freaked out and had her diagnosed. Now, some people love to terrorize her mother. She's told me that. She looked up at me with her big brown eyes and gigantic toothless smile and told me that she likes messing with her mom and making her angry. Because her mom is too protective and one of those other complications. So this girl just jerks her mom every which way and it's hilarious because her mom is just like that. Overbearing, extremely protective, and really, really bossy. She'll tell me and teach her how to teach her daughter how to draw and how many colors to use, etc., etc., etc. Like, we don't have to try or even say anything because her daughter does it for us. That little girl is fantastic. I was teaching school for troubled kids for about 3 years in elementary. One day, a kid starts talking about how the plants and dare are all over his house. My uncle, being a longtime server in college in the 70s, didn't say anything at first. Then, during a parent-teacher conference, the parents are just being flat out uncooperative. It ain't my son's fault. You failing him. That on you. He do his homework. I see him. Ma'am, he needs more food. Nah, you don't know what you're talking about. I do you teacher, you don't know nothing. I know you're cocaine marijuana at the same time your son does. Boom. He said she got a look on her face that was just priceless, like she had just pooped her pants. Then he told her to get rid of the plants today and sit down with your son and help him with his work, or else. My mother is a K-12 teacher for a charter school that does homeschooling with the teacher checking in and reviewing things about once a week. It's meant for students who have difficulty in the public school system, which can range from dropouts to super smart kids to non-English speakers. And parents who don't have time to do full homeschooling.
D'accord, faut faire attention. On a une seule vie.
One parent during school year kept taking her daughter on trips to different countries, and then asking my mother to extend her work. We're talking about 5 or 6 trips during the year. That would be fine if it was laid out at the start of the school year and they could schedule accordingly. But this parent can take these trips spontaneously. Like, Days are going to Russia, so she can't meet you next week like we scheduled 2 days ago. Another parent really peeved off my mother. 2 kids, brothers, both seniors, almost done with high school. All that was left was some sort of state testing done in the classroom. One brother shows up, but the other isn't there. My mom, the doctor of the exam, asks who his brother is. She replies, "What are you doing for me?" She tells him that this is all he needs to graduate, so text him and get him to come here. He doesn't show. Halfway through the test, the kid's mother storms in the door, yelling at
Come on, j'ai activé le bouclier.
She flips at me, no joke, grabs her son that's there, who looks like he wanted to die. Like he's a senior, he's 17 years old or so, and storms out of the door. Both brothers failed to get their high school degree as neither had completed the state test. The crazy mom then writes a scathing email to my mother's supervisor, talking about how she was lying to her, disregarding her problems and her children's education, and attempting to sabotage their chance of graduation. A 16-year-old freshman girl is constantly skipping class and starts feeling at the end of the year. I call mother to inform her about this class and it's great. The mother puts me on speakerphone without telling me that the kid is listening on conversation. I tell her that I'm concerned about the kid's attendance and seemingly poor academic habits. The mother blows up at me saying that I shouldn't worry about her attendance because it's not my business. She then says that she's self-employed and frequently far from school and can't take the time to deal with other school issues. She later transfers out of my class to the teachers. She's failed class. My mom is a kindergarten teacher. Just a few months ago, one parent asked her if it was alright if she came in and gave the kids henna tattoos for a Christmas party. My mom decided to give the kids permission slips in order to participate and mentioned that the tattoos would be about the size of a nickel and would be holiday themed. Another parent, upon reading the permission slip, came into the school and complained to the principal that my mother was trying to turn the kids Muslim. The principal essentially told her she was a moron and just screwed off. Not me, but a situation that happened in my school. did a new student from our school today with only 4 weeks of school left. In this school year, this student has only attended 2.5 weeks of school due to school anxiety. He has a whole team of professionals, his mother, and a one-on-one aide that works with him. This is also his 3rd school, he's out his 2 previous ones, and he's in 2nd grade. The first day, he bumped his teacher, did a little bit of stuff, then went home.
Allez.
The worst day of his life. Mom comes to school all up in arms about how we're ruining her freshman year. The next day, his class teacher the kid looks straight in her eyes and says, cute mother the next day all up in arms because the teacher called my precious snowflake a liar. So, due to school anxiety, he doesn't have to go to parent teachers or anything whatsoever
J'ai
except
oublié de leur demander d'habitude. La secte glaive est géniale.
you don't have to do anything if you don't want to.
Mais c'est toujours le fun de retourner au club de temps en temps.
In my experience, they mostly do the best they can for their kids.
Ah merde.
However, I did have a student in my student teacher classroom 2 grades over me, and similar to her sometimes, she really wanted to learn, but she was not that she was too qualified for special ed, because she required a lot of time and personal attention to learn. That entire school year, I went to with her before and after school, while she was waiting for the bus or after she would drop off, and often during her recess and art/gym/library, which she asked me to do because she wanted to learn and wanted the one-on-one attention. She improved markedly in reading and writing, which is what we were concentrating on. She wasn't caught up at the end of the year, but she was a heck of a lot closer. She failed the year, but because she was teaching, she earned her science to the next grade anyway. I tried and tried to convince her parents that she should really help out the year, because we were really her because of help, which I was going to find a way to secure for her. I thought she could be close to or on grade level. They could possibly keep up with the other students after that. They refused because they didn't want the other students to make fun of her. I have no idea what happened after that because I moved to another state, but I bet it wasn't
Oh,
good.
la machine gun
Brian Key,
est
my sister,
nouveau.
she was going to quit teaching after this year because he'd become disillusioned with the whole routine, I guess. He didn't tell us this until later. Too. For me, someone who really dislikes history, memorization is tedious, this class ended up being my favorite class. I used to work at a daycare for kids aged 18 months to 3 years. There was this one little 3-year-old boy that used to call all the teachers stupid B-words and C-words. He also had extreme fear of violence towards the other kids. He would spit and choke out at kids. Despite this, he would be an absolute student he was, and trained being held by teachers in one-on-one time where he did. We all dedicated ourselves to making sure we didn't do special programs for these issues. He's now in jail and he often talked about how scared he was when he was connections at home. He discussed this with Mom and asked her to help with his anger by helping him find other ways of expressing it, as well as work on his swearing. All she said was she tries to work on his swearing by season on TV and shit, and that he inherited this anger issues. He was both verbally and physically abusive towards her. It was so frustrating to work with a woman who didn't wish to control her 3-year-old son watching TV and was resigned to leave her son to control his dad. As a 3-year-old, he knew her reactions and said, and she didn't understand that teaching a child proper behavior and children anger, it would drastically improve. Once dad got out of jail, she pulled her son from school and moved to another state with dad. I don't know if this is really dumb, but weird, I guess. I worked for a while as the assistant band director at my first school, and one day, called me, the director and myself were sitting in his office talking. The band disorganization page would close the door and ask us all to leave.
Allez, pâté, t'as presque plus de vie, c'est pas possible.
Which was to fix the election to vote.
T'as plus de bombes?
Every senior male, every senior male got to vote for one specific band girl, chosen by the band director, of course, and also some incentives such as coupons and monetary values. The band director and myself shared puzzled looks over his incredibly thought-out plan on how to fix the homecoming queen race. He was convinced that through this, we would raise awareness of the band program and then our numbers would skyrocket. We didn't tell him no, but we didn't tell him yes. Instead, we told him we'd think about it, and he left the office. After he left, the band director looked at me and said,
Toujours
"What the
pas c'est
heck?
quoi le
No."
truc que tu fais.
I remember being 10 to 12 and having a student-led conference. It was going really well. Awesome grades, lots of friends.
La
I
pause
noticed someone was
du
being really,
prof.
really mean to one of the teachers. And when the parents were talking to my teacher
blague.
about it, part of the conference, she screamed, "My son is smarter
Ça se peut
than
que
every
certaines
kid in
penses
this
que
school."
ça uniquement récupéré avec des quêtes,
Ok.
I went to a 30K a year private
des
school,
quêtes
and her son was very,
de...
obviously disturbed in some way. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on
J'ai
notifications.
oublié le nom,
There's
mais...
on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I Genius, give Am I the Jerky shot. Let me know what you
événementiel.
choose. Either
Ok.
way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Il y a des chances.
Ouais.
Je dis pas que c'est le cas, mais je sais plus. Peut-être que c'est ça. Peut-être que c'est le poste que j'ai payé aussi, hein.
Ça se
Lawyers
peut.
of Reddit. At what point, when working for a defendant, did you realize my client is a monster? A lot of years ago, I used to work
Oh,
as a
oh,
solicitor's
j'ai eu un
representative. Cases
pineapple
at the Crown Court.
coin.
Barrister deals, and I'm there for the paperwork.
Je sais
Original
pas
Ouais.
pourquoi, mais j'ai eu un
76-year-old man
j'ai eu
has been
un
in jail for 15 years for an
pineapple.
assault on a child. Solicitor and barrister working on getting him released due to him getting clean reports from just about everyone. Guards took him out of jail to a dentist, and as he entered the waiting room, he saw 2 children and ran straight at them. Guards stopped him. 3 weeks later at court, I was the one that sat him down in a room to explain that no, this isn't a hearing to release you. It is so you can be committed to a mental health secure facility for the rest of your life. He didn't take that well. I shed no tears. I'm not a lawyer, but a legal assistant. We got a client off of a murder charge. 2 weeks later, she was caught with a similar weapon and situation. Except this time, the guy didn't die. Not the client, but my managing partner. The client was a senile, 90-year-old man. He wanted to sell land worth a little less than $1 billion to some businessman. Suffice to say, there were many who wanted to take advantage of the situation. One such person, to my dismay, was our managing partner. The partner wanted to insert a provision that would have effectively funneled about 60% of the proceeds solely to him. You can see how his eyes gleamed at the mere mention of money. The provision, quote, got lost in the revisions. I was doing the revisions. I'm no longer part of that scummy firm.
Ok.
My general psychology professor worked for the state of Arkansas assessing criminals to see if they would qualify as criminally insane. He told us a story one time about a guy who would get glass shards and hide them underneath his skin, presumably to use at a more opportune time. He said his interview with the guy made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. I'm on the other side, but I've got a defendant who went to prison for starving 3 adopted children to the point that they needed weeks of hospitalization, then got out of prison and married a guy with children so that she could start starving them too. Listening to her interview where she attempts to justify what she did to both sets of kids disturbed me more than any of the murder cases I've worked on. We had a client try and enforce a post-employment restraint against a 19-year-old receptionist after she quit and started working for a competitor. The reason? He wanted to, quote, make her life hard because she wouldn't sleep with him, a creepy 57-year-old man. Him trying to sleep with her was the reason she quit. Unsurprisingly, he didn't take her advice to discontinue his claim, and so we ended up sending him elsewhere. Hey, so at this point in recording, I kind of realized that the thread continues into a whole bunch of really sad, depressing, graphic stories. So I'm just letting you know now, this thing start getting really bad. Your discretion is advised. I listened to a 911 call where the throat was slit while on the call by a client.
Gassarag.
And sounding like she was dying.
C'est juste
Somehow
que
she
le
ultimately
collet
admitted
qui
this,
est
saying,
pour
"He
mettre
killed me.
la tête
He killed
dedans
me."
est tellement
She tried to
petit.
sell her baby. I found out during a hearing in
Je
front of a judge.
peux pas garder mon
Oh, I
casque
can
sur
share
la
a good
tête,
story.
je peux même
I
pas
had a teacher
garder
in
mes
high school who was a former
lunettes.
lawyer. We always asked him why he gave up his practice to start teaching. He finally caved and explained
Le
his case was an offense to
Gassarag.
women. Apparently there had been a fourth. It was two couples who, in the act
C'est un
of a
monstre
drugged
que
out orgy, decided to
j'aime
partially
beaucoup.
and dismember one of the women. I guess it seemed like a good idea at the time.
J'aime
As a
beaucoup
lawyer,
en
this is a pretty
théorie,
open
je
shot,
déteste
but
la
he did his
santé.
clients the best result possible, and he was exposed to all the horrid details, the pictures, and their reasoning. My
J'adore le
teacher was
concept, mais je
but he could see it
déteste
really
affronter ce truc.
The first and last family law case was assigned to me as a first-year assistant. My client broke his wife's jaw and said that if they were home in Russia, he would have killed her because he could pay his way out of prison there. My mom is a lawyer. This is the story about how she quit being a public defender. When you're a public defender, you don't get to choose your cases. She got assigned a young man who, with the help of his girlfriend, had gotten a kitten from a, quote, free to a good home ad in the newspaper. Then they brought it home and gave it to their dog as a tutor. I think they also filmed it. So yeah, she said she needed to shower after every meeting with him. Canceled her PD contract after the case concluded. I've done a lot of prison legal aid, and I could tell stories about kitty dealers that would turn you green, but instead, I'll turn you green a different way. I had a kid, 17, who was mildly cognitively disabled due to brain trauma he sustained at the hands of his birth parents, who ended up with a really wonderful foster care family and thrived. He was a popular kid in school, good athlete, got a girlfriend, and invited her to meet up and be teenagers one night in a corn silo, which I guess is a thing that country could do. I don't know. This all comes from the police investigation report I read before taking this case. But this girl met him at the silo, and they were hanging out inside. By his account, they were having a nice time, and he was really enjoying himself. Then, for no particular reason, he picked up a 2x4 and bashed his skull in. He then used a combination of very crude farm implements, like shovels and hoes, to chop the body up and bury it in the corn, and went home with nothing happened. Hey, last had a divorce crime, lived with his father, this son is autistic son, tried to argue that he should get all of his wife's retirement having not worked for 12 years. Contacted me during the height of Hurricane Sandy. He was in the Bronx and me in Manhattan, saying he wanted to hold his wife against him for not paying him that day. Storm slam NYC. Told me I was making a huge mistake getting married. And then he gave 4 days after Sandy, saying that I was going to be miserable and regret it. I could go on. But the worst was when, several months later, since his
Je vois que vous avez débloqué les clips. Oui, Alex les a fait débloquer. On a fait Magnamalo, qui a été vite détruit.
Oh mais le Magnamalo ça il s'est fait mais il a souffert sur plusieurs générations.
C'est ça, le Magnamalo est un monstre qui est tellement agressif que les counters c'est quelque chose qui lui font. Les counters c'est vraiment son fléau.
I had a client who was accused of domestic violence. Essentially, he threw his girlfriend out of a second-story window. Now, he's got a terrible history, but so do a lot of my clients, and his attitude is a little entitled, also typical.
En ce moment tu vas avoir de la chasse mais d'une beauté alors que je cours après un oiseau.
Because they wanted him to pay for her medical bills. Okay, a jerk, but whatever, not the worst. What did it was his counteroffer. I ain't paying that woman's bills. Tell them I'll pay for the window. Prosecutor was not happy. A big shock to learn that by throwing someone out of a second-story window in front of 5 witnesses, it was possible for him to get offered no jail time. The first week I started in my current criminal defense firm, I was tasked with cataloging discovery from a client's phone.
Ah, je la vois.
Talking around 4,000 videos, photos, and text exchanges with women under 16. Though not all the girls' ages were confirmed.
Oubliez pas de prendre une photo de lui chaque fois que c'est la première fois que tu le rencontres.
Oh yes, parfait. Oh j'ai tombé sur le hibou et
Tes bugs violemment.
Ah dans le?
Oui.
Ok. Je suis arrivé sur le hibou et il y avait une parfaite photo sur son cul.
Non, non, quand tu commences à bugger.
Ah.
I won in my case because the government messed up on something right before trial was began. My client gives me a hug and completely reeks of alcohol. He was driven to court. I took his keys and called his mother. Number 2, client who was accused of touching a 12-year-old. He was mid-40s at the time, and I had to shut him down real quick when he tried to tell me how the 12-year-old was coming on to him.
Ah.
Number 3, I represented him for a grand theft charge. Left
Oui.
in my office to get some things copied before she
Oh, je suis arrivé sur l'oiseau et j'avais une parfaite vue.
Ouais, t'es continué à bugger, mais bon. T'as toujours des... Dans mes croix de la misère. Je viens de faire...
I thought this guy deserves to be in prison. Took the case to trial.
Oh!
Shocker, lost, and he got 10, the max. Number 5, client who
Attention au chat, spoiler.
They paid him hundreds of thousands of dollars, and some of them died. I just thought that was pure evil.
Voilà l'alerte dans le chat. Mais, oh, donc tu viens de faire le monstre le plus difficile qu'on a actuellement dans Sunbreak.
My client continued lying to me despite the overwhelming evidence showing he fabricated evidence. He lost big. In addition to
J'étais
a
en
large
fait
judgment,
placé
he got hit
pour
with several felonies for fabricating evidence. Also,
déplacer
my client screwed over were his dad and brother.
de connecter mon
My
casque, j'ai
supervisor's
pas
mother,
vu.
Elle, was abusive. She frequently had her husband, was a compulsive liar, and just generally made her family miserable. When they were settling the divorce, the judge initially deemed the testimony from the kids, ISO and the brother, unnecessary, probably because they were minors at the time, and justifying against one of the parents to be part of this case. However, the lawyer representing Elle was ready to sit in the testimony. Well, in this very shocking evidence, we have 2 more witnesses with dozens of accounts of driving domestic violence and separation. We figured Elle must have lied to the lawyer about some significant details because they were completely caught off guard and more than willing angry after the testimony. We like to believe Elle sold by some of the criminal charges.
J'arrive, il est déjà énervé.
Oh, vive les poissons. Vive tous les bonus. Oh, on va essayer d'éviter ça.
Ah, café. C'est où les canteurs sont rayon de glace?
Je suis un peu mort après le temps. C'est normal.
Oui. C'est une bête accro en tout cas. Mais oui, niveau niveau squelette, c'est celui de Nardura ou de la Gorbie.
Bon, non, souvent à la fin.
Ben, ils ont même squelette, on s'en fout. Ouais. Non, c'est juste là qui est spécial quoi. Oh, c'est juste pas un singe.
Double lame. Oh, non. Oh, elle a mis l'antipersonnel dans les fesses.
C'est chevauche. Un homme m'a dit que t'étais pas prête.
It's not about the offense, but about the person. I've had people accused of murder that I really kind of like and follow. I've had people accused of shoplifting and really accused of psychopaths. Speaking purely from a criminal standpoint, having to find who is a monster doesn't matter in terms of individual. But very good job with us. My worst clients have been people who are out there scanning others the money. Murder, robbery, and most crimes involve regular people who really remember themselves to through alcohol or situation. Liars, cheats, and all around shady people generate steal. Human beings operate in that. No flashy or
Oui, j'ai pas du tout prêt en fait. Cette zone, je crois que la zone que je déteste le plus quand je suis à monter des manches.
Tu sais que t'es pas obligé d'appuyer sur Y tout de suite.
Oui.
Tu peux aller dans le couloir et appuyer sur Y.
J'ai tendance à beaucoup trop paniquer quand je suis sur un tour de manche.
Tu devrais pas, c'est le moment où tu peux être le plus relax. Ok, il est endormi?
Oui.
Ok.
Dans la technique de la musique.
Ouais. Non. Et merde. Bon ben tant pis. Je crois que juste les bombes normales me permettent de le faire. Si les bombes normales me permettent de le faire, en fait, juste à mettre des grosses bombes. On a juste à mettre des grosses bombes. Je les active avec mon counter, ce qui active mon counter.
In order to see whether our client was one of the individuals present at the scene, I had to watch multiple videos of the murders. I watched multiple people brutally killed in about the worst possible way you can imagine. They were chopped into pieces while they were alive and had their skulls knocked out. It wasn't some grainy security footage. It was HD video taken by bystanders just a few feet away. The video showed someone's brain squirting out of their head and another person screaming as their hands and arms were hacked off. I also had to listen to the audio to see if our client's voice could be heard. The screams were bad, the laughter was worse. It has stuck with me for years and years, and I don't see it going away anytime soon. Thankfully, my internship at that firm ended a few weeks later at the end of the summer. I never
l'araignée
went to the case
poupée.
and have no desire to. In our case, there was no presumption of innocence. The individuals involved had all taken place.
Bon, si c'est un peu chier, je m'en vais chercher le barra. Le barrière.
If we showed that he played a more minimal role. Working in criminal defense meant setting my judgment for people aside so that they could be afforded the rights guaranteed to them by the Constitution. I still did my job to the best of my ability, but I found myself lying awake at night for several weeks in a row, praying to every god I knew that each of them involved would fry in the electric chair, and that someone would laugh at their screams too. After that internship, I never returned to criminal law. I now practice civil law, where I help people recover for wrong done to them. Lawyers are right. What's the dumbest thing you've seen take place in front of the judge? Serious applies only. That's not really funny. Saw one defense attorney demonstrate twerking during closing arguments of an assault with intent to kill trial. Your Honor, my client is not
Ok, donc j'ai testé avec une bombe, mais il faut plus d'une bombe en fait. Le premier canton active le premier coup active la bombe, qui active une autre bombe, qui elle active mon counter. Non, en tout cas, c'est après ça que j'ai. Ouais, est-ce que c'est là on est dans le high range? Ou on est toujours dans le low range? On est toujours dans le low range. Je crois. Ouais, non, on est toujours dans le low range. Non, ça c'est le dernier niveau de low range. C'est vrai.
Me, being young and clueless, thought I should go to the trial just in case. My uncle told me I absolutely should not. Now, here's where the opposing attorneys screwed up. They never once tried to interview or talk to me or my uncle, or they would have realized their mistake. Day of the trial, my uncle actually made it to the stand. From the way I heard it, questioning was hilarious. Were you working on blah 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 day? No. Please read this payroll statement. Doesn't this payroll statement say you were working? No. Look at this highlighted line. Isn't your name RVW260? Yes. Then you were working. No. This says KVW260 was working. My uncle said even the judge was laughing as he immediately tossed the case. People finding religion in front of a judge in sentencing. The judge always responded, God may forgive you. The state is not. That judge was a boss. Firm, fair, and totally awesome. That's the hardest thing I've ever heard a judge say. One guy I saw said, Your Honor, I haven't been drinking anymore. I've been clean for 6 months. God is my witness. The judge responded, well, a lot of people say that, but the funny thing is, not once have they ever been able to bring him in to testify. The dumbest thing I've seen is a guy show up for not doing his community service in a shirt that said, I'm not lazy, I just don't like to work. Judge asked him about it, and he said it was his only clean shirt. Everybody had a good laugh, even the judge. Seconds after being served with a protection from abuse order, opposing party flipped off the person who had obtained the order, and seconds after that approached her and asked if they could at least talk about it. Promptly arrested. I'm doing jury selection on a civil case in California. It is going to be a long trial, 6 weeks, so the judge is giving jurors a lot of latitude if they claim any hardship for serving that long. After about 30 minutes of voir dire, which ended up taking 3 days and several panels, one guy stands up and says in very broken English that he can't follow. The judge asks him if he speaks English well enough to render a fair verdict, and he looks confused and says no. The judge thanks him for his service and dismisses him from the panel. In perfect English, accent now gone, he says, Thank you very much, Your Honor. Where should I put my badge before I leave? The judge found him in contempt and ordered him to stay for jury duty for the next week.
N'oubliez pas de checker le nuit de temps en temps.
During a plea hearing on a prostitution charge, the state proceeds to give the narrative of events. The SA starts to get a little uncomfortable trying to describe the specific act that led to the arrest. We all know the line he's reading is, quote, sucked him off, but he's trying to find a nice way to say it for the record. He finally goes, where she then, proceeded to perform, fellatio. As soon as he says fellatio, the defendant stands up and straight up yells, I didn't do any of that French crap, I gave him a blowjob! Client said to judge, well, that's your opinion. It went as badly as you'd expect. Thank you, judge. No matter what happens. My objection gets overruled? Thank you, judge. Lose my motion? Thank you, judge. Judge says I'm fat, ugly, and unlovable? Thank you, judge. Unfair dismissal case. My client was summarily terminated for no reason. She recorded the dismissal on a dictaphone. The torrent of misogynistic, hateful abuse her boss spewed at her was unbelievable. He also assaulted her as she was removing the hands-free phone device from her car, repeatedly slammed her leg in the door, causing a fracture, all the while screaming at the top of his lungs, screw you, you piece of crap. Suffice to say, we played that tape a million times in cross-examination. It was more what didn't take place. I was waiting for the DA's office, and we had a guy scheduled to appear for a vandalism charge. The guy had a long history of minor offenses, but the judge was in a lenient mood that day, so the guy was probably going to get off light. At the scheduled time, he hasn't showed up. His lawyer tells the judge he hasn't heard from the defendant that day. We wait. 10, 20, 30 minutes. At the half-hour mark, the judge is furious. She angrily tells the lawyer to get out and find his client and get him before her, no matter what it took, or she'd rain heck down upon the defendant. An hour later, the lawyer slinks back into the courtroom. The judge sees him and interrupts another lawyer to call him up to the podium. The poor lawyer proceeds to tell us that the defendant didn't show up because he was actually sitting in jail 2 counties over, having been caught trespassing the night before. Needless to say, that defendant got the book thrown at him. At the end of a DWI trial involving a pretty major wreck, in which the defendant was found guilty, the judge asked the defendant if he had anything he wished to tell the court during the sentencing phase. The guy thought for a second and said, Your Honor, I'm real sorry. Normally I drive a lot more careful when I'm drunk. Had a client toss his car keys on the defendant's table moments before sentencing for his 4th OWI. Judge asked how he got to court. Without blinking, said, I drove. Why? Good way to get a quick bail jumping charge for violating his no driving bail condition. We all forget to turn off our phones in court, but I once faced off against a lawyer whose phone rang right while he was in the middle of making his final submission to the judge. Even that might have been forgivable if he hadn't interrupted his submissions to take the call. I swear, I was arguing against a preliminary hearing against a defense attorney from out of town, and in the middle of one of his direct examinations, his phone rings, and he freaking answers it. Hello? Oh, hi. Listen, I can't talk. I'm in court. What? No, I'm in court. I'll call you back. Sorry, Judge. The look on the judge's face was priceless. Then it was time for him to make the closing argument. He looks at the judge and goes, one more time, Judge. What were the charges? DUI, dude. Just DUI. How did you get through this whole thing and not realize there was only one charge and it was DUI? This sounds straight out of a lawyer's sitcom, and I would watch the heck out of that. A lot of clients want to speak up, but Judge, you don't understand. But giving them the look of death and a jab in the ribs usually shuts them up pretty quickly. They're usually pretty okay. I found this gem doing some research one day, quoted from the case. As is evident for the foregoing excerpt from the transcript.
Oh, des conneries poisons, si tu veux l'empoisonner, c'est un truc que tu peux utiliser. Oh, je suis sûr qu'il y a un mot qui t'a pas d'interrogation sur ta carte.
You don't often hear about a lot of court cases where people take their clothes off, but the formal language used in this makes it 100 times funnier. I do family law. Told 11 clients in a row that they could be drug tested, 5-panel P-test. You need to be clean for about a week. As part of the custody evaluation process, 7 of them failed. Lawyer here, I had a case where I was suing a lesbian on behalf of a former lesbian partner. It was a relationship property case. The one who was being sued put an issue whether they had even been lovers, or whether my client was just a flatmate or boarder in her home for the several years they lived together. I had no idea how I was going to prove that, but it turned out my client had saved all of the soppy love notes that her partner had left on the fridge, most of which were, I love you, you little squishy oyster, and other ribald descriptions. That issue sunk pretty quickly once the box of those were produced. Sorry, that just sounds so wholesome. I would love to be called someone's squishy little oyster. That makes no sense to anyone except me, and that's why that's so special. I've seen a woman pee herself. Situation wasn't so tragic to warrant it, but she was sent back to jail, so understandable. A man called the judge by only his last name, which is great if you think he'll reciprocate the upcoming fist bump, and a large number of high, drunk, and other people say, this is bullcrap. Also not a great technique in court like the first two. I've got a pretty good one, so hope this isn't buried. Husband and wife are going through a divorce and are having a custody hearing. Basically, the attorney is representing the father who wants to be able to have some rights to see his son, but mother has already been awarded
Le
full
chemin
rights.
que je suis en train de faire est un chemin qui peut suivre quasiment tout le temps, qui va tout le temps donner une bonne quantité de boost.
Father's attorney has some dumb reply.
Des animaux.
The judge ends the hearing. No adjudication, just takes the filings and demands that the parties get out of his chambers. This wasn't in the courtroom itself. In the
C'est un
hallway,
chemin
the
que
mother
je
loses
suis
his
quasiment tout le
starts
temps à
to
chaque
get
fois que je commence une quête.
They get into a full-on yelling
Ici.
match in the courthouse. Then the father, who is 230 pounds plus, steps between them to entreat them to chill out. Starts telling both his lawyer and the wife's attorney that they are acting like children. People in the courthouse are giving them looks.
Le truc, c'est que je suis un peu en train de tout récupérer par réflexe. Donc, tu dois peut-être pas voir pourquoi c'est...
Pour les animaux,
Do whatever you need to do with the judge. I don't know what happened with that case, but it warmed my heart to see a father step in,
J'aurais
trained to
dû
lead professionals, and impress his wife
continuer.
so much that they
Pas
were able to
grave.
work things out. The sad part, the husband's lawyer saw it as a win for him because his conduct was finally in a position to, quote, break up the fight and show her that he is a great guy. Update, for those asking, this was in 2009. I don't know the final disposition of the case, just that the mother agreed to let the father spend some time with their son. And yes, this is a true story. I will never forget. We had a defendant bust into the court from the local jail. His case was called, and he promptly walked up the podium, looked the judge dead in the eye, and grabbed his pants, or jumpsuit. He knew he was going back to prison and just wanted to cause as much havoc as possible. People were gagging, and there was a general sense of, did that just happen? In the air. I'm going to start off with some context. This event took place on the first day of a murder trial in the Hong Kong High Court. Now, the official language used in the High Court of Hong Kong is English and not
Non,
Cantonese. The judge for this particular case was British, but the lead prosecuting attorney was from Hong Kong. Whenever he spoke,
Ah, le traiteur.
to make things worse, the trial and evidence packet composed by the prosecution was a complete mess and did not include an English version. During the opening statement, the lead prosecution attorney decided that he needed to grab his colleague and act out the murder in order to get the message across. This was not pre-planned, and to make a long story short, the judge adjourned about an hour in to postpone the trial in order for the prosecution to, quote, sort out this mess. That was the dumbest thing I've ever seen in a trial, and I can't imagine how desperate the prosecution was to do such a thing. A case where a large gangster-type defendant was accused of slashing the throat of a small, skinny guy. The defense counsel made him wear a large coat to conceal his size, and brought in an interpreter to slowly translate each word of the proceedings because, quote, he had absolutely no understanding of English. 10 minutes into the trial, a cell phone goes off and rings for about a minute. The judge is furious, and the ringing is amplified in the large courtroom. The hearing stops, and everyone is looking around trying to figure out where the sound is coming from. Suddenly, the defendant stands up and pulls the phone out of his pocket. It is still ringing, but only louder. The defendant then yells, "Hey judge, I don't know how to turn my phone off." On a hearing regarding the restraining order requested against him, a man raised the defense of, quote, "She be trippin'. Restraining order granted. God bless General Sessions Court." When I was in law school, my school had a mock trial program that took place at the local county court, where the judges were actual judges, prosecutors, and attorneys from the local area. So one day, a mock trial is happening, and one student, who was a law student but not in the mock trial program, is acting as a witness being questioned on the stand. The person was getting a little too rude acting in character. So the judge, who was an actual judge, admonished him to tone it down. The student didn't listen, so the judge took them to a little side chat and told him he really needs to stop. The student blows up at the judge and tells him that he doesn't have to listen to a petty state court judge and proceeded to verbally assault him. Judge filed an assault charge. Student was kicked out of school for damaging the school's relationship with the local courts, and I would imagine likely never got admitted to another law school, or if they did, would have a hard time passing the character and fitness test to practice law in that state. This is a much longer story, but I'm on mobile. Anyways, a guy came into court on a pervert charge. His friend is a lawyer who comes into court with a black suit, snakeskin boots, and a bowler hat. It is glorious how slimy he is. When he gets up to talk to the judge, he says, "I've known John for 20 years, and he is a good man. He is not a pervert, sir. I should know, because I am one. I miss working for the DA. Sometimes the criminals write themselves. So at the arrest stage, when caution and okay, any response again, anything you say under caution is recorded and given as evidence. One of these guys is arrested for a scrap and takes off in custody, calling us effing this C-word head. One custody officer goes, "Sir, calm down. You realize everything you say will be recorded and told to the magistrate?" He replies, "Oh, F the magistrate and the freaking court. The magistrate is a jerk." Court day comes. I'm telling you, the man is badly mannered and aggressive in nature. Amongst other things actually committed, I say, "Your worship, that's in custody, the defendant cannot call." And the custody officer attempts to calm him by warning him he will provide him with silence to yourself.
No, le
And the
pétard!
magistrate and the freaking court. The magistrate is a jerk. That was being my evidence, and the court retired for a lunch break. The magistrates went to town on her sentencing. I only have one. Was in court during the sentencing, and the defendant, not my client, approaches the bench with his attorney. The judge begins to go through the sentencing calendar, and the man says,
Vraiment au-dessus, je suis scandalisée.
"Ain't no woman told me what to do in life. Sentence me right." She just sat there dumbfounded for a second. Then, "All right, fine, Mr. Judge. I hereby sentence you to life in the penitentiary." Well, that just sounds freaking fantastic.
Pretty fast for a low rank monster.
Ah, on va l'assassiner, c'est plus une génération. Il a tué un péteux. Comment sont payés pour ces crimes?
Come on! Tu m'empêches de faire un counter!
Pardon.
Et maintenant je fais combo par ce machin. De toute façon, je sais pas si c'est censé être quoi ce truc.
On dirait un genre de purée.
Oui, mais avec les têtes de tarpare?
Oui. Alors c'est un iguane.
Avec des poils? Je pensais que les lézards à cheveux étaient quelque chose qui t'énervait.
C'est... En effet, il m'énerve aussi. C'est un mélange, on dirait un mélange entre un lézard et un écureuil volant. Bref, c'est une petite abomination.
Well, I like to say it's like the difference between love and herpes. Herpes lasts forever. A guy was getting sentenced for stealing, and the judge asked him if he had anything to say before the sentence was passed. These are the words he chose to utter. "Your Honor, if I'd known they was watching me, I never would have done it." A guy getting sued for millions for a scam car dealership purchase before retiring to the desert with the scam proceeds showed up on the first day of trial wearing a $50,000 gold watch. His lawyer saw the jury noticing the conspicuous display of wealth and got the guy to ditch the watch, reflecting showing a bright white line all over his chest. The jury was then eyeing him, someone trying to hide his wealth, so to hide the tan line, he showed up on the A2 wearing a $50 Timex. I saw one of the jurors point out his own Timex to his neighbor and shake his head in disgust. Unfortunately, the jury never got to decide the case. It creamed him. once, I represented a defendant in a defamation case. The plaintiff is crazy and self-represented. He also had a bit of a doctor of law in country of lawyers. His sentences sounded reasonable. In the extended conversation, it was clear he was never thinking of law words. He was so bad during questioning that he had about 3 different opportunities to cross-examine himself. The judge also indicated that I should leave the case. I wish my client or I had the money to buy the trip. One of my favorite scenes was when he cross-examined my boss. He said she was something
Ah. Ça me blessé.
yes, I remember when we were yelling, but not the words we used. So I was just screaming like this, and screaming like this. Another exchange, some trial to the court. So you say you were scared? Yes, I really wasn't. Why were you scared? You were holding me, I was holding you. How many people have I told you I know. Why would you be scared if you don't know that I killed her? Say that to me. Another time he said to me, I didn't threaten her. Don't be silly. In my culture, if I threatened to kill her, she will be dead. In cross-examination, I asked him whether he had seen a document and filed a case in my court. I told him that the court needed a document. You said that he had defamed me too? I also said in closing arguments, Your Honor, it is clear I get it. Most of the plaintiffs have difficulties with English and do not understand certain words. The understanding of the client's he cannot be relied on for this reason alone. Plaintiff stands up and says, just fine. How many times is this proper? Want to subscribe? Make sure you
C'est piqué des filles. J'ai récupéré mon billet, c'était quoi le nom du monstre? Oh merde. Ah ça va.
Reddit, did your crush do that absolutely killed your interest? This was a college. You were from the same classes. He was funny, you told me that. You have to make it after a response, you were exciting things on me. Others, drinks, monster, and you deserve it. And the world, he said, that was right. I was so embarrassed. Then I said, because I was video, and after you got $10 for gas after wasting my time, I read it and just left. After that, someone asked me why I didn't write it down. I was giving her a place to she was feeling with her. After weeks of picking up after her, I dared to complain. She had a screaming fit, picked up her crap, and left. I was glad to get rid of her until later it got out to me that she was telling people on Facebook that I kicked her out of the case and gave me hell. There's a lot I can forgive, but that was the first time I've ever had anyone just straight up make stuff up about screw you, eh? Somebody will tell me, because she's over, so she's fat. That's not really right. Some of my friends have a foot and never underwent it. Two of my friends were killed by a drunk driver 3 months prior. I was someone who started to slash. We went to Disney, where I had an annual pass with my friends and family for an event called Dapper Day. We dress up in Dapper.
La prochaine fois, je vais te laisser faire le chemin que je t'ai montré, juste pour que tu puisses voir tout ce que tu peux ramasser.
Well, we went on one ride with my family and my friends, and then he said, do you want to go on a ride? Just me and you? I thought we'd come back and spend the rest of the day with them, but as soon as we were out of earshot, he was complaining about my family and how weird it was that they were there, and he wanted to do Disney with just me. But he had known they were coming, so I was confused. Then we went on one more ride, and he started complaining about how hot it was, how tired he was, and before lunch, he wanted to go home. I was super upset, but didn't want him leaving on his own, so I just went with him. But on the way home, I wished I had just let him leave, and I could have stayed with all the people I loved. It was the first time in years my sister and my mom had been to Disney, and I didn't know it then, but it was the last time I got to go with my brothers before they grew up, and now they hate me. He was just some dude I dated, not a boyfriend or anything that lasted very long. I'm still so mad at myself for letting him ruin my day. But yeah,
Oh,
it
j'ai
absolutely
failli
killed
oublier
anything I felt for him,
de le
and we're both
dépasser.
crazy. Revealed his list of conquests. Not even my brother knows how many women I slept with. And he offered to take my virginity in the back of his pickup truck. I'd asked. I'm black.
Il
she's
était
black,
plus
I'm
rapide
black.
que je
Then
pensais,
she
ce
found out I was
machin.
in a relationship with a white woman. She then jumped down a rabbit hole of my quote, betrayal of the black family, and some other nonsense of my trauma of self-hatred. Never been turned off by anything faster than that. We were in the process of getting together. She had called over, and we spent an afternoon watching movies and sitting close together. By about 8 in the evening, she was considering staying later, and I was casually encouraging her. She asked if she could take a shower, and I was like, yeah, sure, of course. Glad that the bathroom was clean and tidy, and I had fresh towels. Anyway, about 4 minutes later, she calls me saying she needs help with the shower, and I give her a moment to get a towel around herself and knock on the bathroom door. She opens it completely naked and shows me that she's having trouble with the shower controls. So I'm kind of unsure whether to make the move or start with the controls. So I go with the flow and show her, this is hot and cold, this is pressure, this is rainforest, and this is how it is. In the 5 seconds between this, she has sat on the toilet, which is kind of a weird thing because I need to be able to make the next move, and she's sitting on the toilet, naked, with the lid up, looking all disinterested. I'm thinking, I've screwed it up. When suddenly, kersplosh, and she takes a dump right in front of me, and then another one. I was just like, I'll leave you to it. She asked if things didn't work out, if I would mind if she went out with my roommate. I said I couldn't possibly do that to him, and left. He tried to discreetly take photos of my feet. Nothing against people who are into that, but the way he was going about it was super creepy. She asked me if I was good with kids because she was pregnant with her ex, and that she's not good with kids. It was the first date. We were teenagers, he lived in a different province, and we used to chat on Skype. He wanted me to think he was cool or something, and would always talk about his drug use. He ended up faking a heroin overdose when we were on chat together. I was hysterically crying and freaking out, thinking I was watching someone dying and was trying to figure out how to call 911 in another province, when he, quote, snapped out of it and told me that he was actually okay. I didn't talk to him much after that. She said I, quote, smile too much. Screw you, I smile when I want to. I try to find joy. Kept arranging times to talk and whatnot, and always forgot or was not available. Oh god, as someone with ADHD, I really felt this one. I'm so worried this is gonna happen to me one day. I tend to struggle with planning things if I want to participate in several social events, so I have to tell people in the current social event that I'll be going to another social event after I'm done with this one. Time for 3 back-to-back ones. Bully the quiet kid in our class. Turned out to be the person eating everyone else's food from the great blue fridge. Kissed me, and then, after he pulled away, told me he has a girlfriend. His sister actually approached me and let me know that he was once arrested for locking their other pregnant sister in their basement, went on a coke binge while she desperately tried to get out.
Oui, mais avant, moi, j'ai vu des mini.
That was a big old no. This post is the equivalent of thinking, there's no way this is gonna get worse, and then it does. Yeah, I don't get washing. I just don't really like taking a shower or a bath or anything. I had a crush on this girl back in high school. She seemed like a sweet girl. After she rejected me, I let go, but was still interested in maintaining some sort of friendship. Found out she was actually pretty toxic behind my back. She made fun of me for a lot of things that really didn't matter, like hand motions while talking, and I just lost interest in her entirely, even in a friendship. This was years ago on a first date. Tried to convince me to quit my job and put all my savings into gold bars. Then demanded I let him read my tarot cards to see if we'd be a good fit. Nope, nope, nope. Huge crush on a fellow uni student. I was invited over for what I expected to be a platonic study date, but hey, any time spent is better than just being alone, or so I thought. Got there and found another student from class also. Okay, study group. Turns out her mom and her set us up for a full press MLM pitch. Video, literature, the works. I stayed a bit not to be rude, excused myself shortly, and only talked to her in class just in passing from then on. Huge letdown. Edit, MLM means multi-level marketing, aka a pyramid scheme. Signing up to both buy and sell something, while recruiting others to sell also. You get a percent
Ah,
of
la
all your other group sales
cochonnerie
also.
qu'elle a mis
All
devant.
percentages basically flow upward, so the only way to make
J'ai-
significant money is to be high.
Oui, j'ai dit cochonnerie parce que il passe tellement de temps avec le genre de trois quarts de son corps sous terre.
Et
She slept with my dad. She got blackout drunk at a party and violently crapped her pants. The smell alone completely turned me off of any interest I had.
Mes counters genre j'ai 3 coups sur les 5 qui vont pas toucher.
He said he was fine until she sat down and had some cellulite on her thighs. And he kept being angry and talking about how she should be doing squats to be more healing. Like his rant was angry and long and no one was adding to his conversation. Just silence. After that, I took off my rose-colored glasses and saw that he was, in fact, a huge douchebag. I'm kind of grateful he showed himself that way, because I was really into him until then. Could have been a bad time for my teenage brain. We worked together, and as I got to know him more, I learned he talked badly about everyone. Nurses that are amazing, he'd belittle. Talk about how certain people don't know what they're doing because they've asked for an ultrasound IV as they were struggling getting the vein on a heroin addict. The paramedics were worthless, doctors don't know what they're doing, who he thought was hooking up, and it completely turned me off. He's in his early 40s and into gossip more than my teenage daughter. He picked me up for our first date, and his car was disgusting. Not talking a few trash items. The entire backseat and floorboard was completely covered in piled up trash, even up front. I had to step on empty McDonald's bags, old soda bottles, wrappers, etc. to even get in. And all he said was, just move it around with your foot. No sorry or anything. Made me feel like trash too. Like, dang, couldn't even clean up a little? Done me after 9 months because she wasn't ready for a serious relationship. Got into a relationship the next day and was married within 5 months. Told me that she didn't like me back anymore.
Est-ce que j'avais des subs? J'ai pas fait gaffe.
She told me that I got more critical lately and I, quote, changed. So she wanted me to change back before she would leave.
Non, mais j'ai une 4 secondaire
Sarcasm.
à remettre.
Fence of the school on fire to quote impress a mate. And it should add that he did it whilst high. Basically shut me down and made it clear to me that I was being the typical nice guy cliche. This is back when I was about 20. After a couple days of sulking, I started examining my behavior and realized she was absolutely right. Glad it happened. My ideas of how relationships should work were entirely twisted at the time. I got my stuff together shortly after, addressed my stupid and entitled behavior, worked on myself mentally and physically, and eventually met an amazing woman who is now my wife. Scary to look back and think of how close I got to becoming one of those incel neckbeard types. I'll kiss you, but I'd never date you. Told me he liked dating broken girls so he could fix them. See you later, hard on. Talked smack about every woman in his life. Should have seen the red flags earlier. Didn't realize until later that he probably did the same to me. Apparently, having an opinion about anything and speaking for yourself isn't a very ladylike thing to do. I was a midnight clerk at a truck stop, and a very, very good-looking man came in every night on his run to visit with me. He wore an ankle monitor for probation/parole. I asked about it, and he told me he was falsely accused of kissing his ex-wife's daughter. She was 13. I took his word. He seemed to be a real good guy. About 2 weeks later, we were bullcrapping and flirting, and a little girl about 12 years old came in with her dad. He looked that little girl up and down.
Ready.
I was instantly sick to my stomach. She invited me over to her place, not as a date thing, but just to hang out as friends. Her house was absolutely filthy, and the glass of Coke she gave me had a hair in it. She was really cute and had a great personality, and was generally a nice person, but as soon as I saw cat crap on the floor near the front door and just dirty everything, my crush disappeared and I left in a hurry. Well, it turns out he wasn't interested in girls, so I knew I had to kill my feelings or feel stupid for keeping them. Said she was starting up a group for LGBT youth. I asked her why, and then realized I'd been barking up the wrong tree. Attempted to get through a horror movie together, and he kept letting the movie run, then rewinding the movie so that the horror never came. He pretended to be scared and would whine about the quote scare that was coming. I guess he thought this was a cute gesture and would refuse to continue. They dragged a 5-minute scene into a 45-minute production of his, oh no, but I'm scared, no, this is terrifying. This was a guy who told me that he loved horror movies. He was full of really weird contradictions, but this was the straw that broke the camel's back. And holy cow, this really blew up. Thanks for confirming I'm not insane for being annoyed with his actions. Thanks for the comments. A lot of them are hilarious. There were a lot of questions, so I'll try to answer some of them. What was the movie? It was an older J horror movie called Kujisake Onna. I think the English title was something like The Car.
Crap, c'est vrai que j'ai aussi ça à faire.
Do you mean rewound? Nope, I do mean fast forwarded. He would rewind it, then fast forward to get to the beginning of the scene, and then pause it and whine about how it was going to be scary. He would also study the pause scene and look at clues to determine what the scare
Il y a
was going to be.
tellement de trucs qu'il faut que je fasse pour pouvoir terminer les trophées, les distinctions.
What were you doing during the 45 minutes? I remember thinking, is he for real? Then thought that somehow maybe he was trying to tease me. He's a man of a lot of contradictions. So I played along for a while. By the time 15 minutes passed, I'm sure I was sighing audibly. I suggested that we stop and maybe watch something else. He refused. Close to the 30-minute mark, I think I snapped and said words to the effect of, come on, it's probably not that bad. Let's just finish. Go with it and continue the movie.
Really?
He laughed and kept up the one-man show of, I'm a sensitive man and I'm not afraid to show it. I gave up and just started looking through my phone because this was such a waste of time. And finally, I think he realized he'd gone too far and let the scene play out. Did you end up finishing the scene? Nope, because he tried the same thing at the next scary part and I made my excuses and got out of there. Was he a child? Nope, fully grown male of legal age. Why didn't you just stab him? I considered it, but I wasn't carrying my Dexter kill room equipment, and the blood would have been too messy. Just kidding. He was tall and I'm pretty short. Probably wouldn't have ended well for me. Did you let him know why you didn't want to see him again? Nope. I never told him that this was the defining moment in which I lost interest. He was also kind of controlling and had a number of really weird quirks that I won't bore my fellow Redditors with. Basically, we just didn't talk as much after that, and that was that. Dude was the perfect epitome of the term douchebag. He used to be nice to people only to gain their trust and then betray them. He was attractive though, and a smooth talker as well. We started talking, became friends, and I developed a crush on him. Unfortunately, I never knew then what type of double-headed snake he was. Then on one day, I witnessed him throwing his best friend under the bus just to save his reputation. Completely lost interest, cut ties with him, and he gave no craps about it. Only then did I realize how toxic people can be sometimes. Started gaming with him, and threw tantrums worthy of a toddler with losing matches. She physically shushed me in a group with her finger on my lips while I was singing along with my friends to a cover band. She ate a live snail. I was in 6th grade. She detested cats and insisted that I give up my furry body before she'd move in with me. It wasn't that she was allergic to cats. She issued the ultimatum because, according to her, my cat, quote, received too much of my time and affection and she wasn't going to compete. We played Monopoly. That game brings out the absolute worst in people. Overheard her insulting my hobbies, clothes, hairstyle, personality, etc. with her friends. Now, I was never Prince Charming, but man, that hurt. He didn't believe in dinosaurs. One of those super religious types, and someone got into a conversation with him about dinosaurs, and he was absolutely convinced that, quote, dinosaur bones were put there by the devil to
Oh, j'aime pas ce que je vois sur la map.
Bouncer at a bar I used to go to. I had a mad crush
Je
on
ne
him.
vois rien sur la map.
Every night, some starry
Toutes les points d'interrogation?
Oui,
Being a bit of a tart was not a deal breaker for me. I was too
à part la numéro 1, parce qu'on l'a déjà rencontré.
I guess he left crap too late. The hot
Ouais,
was on, and he
ok.
informed me that he was willing to take me home that way. No. Nothing less sexy
Merde,
than that'll
j'ai
be
mis un
good. Seems
piège.
really like a sure thing, and of course the answer is going to be yes, because how would someone like me turn down someone like
J'ai
him?
mis un piège.
Being rude to the waiter and complaining that food is taking too long during dinner rush hour. I worked in the industry for a year. It's not easy when being slammed during rush. Started dating my best friend after flirting heavily with me for a week. She offered to drive and pick me up in her car because we had plans to go out to dinner and get to know each other better. I realized after about 20 minutes she was not driving to the restaurant and instead stopped at the gas station to get into someone else's car and buy drugs. Basically made me an accessory to a drug deal under false pretenses. My 18-year-old self thought it would be cute to invite him to a Christmas parade, but this dude had the audacity to ask me why I thought he would ever be interested in someone like me. The girl in the car behind him honked when the light turned green. He got out of the car and began screaming and banging on her windshield. That's when I knew he was a
Je
psycho.
pensais que mon truc était sur des rations.
We've been broken up for 3 years now.
Oh,
She brought a friend to dinner with us, which was okay.
Non, il était sur la piège électrique.
Told her I didn't bake cheese and she broke down.
Oh bah si un monstre décide de les là, il va...
I never thought something like that could kill my interest so rapidly. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background, finish listening to all the stories. Link in the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Link in the description too. Either way,
Ah, mais
thanks
il est
for
beau
watching.
quand
We'll see you
même.
guys next time.
j'adore son visage.
You have no power here. When I realized I could just beat up on my sister when she wanted to yell at me on the phone, as a 12-year-old, that was not normal. My sister is 6 years older than me, so after she was 18 and out of the house, she realized she could talk to me any way she wanted, and if I wanted to say something back, she would run to our parents. Fast forward 6 years, her and my parents took me out to eat on her birthday, and she got an attitude and it cut her out. She gets the fish look on her face and looks at my parents, at which my mom laughs and shrugs and says, "Give me a vote now and turn your crap." This is funny. Me and my brothers will not get along at all. But the moment we moved out, we got a lot closer. Sometimes you just don't make good roommates with people. And was always unpleasant. One day she calls and makes an order she must make a lot because she knew exactly how much it was supposed to cost. Putting her in the she starts getting upset because the order is 2 cents more than what she usually pays. She asks me, "How much money do you make stealing 2 cents of every plastic?" Well, I was trying to steal money and I did it to her. I did the whole job. I didn't know what to do. I just the order and knew exactly how much she thought it would be. And there's nothing I can do to remove 2 cents from it.
Ready?
So I asked the manager to just beat it up. I was new at the time, and I'm guessing that this wasn't the first time the store got screwed over. It felt amazing, and that was the only time I had to deal with that customer. I used to work at call center and I
Je sais que le pilier qui est en plein milieu, tu peux le péter, tu peux sortir dessus, hein.
I was a service manager. I had planned a 6-week scuba diving trip with the mate for 2 years. They were well aware of this and said it was fine. When the time came close, I put in my application for 6 weeks leave. I was called into the office and told that for only 6 reasons I had saved up the time with them. I pointed this out and they were adamant that the was the most authorized.
Tu peux couper la queue, tu peux couper la queue.
Oh
Tu peux pas
non.
couper la queue. Non, c'est pas le cas. J'ai pété la queue.
Ok. C'est toujours bien.
Document everything. I agree with the statement. Always create a paper trail at your job. It will most likely save your problem in the future. My boss sold the company, and about a week after the official shift to the owners, he called me up and asked me to do something. I told him I was consulting for $120. When I left the job, I was invited to meet the CEO because he was unhappy with me and wanted to understand why. I explained that was happening to him. He got irritated and he made no and started trying to lecture me on how I should have handled the situation better. He didn't like that. So I said, "I'm leaving. I have nothing to lose." And then informed him that I had already been let down overpaid multiple times. I think it's trying to get more paid too, so I had no interest in begging to be paid what I already deserve to be paid. At that company that I worked for, the manager just not giving exit interviews at all. It just became a big circus. And the only job I was also the only job that ever gave me an exit interview. I had nothing really to say, so I ended up just saying that the work for me was cycling events. The interviewer was so confused. I had a friend who worked in the selling of online spicy content advertisements. He was making them millions a year via Canada and had all his clients up there spending. Repeatedly asked for a raise and they said that they couldn't afford it. He got another job that almost doubled his salary, and then he showed them the offer and asked for 10K more than they were offering before he was able to confirm with his clients. They stripped him out, told him that he was a traitor, and said they weren't thinking about the
Ah là là, la queue est coupée.
He asked for it in writing, and then he forwarded it to the rival firm to negotiate the original offer. They matched the additional 10K, and he bounced anyway with his clients and got his old jerk bosses to help him get another 10K of salary out of him. I had a client freak out on the text message cell phone call every few minutes because we couldn't accommodate her needs. She wanted to make her countertop larger than the actual size of granite. You can't grow rock. So we just refused her deposit and told her not to call us anymore. She was speechless. She was trying to get a discount, and now she had to start the whole process elsewhere. We don't abide by the customer is always right. Firing the customer is definitely a thing. Sometimes 10% of your business is right, 80% of the effort. Businesses that want to do better work hard at that kind of stuff. I've been wedding photography for a few years before every person on the planet had a video camera. During the consultation, the fiance asked me if I had an umbrella insurance policy and completely disappointed with the photo and wanted to sue me. He wasn't joking. He called me later to let me know that he decided to choose me as a photographer. I told him thanks, but no thanks, citing creative differences. Some people remind me of a story back in the day. One of our extended group of friends was a semi-annoying guy most of us tolerated. We'll call him Todd. Todd got into a car accident with one of our other friends and came out with a couple of cuts and bruises. No big deal. A couple of months later, we were all driving down in front of another friend's place and are about to hop into another friend's car. Todd decides that this is a good time to say, "Hey, make sure you guys don't get into an accident." This was the other friend at the time, but it was probably a mistake. But if I'm the friend with the car's mom hears that from the porch and runs over to help Todd out and informs my friend that since she knows the insurance on the car, Todd is banned from the vehicle. Just in case person handling shipping and receiving for this giant department store. Single-handedly with 3 days training. So of course things aren't going well, as this is a 2-person position at minimum for 8 hours, and I'm expected to do it in 6. The last day on the job, I'm swamped. Vendors are fighting with each other over the dock space, and another manager comes up freaking out on me because I couldn't get the extra work done. And I told her repeatedly that I couldn't be done. Exasperated, I pleaded my case, to which she callously said, I don't give a crap. Now I'm getting mad. She replied to me at this point and says, do you know who you're talking to? I replied, yeah, the bee who now is running this poop show because I'm out. $11.35 an hour with my promised hours gutted was not worth it. I was hired to build a website. I knew basic HTML and was forced to apply. They wanted to pay me an hourly wage rather than actually getting a profession. In short, the site consisted of listing all the items they had for sale. What? A single table on the site, as they took old appliances.
Oh, attention, il y a un point d'interrogation qui arrive. Et c'est plus violent des deux.
They give me a cheap camera that dies after every 2 pictures I take. Boss's wife and another staff member are there. All they do is sit on their butts chatting and do no work.
Tu l'as vu?
Work to the other staff. I point out that the camera is dead. They tell me that I'm lying. Check this out. I sit down and do nothing at all. Boss is telling me. The next day I'm told to do work. Point out that the camera is still broken. I'm told to take it back if I want to. So while I'm out of the office, I'm not going to leave. So I stay sat down and do nothing. I will point out that the actual site was broken the first day. It was literally just a for their content. And listen to the prices. Hardly some long drawn out things that totally work. So the next day, a guy comes in to look at the stock and buy some and ask if it was worth it. And I'm the one that was using it. He said, what? You can get it going. He loved me using it. Boss's wife tells her buyer looks at me for a few minutes, tells her rather bluntly that it doesn't work. And I tell her I'm done here as well. Boss did try calling me. But I had no idea.
C'est même plus ce que je frappe.
Ah! Ah, moi je m'en fous, ça.
Maman, on est là. Ou pas, on suit. 47.
C'est moi qui ai pris le coup à ta place. Et c'est...
She était paralysée.
We call over another manager, wink wink. She asks again and he says no. When she said she wanted his manager, the owner said, I'm the owner of this store. The answer is no. It's against company policy. She stormed out, surprisingly not asking for the CEO of the company. She didn't take no from 2 employees, 1 supervisor, 1 manager, or the owner. And Jesus freaking Christ, when you have 5 people of increasing power lined up telling you no, and there is a line of bored customers behind you, I think you need to stop. As someone who worked retail for many years, I will tell you, people will complain as long as they can if they think they can get what they want.
God damn.
I found another job. I was just waiting it out to get my bonus. For about 3 months, I was free to express myself in ways I wouldn't have otherwise. I had noticed that my vacation time had not been approved, and normally I would have asked about it, but it was
God damn it.
My manager called me in about 2 weeks before my vacation to inform me that it was denied. I wasn't the least upset, but I informed her that I was going to take it anyways. She blamed me in every way under the sun, which only made me laugh at her.
Nope.
Everyone was surprised when I left the office smiling because they had heard her. I went to my desk, printed off my resignation, and gave it to her. Got my bonus, got my vacation, and also got an extra 2 weeks paid because I was going to a competitor and they didn't want me to share. Something similar. I handed
God
in 2
damn
weeks
it.
to one place as I had already got hired in another city, and I was going to move. The manager, who was just the worst human being spreading misery in a bag of skin, tried to tell me that it's my responsibility to find and train a replacement. And if she doesn't like them, then I'll have to stay until she finds someone she does like. I told her straight up, in 2 weeks, I'm gone. Or you can fire me right now. I don't care. I'm not spending 1 second of my time finding a replacement. That's your problem. It's not my fault you're such an insufferable thunder bee that no one wants this job. At that point, she was actually yelling at me. I can no longer use this place as a reference. Like I could possibly give a crap. I can't use my last job as a reference either. I made a TikTok video of myself flipping off every camera in the building on my last day. I also hit a bunch of comedic stickers of myself all over the building for people to randomly find. Company did restructuring and laid off about 30 of us. My boss, picture female Limburg, gave me my contract package, which also included a lecture of if I was a better worker, the company wouldn't be doing this. After a month, they realized it was a mistake and told us that they were nullifying our contracts and that we could have our jobs back. I said that my attorney wasn't aware of a contract nullification given in the language in the document, and if they didn't want to stand by their commitment, we had already retained counsel, so whatever would happen, would happen. They came back and said we could have another 1-year package over and above salary if we stayed for a full year. I quit on the 366th day, and my
Dun, 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 dun. Ah.
Quest complete.
Oh, une plaque.
Ah, j'en ai pas eu.
Oh, ce sera la dernière chasse pour aujourd'hui.
Ok.
Oh. Tap, pam, padam, pam. Allez, je vais sauvegarder.
Oh, les soldes.
Ah, c'est une poche en main. Et c'est un bingo. Oh. Allez, sauvegarder. Allez. Ce sera tout pour aujourd'hui. À la semaine prochaine. Ouais. Ciao.
La semaine prochaine pour
La suite du Nuzlocke.
Nuzlocke Links, tentative 2.
Oh, on a déjà un Pokémon en moins. Ça commence bien. Ciao. Et à la prochaine.
Ah.
Voilà.